Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, Gold Thunder, the gaming king. CJ, the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Used to roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the Game Lounge. Welcome 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 to the Game Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, Gold Thunder, the gaming king. CJ, the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Used to roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the
Yo.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the Game Lounge, y'all. Y'all already know.
What up?
I'm excited. We got a lot to talk about today.
Whole lot to
We got
talk
a lot
about.
to talk about today. So let's get it started. Welcome to the Game Lounge, everybody. Season 3, episode 19.
19,
Episode
goddammit, 19.
I'm your host, Golden Crush 200, aka Mr. 200. But y'all already knew that. Y'all see me bling blinging?
Yeah, you see him. Iced out.
All the eyes.
Gold everywhere.
Gold
everywhere.
everywhere.
Gold all in my race. Gold all in my watch. Don't you see me just watch? Yo, man.
Kick it on over to my man right here.
Yeah, coming to y'all at the next. Hold on, I'm sorry. My face. I'm laughing at the shit. My face. I'm still laughing at the shit. The gold all in my
My boy's still laughing.
Gold all in my ring.
I should have put the gold chain on too.
Trinidad James, y'all. But our favorite co-host, CJ the DJ, coming at y'all with another Game Lounge episode. God damn it, we got 19 episodes of season 3. It's crazy. The fact that we're in season 3 is crazy already, but 19 episodes is even crazy.
It's crazy. I was looking at one of the clips from like the first season. I was like, it don't even look like the same show. It don't even look like the same show.
It looks better.
Yeah.
God damn it looks better. It looks goddamn better.
You're damn right it does.
God damn, look, hit the dance. It looks goddamn better.
Put your hands off me.
Goddamn better. The queen of the show is also here, everybody. She's here. She's always here. You know that. Y'all know that. And we have guests again, y'all.
Yes.
The YN's back. Both of the YNs are here. The YNs got time for us.
Yeah, we're cool.
We're actually cool now.
We're cool.
YN number 1?
Yeah, YN number 1, Broke Nation. What's good, y'all?
Yes, indeed. And Mrs. YN is here, too. Yes. Y'all requested, so we
There
delivered.
you go.
Y'all requested, so we delivered. Y'all put 8s in the chat.
Yeah, they did put the 8s up.
They put the 8s up.
The 8s up.
We want her.
Yeah.
We want her.
Monet was like, I need help.
So we got her back. And we thank you. We thank you for coming back. We appreciate you. Got a lot of people in the chat, of course. Jazz Lee, drop a bomb for Jazz Lee. Drop a bomb for KK. That's what's up, K.
What up, sis?
Drop a bomb for our guy Cozy. You know he
always
coming through.
Cozy's a real one.
And all of the lurkers, and make sure y'all make yourself known. If you don't want to, that's okay.
That's
too.
okay.
Still stick around. Stick
Kitty!
around. It's gonna be a good show. Kitty! She's pulling up with the
Every
down.
time
With the down. With
Chihuahua
the
shit
down.
comes right. Yeah, I could imagine Kitty. I'm here.
Yep. Welcome in, Kitty. Welcome in. We gotta drop another bomb for Kitty. We gotta drop another bomb for Kitty. For sure.
That's the world's best mod right there.
World's best mod. Stick around, Kitty. We gotta talk about Kitty later.
I was streaming the other day, right? And some new people popped in. You know, I like to shout out and shit. And Kitty was like, lurk mode. Shit. So I was just like, oh, let me give a shout out. I looked at the screen. She was like, I already did it. I'm just like,
already done.
I don't even know why I'm here.
Already done.
Just play the game, GK. That's it.
Foxy Cat's in the room.
Foxy!
Got
Big news coming up with Foxy as well.
Yeah, big moves.
We got big news coming up.
Oh,
I'm glad she popped in. Foxy's gonna be scheduled in soon.
Okay.
And she gonna be right here.
She gonna be right here.
All
right now.
Nice little interview. She gonna hit the couch.
Every time I'm in Cozy stream in the morning, she pop in the room. Good morning, Foxy. Good morning.
I'm just letting you know, Foxy. When you hit the couch, we ain't gonna take it easy on you.
No.
No, we ain't gonna take it easy on you.
No. Just how Kits was, you gonna get the same energy. Same energy.
Kit gained so much hate off social media.
No, really?
That one where he took DMX off the list first.
Oh.
There was people in there going, say, who
mans is this?
They're like, you're not a real nigga. Yo, some people got at, you not a real nigga, son.
Oh my God.
Yo, they got at this man, son.
Oh my God. Galaxy Storms is in the
Galaxy. W for the 6, Galaxy. That's
What's
another
up?
W supporter right there.
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
that's the BX right there.
Yes.
That's right uptown.
Speaking on DMX, he popped right in the room. Hey, anybody said the Bronx?
Yeah.
Who said the Bronx? Who
Why,
said
yo,
Yonkers?
motherfucker? You know what I'm saying?
Who said that up there? But for sure, we appreciate all of y'all being here.
In-house
we appreciate
and
everyone.
at your house.
At your house too. Yes, indeed. So let's kick it off. You know, we right into current events.
Do your thing.
Let's talk about trailers. We already showcased it before, had conversations about Onimusha, Way of the Sword. But they actually did an updated trailer
Mhm.
2 days ago, guys. 2 days ago. So
Yo,
let's
this
get into
trailer,
that real quick.
There's so much to talk about with this trailer.
And if you don't remember it, it's that samurai game that was on PlayStation 2 back in the day. But we showed
Onimusha was on PlayStation, wasn't it before that?
it was on PlayStation 1.
Wasn't it? Am I bugging? It wasn't.
I remember the
Dreamcast?
original one on PlayStation 2.
Wasn't it Dreamcast? Am I bugging? What's the other one that was on Dreamcast? If it's not Onimusha, it's
Swords.
oh, I can't remember.
I know Samurai Showdown.
It's Capcom. Onimusha. What's Onimusha?
I don't remember, bro.
I'm bugging. I don't know if
I
I'm
don't
bugging.
remember. I don't remember.
BT Gamer, what's up, bro?
BT Gamer, drop a bomb for BT Gamer. Appreciate you popping in, bro.
Onimusha, I think it's Dreamcast. I don't know if I'm bugging.
It may have been for both. I'm not gonna say it
maybe.
wasn't because Dreamcast was around PS2 eras too.
Yes, it was.
So
I believe it was, man.
I'm not gonna say that it wasn't. Let's just say it could have been 2 ports.
I'm gonna check it out later.
Safely to say.
I'm gonna check it out later.
Okay. Or you may be thinking Shenmue.
Shenmue. That's what
There
I'm
we
thinking.
go,
That
guys.
Shenmue. Shenmue,
Okay.
y'all. I was thinking Shenmue. My bad. That's why I said my bugging.
Shenmue.
Okay. There you
Shenmue's
go.
fire too, y'all. They did
Shenmue
do
is
a
fire.
remake on a port into P4 and P5, I think.
Oh, yeah, something like
But
that.
it wasn't all that good.
I didn't hear
man.
much good things about it.
It doesn't all that good. They should have left it alone. There's certain games in chat that you should leave
You
alone.
just leave it alone.
Like Shenmue's one of them games.
It's like
you
when
should have left alone.
Xbox brought back 007.
Yeah, leave it alone. Like
For me, it's not
Fuck
even
up.
just leave
No.
it alone, but they didn't add online, which is pointless.
right. Leave it alone.
If they had
chat.
at least added online, I'd have
Yes.
been like, okay.
But even if you did it online, it's still not gonna play the same way back in the day on the N64.
I get all
bro.
that,
Like,
but why not add? That was just dumb.
But they're gonna fix all the little things like Odd Job not being shot a certain way because he's so short. They're gonna fix those things.
But you don't make it online to me. It was just like, what's the point? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I get you.
At least if you're gonna do it, give it the upgrade touch.
Yes,
like,
yes.
you know what I mean?
Agree.
All right, so what we got here? This is the
One more game before we go into the trailer. They in talks right now for the Def Jam Fight for New York
remake
as
or
a remake. Leave it alone. I would love the game to be remade. Leave it alone because it's
I think
gonna
they could
fuck
pull. I
up.
think they could pull that off. Fighting game is big right now.
Yeah, but it's so much copyright that you got to pay out. It's so much.
Who was making it?
Well, obviously Def Jam made it, but EA Sports Big made it. They were the ones who curated the development and everything of the
If
game.
they can get the names on there.
It's so many people that's gonna have to pay out, bro. And I don't think they're ready to pay out because when the
I don't
last time you see
think-
the EA Sports Big game anymore?
I don't think if they probably do a remake, it'll probably include new rappers and old rappers.
Well, okay.
You don't have the
let me say
babies
remastered
and the
then.
Uzi Verts and
Well, let me say this: it'll be a remaster, so not new game, but just a cleaned up HD version of the
I don't
old
see nothing
game.
wrong with that. If you're just gonna clean it up and
Leave it
upgrade
alone because it's just gonna fuck it up. Certain little things that you were able to do in the PS2 version is gonna not be able or eligible inside the PS5 version.
I still don't see nothing wrong with that.
Um,
A remake is sketchy.
yeah, remake is sketchy. for sure.
Upgrade is
like
doable.
Still leave it alone. I still got the game, the actual hard copy of the game,
Mm-hmm.
PS2 version, everything, and it still worked. Leave it alone. If you ain't got it, you just ain't got it, bro. Emulate it, figure it out.
I don't see nothing wrong with upgrading it. Remake, I would agree, is touchy. Upgrading it, if they can do it right.
Anyway, we were talking about Onimusha, Way of the Sword, so let's jump into that, y'all. Let's jump into that.
Onimusha, Way of the Sword. Capcom proudly presents the latest all-new entry to the Onimusha Swordplay action series.
Killing it. They never stopped.
Get ready for a soul-shaking swordplay action adventure
They're
in the
like
Onimusha
back on
series'
they shit.
signature dark fantasy style. Onimusha Way of the Sword is set in 17th century Edo period Kyoto. You'll fight your way through iconic locales such as Kiyomizu-dera Temple. The protagonist, a lone samurai, Miyamoto Musashi.
Look like Yoshimitsu.
your best, then, eh?
Musashi set out on his journey with a simple goal:
The enemy's always there.
master the sword and stand peerless above all
He
swordsmen.
always look like
But the Genma had other plans. Musashi is struck down, but finds himself revived with an Oni gauntlet on his arm. Now, Musashi has a new goal. Rise up against the monstrous Genma ravaging the land. And carve himself a new fate. But his path is not a lonesome one. A vibrant cast of allies awaits.
Musashi!
And his old rival, Sasaki Ganryu, stands firmly in his way. With blade in hand and fate in the balance, will Musashi's bloody battles against formidable foes deliver
big
hope
motherfucker right here.
or despair?
And she looks spooky.
Look at that neck though.
Kyoto's history is a battle with many strange.
Pause. Hold
You
on.
ain't see Shorty neck though.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Drop a bomb. Drop a bomb for that. What just happened? The neck? The neck, y'all? Chat, the neck?
Shorty head was up here.
I'm sorry to stop the trailer, y'all. I'm really sorry, but I couldn't let that word just slide up under the gate. No. The neck?
Y'all overly freaked out, right?
This shit is crazy.
I seen it.
This shit is
I
crazy.
knew you seen it, twin. I knew you was there.
We've been in the game now 10 to 15 minutes, and you
Kitty
already-
said go back. Bring up the neck, goddammit. Bring up the neck.
Bring up the neck.
Bring up-
Bring back the neck. All right. That's good.
Stop.
Let's get it back. Okay. All right. Here we go. This right here.
You got pause it. Go back.
You got pause it right
Right
on
there. Right
this.
there.
Right What's
All the
going on?
demons love her. Yeah.
They was like, oh, not.
You know what she is? She's a necromancer.
Necromancer is crazy. Oh my god. That deserves two bombs.
Kitty said throat goat.
The throat ghost. Throat ghost is crazy.
Oh, Coda said I should call her.
Yes.
Go ahead, your contact list.
Yo.
I'm gonna need you real quick.
Oh my god. My god. Okay. We just
Kyoto's
started.
history
chat.
is a
Just
battle
started,
with
okay?
many strange tales and unsettling mysteries. And you can experience strands of these hidden legends woven throughout the story. Feel the ring of steel on steel, intense duels. Reduce enemies to pieces
The
with a
clash
devastating
with the sword
descent.
That shit is crazy. You see that shit?
Parry and deflect attacks with well-timed blocks to turn the tide of battle
see
in your
that
favor.
How strong is this nigga?
And, of course, absorb souls with the Oni Gauntlet to recover health or ready
It's a whole lot like
powerful
Neo.
abilities.
Oh yeah, Neo is definitely a pickup.
Bro picked up the
Moving
shit.
from one bloody and desperate battle to the next, Musashi searches for his reason to fight.
Shit.
What answers will he find at the end of his blade?
That shit is fire, son.
Miyamoto Musashi walks the perilous
It is.
path of the Onimusha. And on it, a new legend
Wait a minute.
will be forged.
You got something to say about this? Let's talk about it, Traverse Nation. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, that shit look fire.
That is gonna be fire,
That
y'all.
shit looks 2026.
Wish list now,
2026
y'all.
is overpacked, yo.
There's so many games, and then also clearly this is the original game,
Yeah,
Onimusha
Warlords,
Warlords,
yep.
and this is the number 2, Samurai's Destiny, is now available, so you can play remastered, y'all. That shit is fire.
That shit's fire.
That shit is
I might
fire.
pick it up. I never played it.
You never played one?
I never played it.
Oh man, you got.
I never actually played it.
You got you got to go. So you were saying something, Broke Nation, that it's Miyamoto Musashi. Okay,
Miyamoto.
that guy. So you know that guy?
So it's two things. So the first thing is, GK, did you watch the new Baki that came out?
I saw episode 1.
So you seen the guy? No, you didn't see the guy in Gen 1. No, in the first episode. So basically, you know, I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but they bring back this guy that's named
Some samurai from back in the day.
what was his name? Musashi Miyamoto.
I don't remember his name, but the,
So
the,
it's-
the story surrounding some ancient samurai.
So it's that
His
guy,
name
obviously,
is-
right?
So they brought back him.
Musashi Miyamoto.
Oh shit.
And mind you, it's like it's dated back in. I just searched
It's
it up.
not even hot.
1584. In Japan, 1584.
Wow,
It was the
freezing.
great samurai named Musashi
Oh,
Miyamoto. So he's actually based off of a real person.
Oh wow.
His name is based off of a real
So if
person.
y'all seen the new season of Baki, I guess this is the same guy that they're resurrecting for Baki.
Yeah,
Right,
He's
like
a big motherfucker too.
Yep, a legendary
Wow,
swordsman.
that's what's up.
that's fire.
Or it's like Lord after him.
Yeah, it is Lord after him.
Right.
Okay, okay. Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. Hey, listen.
That's when they say Musashi. I'm like, Miyamoto?
The Miyamotos. The Miyamotos.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Let's see. Chat. Galaxy Stone said my brother went about Grace. Oh, quarters in it. Hold on, y'all. Hold on, chat. We don't want to set things on fire.
Grace from Resident Evil?
Yeah.
That's just showing how to run Grace from the stage. Ass character.
Okay.
Damn, not Grace.
Who's Grace?
From Resident Evil.
For Resident Evil.
The main character.
And chat, I am playing Resident Evil, and just want to bring some notoriety to Capcom because we was talking about Capcom is fucking killing the game. Man, Resident Evil 9 is fucking amazing.
That game looks
Resident
amazing,
Evil
son.
Requiem to those who go by
Yeah.
the actual name title. When I tell you, chat, that fucking game is amazing. It's like, oh my god.
It is.
Oh my god! And I'm glad I brought it for 12 o'clock and started playing it and streaming it. I just haven't been able to finish the game, but shout out to Big Brooklyn, Dirty Dan, What the Fork, because What the Fork, he finished it too. I think
Gluttony's
BK
playing
Jeff
as well.
Gluttony's playing it as well. Koza's playing it
Cole's
now
just
too.
playing
So
it, yep.
shout out to all you guys, man, because that game is dead jump upon for all the Resident Evil 9 players. Jump upon for Capcom.
Yeah.
Oh my
Capcom is killing.
God, bro. And when I tell you, like,
Who doesn't love Neon? He's an aura farmer.
and when I tell you, like, they're breaking records with this game, like out of the
Well, he don't
stretch
like
long
Grace. It's all
of
of Grace hate.
all of the Resident Evil games, they've reached the 5 million mark within like months or maybe a year. This game has reached 5 million sales in 5 days, bro.
That's
That's
crazy.
crazy work.
That's almost a million a day.
$1 million a day is crazy. In sales, that's
That be some
crazy,
games
bro.
whole like
Yeah,
lore
she can't,
sale.
though. They don't know how to run. It's so
Yeah.
stupid.
Kitty loves Leon.
Yeah, everybody know that.
He's an aura farmer.
Come here. In there, he does a lot of aura farming.
She
Like,
do need to
chainsaw
run.
and everything.
Coulter said she don't need to run. She just need to stay
She
pretty.
needs to
Yeah.
run sometimes.
No, she be doing the
She
she
get
do
her
the
ass
white
beat.
girl run. Oh my god! And
Oh,
falls
yeah.
down to the ground and shit. It don't hurt me. Oh my god! Like Grace, get your ass up and run. The demon is chasing her. Like, what the fuck, bro? Like this some bullshit. But
Sound like Grace is
it-
stressing y'all out.
yeah, I swear to God. But the thing is, it gives you both. Like it gives you that scare factor with her,
Mhm.
but it gives you that gluttony, slashing and gunslinging and shooting and doing shit with
Yeah,
Leon.
you got the best
You
of both
get
worlds.
The best of
That
both
part,
worlds.
yes.
And it's like, oh my god, bro, it's so dope, so dope of a game. If you haven't brought the game yet and you thinking about it, just pull
Just
the
get
trigger.
it. Yo, Billy, what up,
Just
bro?
pull the trigger.
Welcome in,
CEO
Billy.
Billy, drop a bomb, yeah. What's up, bro? Club 6 in the building. What's up, bro? What's up? What's
Club
up? What's
6,
up?
yes, sir. We here chilling, bro. Running through some current events.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But yeah, definitely pull the trigger for that Resident Evil because it's definitely worth it, chat. When I tell you worth it, worth it.
They ringing a bell.
So let's get into some more current events. Obviously, still on this current event topic. We got a couple things. We got a video to pop up for y'all. So let's just run the video, talk about things, get into the real current events. We showed the Onimusha Warlords. Yeah, let's get the Bible. And let's run it.
Thank you.
Game Lounge.
Game Lounge.
Yeah, what up, chat? Let's talk about some stuff. My guy Party wants to talk about some stuff, so let's talk about some stuff. It's only right. First off, let's pay some homage to some of our fallen icons, because we got some more fallen icons.
Nice.
I hate being Grim Reaper, chat, but people die
Every
every day,
week,
B.
we can't. It's,
People die every day, B. So it's just like, all right, we just want to bring some notoriety.
We'll show
to-
some love.
Show some love to the families and whatnot, and the people that passed away. First person is our guy Robert
Carradine.
Yep, Carradine, also known as the dad from Lizzie McGuire and the lead role inside of the Revenge of the Nerds.
Seen that movie.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, pretty much, if you were a '90s kid, you watched Lizzie McGuire and Revenge of the Nerds. Is goofy ass shit. You know, these little American Pie type movie.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, goofy ass shit going on.
R.I.P. to David Carradine and his family.
Robert Carradine.
Condolences.
Robert Carradine. Yes, indeed. 71 years old. So. Also, rest in peace to Satoshi Mori. Satoshi Mori was an animator for many animes. Some popular ones were One Punch Man, Full Metal Alchemist, and Made in Abyss.
Okay.
So, yep. So he was the animator for those shows and a lot more. This guy's been doing animation for a long time, since the 90s. So, good dude.
R.I.P. to him. 19. He's young.
Yeah. From young, he was doing it.
No, he is young.
No, he is young. Yeah, for sure.
He's only a year older than me.
Right. Also, the film producer, Andrew Gunn. Andrew Gunn, for many, he's known as a film producer for many movies. Some popular ones were Freaky Friday, Bad Santa, and Haunted Mansion.
Seen all of them.
Stuff that we've seen, stuff that we grew up on. We watched Freaky
seen
Friday
everything up there.
and Freaky Friday. He was the producer for it. Passed
R.I.P.
away.
to him, man.
So yeah, Bad Santa too. Crazy.
You want to know what's good about this, that we do this? Like, a lot of the people that are part of these movies, nobody sees.
Right.
So it's good to see them while, you know.
Right.
So
And that's
you
why
know.
I give you like little icons or like
Right.
stuff that they actually.
It's good to know
did.
what they did.
It's just
you
like,
know?
oh, I know that. I watched that. I love that show. I love
exactly.
that movie.
Exactly.
This guy is responsible for it.
Bad Santa is classic.
Bad
man.
Santa too. That's
Crazy.
every Christmas I'm watching it. Every December I'm watching Bad Santa 1, Bad Santa 2. That's a part of
That's my
my
shit.
Christmas movie list.
That's my
It's
shit.
probably after Friday After Next, honestly, to be honest
Oh,
with
yeah?
you. Yeah.
That's my shit.
After Friday After Next, we going into Bad Santa.
Classic shit. R.I.P.
For sure. After that, we want to just give a little shout out real quick.
Kabelame?
Yep, cousin Kabi, happy birthday. He didn't pass away, y'all. I mean, it's a little.
I got scared real quick. I'm not gonna lie to
A
you.
little different. A little different.
Give a nigga a warning.
Yeah, we a little different this time because
Okay.
we always be giving Grim Reaper news, but we never give the angel news, the birthing news. So happy birthday to Kabi
$25 million
Wayne.
away
His
from a
birthday is
billion.
tomorrow, March 9th.
Happy birthday to him.
Yes, indeed. So he sold his brand management company, which is Step Distinctive Limited, and a deal valued at approximately $975 million. Drop a bomb for $975 million.
Wow.
Chat.
You know how hard it is to
God.
make $1 billion?
And all he was doing was just doing
Yeah.
this shit here.
Yeah.
Look at the pictures. Every one of his pictures is just
You couldn't
This
scroll
shit.
without this nigga popping up doing
yeah,
this
just
shit.
like, bro, what we doing here?
And I'm just like, well, who did some dumb shit this time, Kyle?
Dumb shit. Like cousin Kabi, what you doing, bro?
Yeah.
Who did the fuck shit? He's just like,
And I'm just like, yeah, that's some dumb
yeah,
shit.
that's some dumb shit, bro. Man made over $1 billion without saying a word. This is crazy. Silent internet king, bro. Silent
That's the
internet
man
king.
right there.
And also, since we're on the subject of birthdays, definitely got to bring some notoriety to our girl Kitty.
Yeah.
Drop a bomb for Kitty.
Everybody,
Kitty's birthday is officially tomorrow. Chat. But we want to bring some notoriety
He
to
got
Kitty
the
for her
knife.
birthday. Yes, indeed. So Kitty Chat, she's a dope streamer, a mom, and an artist.
So we got
Lover
the
of
cup.
all cats. Amazing moderator, and will cut you
the
if she
best
has to.
moderator. Not just amazing, the best.
The best. Drop a
The
bomb.
best.
Yes.
Happy birthday to
Kitty,
Kitty,
yes,
Kitty
indeed.
Cat. Her birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday to you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'll take a shot to that right now. Why not? Oh. Take a shot in my kitty cup. Yes, indeed.
There you go.
In the kitty cup. In the kitty cup. So, yeah. And also, Kitty's doing the stream tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
She does stream.
She does.
But she's still a mom.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. She's doing the stream tomorrow, guys,
1
at
p.m.
1 p.m. Is it Eastern Standard Time? Or is it
Yeah,
Central?
I think it's...
Kitty, is it Eastern Standard Time or is it
You gotta
Central
put on
Time?
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Is it Eastern Standard Time, Kitty, or is it Central Time for you?
East. Okay.
East. Okay, so
So-
1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you guys tap into
Pull
Kitty.
up.
I'm definitely going to be
I'ma
there.
be
GK
there.
is going to be there, and a bunch of us is going to be there. So make sure you guys pop into Kitty's stream tomorrow, 1 p.m. for her birthday.
That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
indeed. Yes,
Mhm.
indeed.
Happy birthday to you.
Yes. And by the way, the actual pictures that's up there, she actually designed them herself.
Oh yeah.
Minus the knife, but she will cut you with the Puerto Rican knife. But the actual big picture, the kitty tap picture and the Sonic picture, those are actually designs of hers.
And a bunch of people who got the dumper emotes, a lot of them came
all
from
of
Kitty.
the dumpers, they got it from Kitty.
They got it from Kitty.
Dump.
Some of
truck,
my
yeah.
emotes I got from Kitty.
Right, for sure.
There you go.
Look at the dumpers.
There you go.
Look at
There
the
you go.
dumpers right there. All the dumpers. Look, Koza
That's such a-
dumpers, got
That's
storm
the W
dumpers.
community. They throwing it up there.
Yeah, throw
You
it
talk
up there.
Yeah.
God damn it, I'm a goddamn ball for the community. All right, let's keep it going. Obviously, since we're on the subject of Kitty, and she is a woman, it is Women's History Month. Let's talk about that.
Nice little segue.
Yeah, we're going to segue right into that. And today is actually International Women's Day, right? It's
And-
only right.
And we love the women.
We love women.
We love.
We
Yeah,
love.
we love. We love.
Yeah. So we definitely want to bring some notoriety to Women's History Month
Definitely.
and International Women's
International
Day.
Women's
so
Day.
drop a bomb for the women.
Yes, of course.
Let's get that out there. Drop a bomb for the women.
Ladies, anything you guys want to say?
But yeah, anything I want to say before we get into National Women's Day? Yeah.
Women's rock.
Women- Women's rock.
Yeah, Women's Rock. Yeah. All right. Yes, indeed. Yes,
What we
indeed.
gonna say? No.
Why would we say that?
I'm not trying to get punched today, people. There's
There's
two of them back here now.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's
good. I'm
up
good.
today.
Yeah,
Women
yeah.
rock. Girl power. What do you want?
Right.
Sailor Moon.
Left and right.
Captain
so they
Marvel.
go mink, right
Come
on
on,
the
name
head.
some more women shit.
Yeah.
Storm.
Yeah.
Come on, keep Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
come on, bro, help me out here.
Wonder
Yeah,
Woman.
This nigga is quiet. He's scared.
No, I was looking.
I'm just saying. So let's talk about a woman who deserves her flowers.
Yes. Damn right. You're
A
damn
woman
right.
that deserves her flowers.
Yes.
Melanated Monet is a
Our
mom,
queen.
a wife, a friend, a chef, a therapist,
He got
queen
the little.
of the show,
You got the little
etc.
pregnant lady over there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Chat, she has many talents like singing, dancing, and she has voice sounds with her hand. Voice sounds in her hand.
What he said.
So we know what the voice sounds with the hands. If you chat, you don't know what it is, so we're gonna allow her to demonstrate real
Why
quick.
you putting me on? What are you
We
talking
gonna
about?
It's Women's Day.
It's women's. It's
Do some
International
women's
Women's
shit.
Day, God
Do
damn
some
it.
women shit.
We gonna
Trying
Do
to
some
make me
women
do
shit.
all-
This some women shit.
we gonna let you demonstrate what I mean by voices with hand, because I don't want people thinking the wrong idea. That's
Right,
how
right,
it
right.
goddamn.
I know what
I'm
you're
not saying
talking
voices
about.
with the hand, damn nigga.
Yeah.
Right.
So show the people how you do the thing with the hand.
What you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about.
Shut
Boy,
up,
boy,
Galaxy.
boy.
Shut up.
The boy.
You gotta give me something to say.
Shut up, Galaxy.
Okay, so look, GK, you've never actually heard it before.
No.
What is
A stupid talent.
a stupid talent that you think she would have?
A stupid
There's a
talent.
talent a lot of people.
There's a lot of talent that people can't do. It's voices with
So
hand.
dumb.
But you
Voices
think
with
Imagine-
hands.
you would think voices with hand, right?
Uh-huh.
But no, not
Give
like
me a
this.
song. Give me a song.
What's a song that you like?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. You better come pick
I knew it.
up
It was
your
I just said it
clothes.
folded.
I have them
It's
folded.
Right, Kalani
Fuck
folded.
that. Meet me at the. I gotta get it out. I gotta get it out.
Right. Okay, so that same song, right?
Uh-huh.
Would you do the honors of doing the
Do-
talent for the
Do the,
people?
do the thing. Do it again. Do it again. You caught me off guard with that. Wait, what?
Show the people.
Wait, what
She-
the fuck?
Chat, she has nothing in her hands.
Wait a
Nothing
minute.
in her hands.
Wait, you gotta do that again.
Already.
Wait.
Go for it.
Period.
Period. Period.
How do you know you can do it? Brr, 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 brr. How did you find out you can do that?
She has her own instruments with her hands, so she's able to play. Sing
Start
songs.
doing that.
When I was a kid.
It's,
Why?
It's,
I don't
it's
know.
one of
Yeah,
the weird things.
it's interesting though.
Yo,
Do another one.
God.
Get another song.
it's like do another one.
Pick another song.
Pick a song, Jack.
Chat, pick a song, chat. This is crazy. Pick a song, chat.
Hey, you do it, nigga. I taught you.
I can't do it.
No, we don't want him to do it. We don't want him to do
It's not
nothing.
International Men's Day.
Is that-
It's International Women's Day. God damn it.
International Niggas Month.
Chat. When we first met, Chat, and she did that, I looked like a kid that just saw some amazing show. I was just like, what is that?
Shit blew me out.
What is that? She did that. I said, I have to marry you. I don't know no girl does this.
I never knew that was a thing.
It is a thing.
I have to marry you.
She
God
turned her
damn
hands
it.
into a trumpet.
Coda said, let me get a hard out here for a pimp. It's hard out here
Wait,
for
wait,
a pimp.
wait. Come on,
Real quick.
Come on.
Wait, Let's go.
That's
Let's
crazy.
go.
Yo, that's crazy.
Let's go.
Little Coach bopping. Look at
Yeah, Coda straight bopping to it. It's crazy.
That's
work.
crazy work.
But that is her voice sounds talent with her hands. So give it up for Melanated Monet, my wife, y'all friend, y'all queen of the show, my therapist, my chef, my everything.
The
Definitely.
queen.
The queen. Drop a bomb. Yes, indeed. Oh, no, let me allow
What's that
that.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
what's that right there?
Oh, okay.
Oh no,
Oh, no.
should have got rid of that. Kitty,
Oh,
get rid of that.
A bite.
Yeah, it was a bye.
Kick him out.
Kick out the bye. We appreciate you for popping in anyway.
Yeah,
Slow-
but yeah, you gotta go though.
Yeah,
But,
you gotta
but,
go,
but
bro.
look at the name, Slow Glazer.
Why not say it like that? It's so dumb, baby.
His name was Slow Glazer.
No, it's okay. Doing it okay tonight. Glazer what though?
Amazing. Crazy work. He's a crispy cricket.
Look at his face.
Just want to pop in the game now to let you know my name is Slow Glazer.
HOC, we don't allow that.
Slow
Part of
Glazer.
this crew.
So glazer.
I don't even know what you glazing, bro.
Yeah,
Get outta here.
my favorite kind of thing is
You work for Krispy Kreme?
no. My favorite kind of thing is honey bun, baby. My name is Slow Glazer.
Get out of here.
Slow Glazer.
Damn, Koza.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back over here.
Nah,
They're not coming back over here.
Nah. But yes, indeed. So let's keep it going. Let's keep current events going. Definitely want to bring that. All right, Chad. Now let's get into it.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's only right. Got all our pleasantries out the way. The 50 Cent and T.I. beef, Chad. The 50 Cent and T.I. beef.
We were supposed to have been talk about it, but you know,
Let's talk about it.
stuff kept happening.
Let's talk about it,
I
Chad.
feel a way about this.
Okay.
T.I. won,
Okay.
and I'm gonna tell you why.
Okay.
You should not even say nothing. Why you just stopped?
Bro, I'm tired of memes. You beefing or not?
Right,
You
yeah.
beefing or you gossiping?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm tired of the memes.
But I think he got something because he probably gonna do a documentary.
that's,
Remember they had a
that's
case
more,
too.
that's more corny.
Because he doing a
I
documentary.
didn't ask for a documentary. Are you beefing or are you gossiping?
Right.
Pick
Yeah.
a lane.
Right.
Yeah.
Pick a lane.
Yeah.
I'm
Did
tired.
he
I'm
start
tired.
it?
I don't know who started it, but I'm tired of 50 ducking fades and the community keep letting him get away with it. Because he's the king of troll. I don't want to troll.
Yeah.
Wait. That not too
I
much
love
on
50.
50.
I love 50.
That's my guy too.
That's my guy. Not too
But
much
guess
on
what?
50. That's
But
my
guess what?
favorite
Your
rapper.
boy's been ducking fade for years.
He ain't been ducking no face.
Not with Ja Rule, he ain't.
He ain't ducking.
He right
After
back
Ja
there.
Rule, he was supposed to stop rapping if he lost to Kanye. He got outsold about 3 times that day.
Who, Kanye?
Yes, no, 50.
No, 50.
Remember the beef? They dropped the album on the same day.
Uh-huh.
And 50 said, if I lose, I'm going to stop rapping. He lost by a landslide. It was no contest.
Hmm.
Why we don't talk about that?
Jada
Jada Kiss tore that. No, I'm not done.
I didn't
Jada
even
Kiss
know.
tore that ass up.
Well, yeah, I know that.
I didn't know that.
He had to stop beefing with Terror Squad because they wasn't scared of him. He had to stop.
Mm-hmm.
He Rick Ross got richer after the beef. You didn't stop shit.
Oh yeah, he was. I knew about
Rick
that.
Ross got richer after the beef.
Right.
You didn't stop shit.
Right.
We keep letting him slide with being a bully and a bully that keeps losing. I don't care what nobody say. Yeah, he got more money. We can bring up all that shit. He got more money. A beef isn't about how much money you got.
Right.
No.
You gonna step to T.I. or not?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not.
Why
You're
you
ducking
won't, though?
because lyrically he's not beating T.I. He's not. I don't care what you tell me. You can debate it if you want. He's not beating T.I. He lost to everybody else already. The fuck is you talking about? The only person he beat was Ja Rule, and he beat Ja Rule off hype. And I'm gonna defend that. He beat Ja Rule off hype, and I'm gonna stand on that.
Nah, not just hype, bro. He beat him up for artistry too.
What artistry?
No, but Ja Rule was that nigga, though.
You mean? Oh, this is a singing ass nigga, and then I'm gonna drop 21 questions right after that. Stop it.
Nah.
Right,
Stop
stupid.
it.
21 questions by song.
You could
It's
drop.
it's a singing. It's
I
singing.
like that song.
But it's-
You criticized him and
it-
then did it.
It ain't him
Listen,
though.
listen,
It
let's
ain't
get-
him that's
let's
singing the
get back
part.
to
It's
these
Nate
shit.
Dogg. Shout
get-
out, no, drop a bomb for Nate
Oh,
Dogg.
yeah.
Rest in peace, Nate Dogg. Nate Dogg.
Let's get back to this right here. You brought up 50 went off script and brought up Tiny
Yeah, what
and
happened with
50's
that?
kids and T.I.'s kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a whole community saying, why did T.I. shit go dig up his dead mom? You talked about their mom.
Yeah.
Your dead mom ain't off limits if you want to go to
No.
mom's, nigga.
No.
Yeah.
And guess what? Damani wrote a diss track, murdered this nigga. You
Mhm.
heard it?
Papoose did
Yeah, I
one,
heard
too.
it. I heard it.
He tore him up.
I heard it.
First of all, did you realize that the diss track was 21 questions?
No, I didn't
All
hear it.
right.
I didn't hear it.
In the diss
But
track,
why are they beefing? I, still
I don't care.
understand why.
in the diss track, Damani didn't talk bad about 50's mom. The diss track was him talking to Miss Jackson. And the hook was, I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
Mm.
And then he
But
asked
that,
her.
but that was
21.
done before,
I don't
though.
care. And then
What was
he
it
asked
before?
her 21 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Tore his ass up. King went and did shit, took pictures of the gravesite and all that. King dropped a whole list of L's
Yeah.
that this nigga's been taking.
Yeah.
Address those.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be a bully, address those. The nigga said you got shot 9 times, and the nigga who got at the nigga who shot you wasn't you. I
Mm.
thought you was a gangster.
Mm.
You didn't get back at the nigga who shot you 9 times.
I ain't
Somebody
even know
did
these
that
niggas
for
was
you.
beefing.
I don't know why. I don't understand.
It all started over a versus. Supposedly, they were supposed to do a versus. 50 agreed and
Oh
backed
yeah,
out
I did hear about
Yeah.
that.
and pissed T.I. off
Oh,
because T.I. started getting that.
Mm.
And guess what?
Just
That's a
do
bitch
it.
move. You don't agree, then pop out because you knew you was gonna lose.
But just do it. If you lose, you still. How many people did versus?
He
in-
did.
Yeah,
Ducks
but
fades.
he can't take the L.
He ducks fades.
that's
Let's
why.
call a spade a spade.
And
The
I love
nigga
50.
ducks fades. When he was beefing with Mano and Jim Jones and them,
Mhm.
all of them got on a beat and made a
Yeah, you see him.
Right?
What happened?
Yeah, I
with the,
remember.
everybody
Jim
picked
Jones
out the
shit,
Fabulous one. In fact, Fabulous was cooking. He has still yet to lyrically reply.
though? I heard
He
did
ducks
something
fades.
with, Jim Jones. Remember, he said something. He was
He
going
kept
out
pick,
and
he
bought
kept
the
picking on
building.
Jim Jones.
Yeah, he bought the
He
building.
went in the
owned.
lane where he could win. And then what I don't like is this nigga keep putting people's personal business on the internet. You're a woman.
Yeah.
You're a fucking woman.
I like 50 Cent.
No, fuck that. You're a woman.
like-
Nah, he just
Oh, no, no,
he
no,
just
I'm not
getting
done.
niggas the way that they didn't think he was gonna
Let's
get
talk
him.
about when he admitted that he had Vivica eating his ass.
Wow.
Ew.
He's a gangster. Yeah, look it up on YouTube. He said it. He admitted. And then the rest of the interview, he tried to backpedal.
Hey, Fox?
Mm-mm.
Why nobody brings that up?
That's nasty.
Yeah.
I'm not letting him slide, bro.
That was crazy.
I'm not letting
He
him
got
slide.
munched on? That's
I'm not
crazy.
letting
I
him
felt
slide.
like the Diddy documentary was a
I'm
bit
not
harsh.
letting this nigga slide.
He
I'm
got
not.
munched on?
I felt like
That's
the
crazy.
documentary was a bit harsh. She came in.
I'm not letting this nigga slide.
Not,
T.I. won.
not too much on my guy.
I'm just
50,
calling
God
it
damn
out.
it.
And guess
Not
what?
too
I
much on my
actually like Fifth.
goddamn
I
guy.
I like
50.
Fifth.
Yeah, me too.
I like T.I.
That's
too.
what-
I like Fifth.
I like
That's my
T.I.
nigga.
too, right? It's
But I'm
like,
tired. Another shorty on Instagram, she's like, yo, Fifth, you're not reading the room, the memes. We don't care about that no more. What you got for this nigga?
Mhm.
Right.
You gonna go cook a documentary? That's some bitch nigga shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he gonna do
That's some bitch nigga
documentary.
shit.
Yeah, we want to hear the music. I'm
We
not
wanna
gonna lie.
hear the music.
I'm actually interested in wanting to hear the music too, and
I
that's
feel like
why
even if
I'm
he do a
wondering
song,
why I
everybody-
haven't heard
Because
anything
he's not gonna
clapping
do it.
But I
back.
feel like
He's not
even
gonna
if
do
he did a diss track, everybody gonna say it's corny because they already don't like 50 Cent.
No, that's not true. He got a
You know what I'm
large
saying?
fan
He's
base.
still a
defending him.
bully.
He got a large
Oh,
fan
if you
base.
come back lyrically, that's what I want to hear.
He got a large fan base, i.e. me,
Yeah, I
but
like 50 Cent.
I'm not a 50 hater
you
either.
know,
But
at
somebody
the
has
same
to say it.
time, he has 50 haters too, and obviously with some of the people that he has beef with, those are 50 haters too.
Yeah, because you made a whole career of beefing.
Beefing
This
with
is the
people, right?
end result of that.
Right.
Who you
trolls
who's
a lot.
you trolls too much. Who
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
be on your friend? This is your fault.
Yeah.
Like I'm not letting him slide with that either.
Clarissa too.
I'm
I
not
was
letting.
mad
He don't want no
random.
beef with Papoose lyrically. Don't do it.
No,
Don't
Papoose
do it.
dropped it this
no.
week.
I
He
heard
did.
it. I heard.
He,
Yeah.
he did one.
He don't want it. He don't want it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Papoose is a
I'm
beast.
sorry. to the
Papoose
50
is that
defenders.
one that will go in the studio on your ass.
Listen, you brought up these people's moms and wife, and the whole family jumped on.
Why you did that?
Nobody asked you to bring up a nigga wife.
What was I still don't know what was said about Tiny.
It was
He didn't
memes.
say nothing. He put up a meme.
It was the memes
He
he
put
was
up a
putting
very
on.
unflattering picture.
But a
of
lot
the
of people
man's
were
wife.
saying, why is everybody so mad 50 did it when people been saying Tiny was ugly for years?
It doesn't
which is
matter.
true. They
You and
was.
me is beefing. Why am I including her?
Yeah.
Why do I go dig up a very unflattering picture of your wife
He
and
did.
post
He
it?
put a
Right.
bad-
I'm
he
not
put
letting
your-
no real
her
nigga that's
BBL.
supposed to be a real nigga slide with that.
Yeah.
Period.
Me and you got issues.
Me and you got issues. Don't bring my loved one
Don't
into
bring
and
my
then when
wife, my
loved ones
kids in it.
who are
Right.
some of them are YNs went pettier. I don't want to hear the internet talking about foul play.
Because now his
Nah.
son, now T.I.'s son got his mother picture on weed bags and selling.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Guess what? YNs don't have no chill button. You started that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You the king of troll.
Right.
So when they troll you, I don't want to hear the internet
But
talking
see
about.
that he kind of hung himself just a little bit with that because 50's the type that'll go
And buy it.
and
That's what they say. You
buy
can buy
that,
it. Yeah. That's what they say.
and then now you got to pay him residuals from the shit you just did.
I don't care what you tell
See,
me.
that's
Everybody
what
wants
they
to
say.
talk about-
50's good for that because it's been
Everybody-
done.
He done it to T.I.
Plenty of
Everybody
people.
talk
Tia
about-
Marie's a perfect example. They did. She did the "I Ain't Got It" song.
And then he,
She made
bought the
because she
copyright.
owed him bread.
Yeah.
She owed him bread, and she ain't want to pay the bread at the time. It wasn't coming with the bread the way the deal was made. She ended up making a song later down the line. I ain't got it. Trying to like troll that she that I ain't giving you your money type shit. Nigga went and brought the rights to the song.
I
The,
get
the
that.
right the rights to the word in the song.
I get that that's a cool move and all. I want to hear bars. None of that's impressive. right now.
I agree.
I wanna hear bars.
I agree.
I wanna hear
as
bars.
a rapper, I want to hear them too.
I
As
wanna
a
hear
as a
bars.
rapper person, like I love him as an artist. I want to hear that too.
If you ain't got
Because that
bars,
kind of a move is a good move because it was done. The same kind of move that I just said was done by Michael Jackson to Eminem.
yeah, that's cute.
He like to hit
I
him in
want
the
to hear
pockets.
bars.
Right.
You hit him in the pockets.
Michael Jackson's not a rapper.
Michael Jackson's on the rapper. Right.
I don't give a fuck what nobody say. Answer these niggas in bars.
Right.
If you ain't gonna answer these niggas in bars, you lost.
Right. I get
That's
you.
it.
I get
That's
you.
what. That's it.
I get you. I'm in agreement with that. Where I think should have stayed, it should have been them two with the beef.
They
Not bringing
supposedly-
Tiny in. The son not going to talk about his dead mom.
No, but you brought my mama first.
I don't think those things should have been in play.
Yeah, but you brought my mama first.
I think it should have been just
Yeah, it should have been
straight
between
rap
you and me.
beef.
But once
shit
you
like
go
that.
to the moms, because your mom is deceased, don't mean I can't go to moms too.
Right. True.
You see what chat talking about?
So Koza said 50 T.I. more lyrical, 50 only success because G-Unit was easy to market. 50 better TV/movie producer. T.I. got more pull in his city.
Of course.
Yes.
See, and all those is facts.
And guess
Uh,
what? T.I.'s one of 50 studios that was in the South. Not a smart thing to do. Them South niggas don't play that shit.
Yeah.
They ride for they niggas.
Yeah.
And T.I. is one of the king of the South.
Yeah. Galaxy Storm said, but ain't 50 the lyrical diss track god, so I don't know. And I agree. I'm with you on the same shit.
Lyrical
T.I.
diss track God versus who? Okay, he beat Ja Rule. Give me some more.
But T.I. also came
give
at
me
his son
some
for
more.
that.
Give me
T.I.
some-
was mad at his son for talking about his mother.
That's cute. Give me some more lyrical God shit in diss track verses.
I mean-
who he shut down? Rick Ross got richer after the beef. So
But-
I mean,
Getting richer after it versus did you win the actual beef things?
what bar did he spit at Rick Ross? Where he was like, "Ooh, shut Rick Ross down." What? What did he say?
Is it shutting him down in the diss track form, or is it shutting him down
He
like
called him-
you ain't making no more money for? Because they're celebrities. They're
Yeah.
gonna make money, bro.
Okay,
It's
but
just a
what
different
I'm
argument.
saying, let's
there.
go back to lyrical.
Whatever
don't-
diss, I don't know the actual Rick Ross
Ex-
diss track. I
exactly.
don't know the actual word
No,
for
I mean-
word
I mean,
diss track
nothing
for
came
Rick
out of
Ross,
that.
but I
was-
know he
we
did
was both
do
alive
shoot
and
a
around
diss
in
track
that
for
time.
it, and he
wasn't
did
no-
lose.
It wasn't nothing like Ether. It wasn't nothing like
No.
They're not like.
But we talking some of the best diss tracks ever. That's like
Rick Ross was
Drake.
unscathed.
No, not like us was one of the best diss tracks
Rick
ever
Ross
made against
was
Drake.
unscathed after that, and he had his own diss track out.
My exact point here. Not Like Us is one of the best diss tracks ever made, and we still see Drake doing shit. He's unscathed. So that doesn't really mean
he's not
anything.
unscathed.
That doesn't mean that Drake didn't lose. He lost.
Drake
Yeah,
is
he
not
did.
unscathed.
He did.
What number one song has he dropped since?
Drake still made more after that. He just
What?
dropped Nokia.
What?
Nokia came after that, still was a hit.
Nokia.
Platinum,
was a Drake
platinum
song?
charting. Yes, platinum charting song on top Bill 100.
What I'm saying is, when people bring up rap beef, nobody's like, "Yo, you remember when Rick Ross?"
But exactly my point. Like I just cleared your point. Your point in your question you just asked. You just said that Rick Ross didn't make money after that whole diss track. I said that's not the debate here. The debate here is did Rick Ross win the diss track beef? No. And I said I made a better point by saying the reason for being is that Drake and Kendrick beef happened. Not Like Us is one of the best charting songs, but one of the best charting diss tracks ever. But Drake still made music afterwards and still charting the Billboard 100s.
Rick Ross versus 50 is not memorable. Nobody cares.
To say it's not memorable,
it's not
him as an artist or that diss track itself.
You saying somebody said that 50 is diss track king, right?
Okay.
Where?
Yeah, I don't know.
Where? That's the question. Well, fuck all that. Where? You beat Ja Rule, then what?
I hear you.
All right, then. Exactly the point. Where? He's not diss track king nothing. No, he's not. He's the troll petty ass nigga. That's it. That's what he's.
I agree with that.
That's
He's
it.
very petty. I agree with
Diss
that.
track king.
He has
no.
that cancer energy as they call it. I don't call it that, but that's what they call it. Cancer energy.
He's petty.
He's
trolls
petty,
people. This,
and
that,
he
and
gives
the
it
third.
up the way
But
he gives
diss
it up.
track king? Absolutely not.
No, not this track.
Hell no.
Jacoda said Drake can't play in most American cities still.
So I'm telling you, Drake had a backlash, bro.
He cannot play in American City, but that doesn't mean that his songs that come out and still top the Billboard 100s don't mean it doesn't give him his bread. It doesn't mean that he doesn't succeed after that.
Drake was not on.
I don't got to come
tour
touring your city to be a millionaire. I don't got to tour your city to become one of the best artists to ever do it.
The fact that he went to the Super Bowl and tried to get them to tell Kendrick he can't play that song, especially that pedophile part, he did it twice, and he tried to sue him. You're not unscathed, bro. And the fact that the whole industry was looking at you, and your rep is still damaged till this day, you are not unscathed, bro. Stop it.
I don't even know why they was beefing. What
Okay, what is your definition of unscathed versus?
Drake hasn't been the same since.
Okay, I agree to that.
That's unscathed. Rick Ross went up since.
And Drake has not went up since?
No. When he drops an album that goes the same amount of platinum time he did before, then you can give me that. He has not.
Bro,
2 years is a lot for Drake.
Bro, it's songs that
I have not heard rotating songs of Drake in the last 2 years.
Bro, Nokia is playing on the radio everywhere. What are you talking about?
I haven't heard it.
Who's calling my phone? It's in every club. It's in every. It's in every club. It's in every radio station. Baby girl, it's everywhere, bro.
You got that song.
It's on TikTok and everything.
When he drops an album that goes the same time platinum he did before the beef, then you can say
he just didn't do an album yet, but he did hit singles, bro. Just haven't done the album yet.
You got it.
He's done hit singles.
You're
though.
still not telling me Drake is unscathed after that. I'm sorry. You're not telling me that. Sorry. Cut it out. You're not telling me that. You're not. You're just not.
So does unscathed mean not making any more bread or not
No, he's making money. You got that point. But unscathed means your credibility and your rep was damaged.
Okay, well, if you saying that, then yeah, we can just clearly say that based off of the rap beef. Yeah, every time somebody loses, the same shit.
Rick Ross wasn't unscathed, bro. Yeah, that's King is petty as fuck.
Look, that's the bag.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's a bad move because it's showing that you are distributing marijuana.
Yeah, that's stupid. That part is stupid.
That part is stupid, but
I think it's the dumbest thing.
That part ain't smart, but he's not really selling weed.
I hope he's not.
Yeah.
There's no need for him to. You're not gonna catch him with baggies to sell.
Right. But if the cops do catch it or the feds catch it, now they can kind of track it back to.
But he's not selling weed. So
He got money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He ain't nickel and diming.
No. It's gonna be channels that the feds got to go through to get him and lock him into that charge.
Yeah, but you got to catch him selling it. He's not selling.
Right.
So
he's the plug.
Yeah.
Koza said Drake went down. K. Dot shattered OVO. Made investors rethink contracts with Drake and blacklisted him for pretty much the whole West Coast.
Industry-wise,
That's
he was hit.
I can agree to the investors part because I did read that
Yeah,
personally.
he lost some investors. He did.
I did read that personally.
Canary.
And blacklisted him from the whole West Coast. I guess so. I guess so.
But we all know.
I can.
Well, wait, hold on.
I
We
say
all know-
that's semantics. That's
what I was about to say. We all know, like we were talking about 50 and T.I.
right.
50's listenability might drop in the South. It goes with people go with who
Right.
they're from.
It'll go. It'll drop in the South, but it'll probably go up in the North. It goes in the East. It goes over
He
in.
don't make music.
Right, he don't
But
make
but
music.
He don't
but
make
that's the
music.
perfect example. His don't make music anymore, but his hits is still bangers to this day. It's in every club that you go to. Still to this day.
Nah, see, you got classics. Nobody denying that. Losing the beef don't mean you don't have your hits.
Right.
Right.
That was my point there. That if you lose the beef doesn't mean that you
No, you still, you know.
you still can make your money, and that's why Rick Ross
Right.
can make his money still all day long.
But Rick Ross, as an artist, he didn't really take a hit from that.
What was the last biggest Rick Ross song you've heard?
Whatever Rick Ross has done, he has done stuff years after that beef. So whatever the last one is, he's just not making music himself as much anymore. But it's
now.
not,
This
it's
is
not
the
a
old
consequent
stuff.
effect of the beef.
Very true. But at the same time, Rick Ross didn't make songs big bangers after that like that, but he had people in his
He did make
MMG
some songs after
making
that.
making
That's a
big
long
bangers
time ago.
like
Rick
that.
Ross has some hits after that. I can't call him off top, but he has some hits after that. He did. He dropped the album and all that. Yeah, that was years ago. But anyway, yeah. T.I. won.
Me personally, I'm still riding with 50 on a
You could ride with him, but he's
not
winning.
I'm not gonna say the beef part of it. I
Right.
mean, if it was to do a 20 for 20, if they actually did it the real right way,
I don't know about that.
20 for 20, I'm still gonna ride with 50, bro.
That's a rough one.
That's rough.
If they, because artists do 20 for 20 all the time.
That's what it's
The
supposed
lots
to be.
did-
That's why they
supposed to
here.
be.
That's what it's
Right.
supposed to be.
That's why we here.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
But
If they were to
and-
actually do a 20 for 20,
and T.I.
I
dropped
think
a new song, that's a banger. It's all over the
Yeah,
place.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
I don't think Fifth can drop a song that people's gonna grab like, yo, T.I.'s back. Like,
No.
I'm not saying he can't, because he's a pretty good writer.
It won't be
We
as
know
big
that.
as T.I.
But I don't think he can make a song right now that'll drop people's like, yo, 50 back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think he got it like that.
we would have to wait and see.
Close said.
Canary said locked in game. Galaxy said Canary. Koza said 50 really only ever got into making music because of that M Connect. T.I. was signed to Ghetto Vision by KP. Big
I've
Brooklyn.
been-
50 was making music way before the Connect, the M Connect.
Okay. but-
How to Rob was a dope, clever diss track. Big
but-
Brooklyn
but-
jumping
go-
off of Big
go-
Brooklyn.
go- go there. That's where I was going.
Cole said, but he wasn't selling any albums or getting any radio time before M.
Let me tap him. Let me tap him.
Yeah.
Every artist was making music before they made it big.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can go to any. Let's use Ludacris for example.
Mhm.
He sold what 100,000 out of his trunk.
Mm-hmm.
That means if you go to his immediate city before he was a big artist, they
Mhm.
know him.
Yeah, yeah.
He was
Oh,
making
yeah.
music.
Yeah.
But was he making?
All the shit in Atlanta was lit.
Yeah.
He was lit in Atlanta like
yeah.
a motherfucker.
But
But
what I'm saying is,
was
you
he-
making music before the connect don't mean shit.
Mhm.
It don't mean nothing.
Well, it means something if that hit that you were making with the Connect in your city is now the global hit.
Yeah, but he said he was underground and making music label, and he was signed to another label before M. That's cool.
Yeah, true.
But
he was. He
I've
definitely was.
heard the name 50 Cent before he was signed to M as well. Remember, we was in high school and junior high school.
Yeah.
I've heard the name floating.
Yeah.
But I also hear a bunch of other names floating that come and go.
Right?
Until you make it, nobody cares that much.
No, not necessarily. People care. It's even more of a caring now because we have more social media presence and platforms like SoundCloud, Mixcloud, all those other music things that you can just go on and listen to all the underground artists.
Right, but that's like I said, everybody.
A lot of niggas do it.
Yeah, I
A
don't
lot of the
You can
YNs,
say-
like if you go play for a YN party, a lot of the times the music's bumping.
It means
It's not.
anything. But nobody
on
said
the-
M was the reason why he makes music. Nobody said that.
It's not the tabloids that the music or whatever it's on the Billboard
making
Top
no money.
100. It's not that. It's the ones that's on those
Yeah, but
platforms
no,
that I
we're not
just
saying
named.
he didn't make music before M. Nobody said that. Of course he was
He
making music
signed
before
to
M.
Columbia, but didn't release his debut album because it wasn't up to par.
Yeah. Cozy said he was signed to. Yeah, I agree to that.
M
No,
was the
M,
reason.
just
Dr.
the
Dre was the reason he blew up actually.
Yeah. Because it
But
was
same shit. Dre
the
and
shady
M.
aftermath
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
conglomerate
He said
together.
Kobe just said that. Yeah, Costa did. He said he wasn't selling the album. Or getting any music.
50 really only ever got into making music because of that M Connect. T.I. was signed to Ghetto Vision by KP.
Yeah, Costa said he wasn't.
It's a toss up between it, but
Between what?
between whether it was prominent music when he was before M and after.
It could have been good music,
Right.
The mass
And
didn't
that-
hear it.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe In the Club or Wankster was a part of the prominent music, but just got
Well, he
plugged
made
in.
Wankster for Ja Rule.
Yeah.
He made that for Ja Rule.
Okay, good point.
But I
good point.
understand what you're saying.
Like
Why the hell was
In the
this?
Club or
sometimes-
21 Questions.
Let's say if I
or-
signed you right now, your number one hit could have been a song that you had underground 2 years ago.
Yes.
So I understand what you're saying.
Right. So for
The
like
song existed before.
for
right.
example, Pop Smoke is a perfect example. The Woo was a song that he wrote beforehand,
Mhm.
before he actually got put on and plugged in.
Right.
Did the connect
Before
with
the
50.
mass could hear it.
Right.
Whereas the
And that was, and the Woo shit was all over Canarsie, all over.
it was a local hit.
It was a local hit. It was
Right.
everywhere. Everybody knew about the Woos, the Chos, all of that, but the Woos were but it was big. It was big because the Woos and the Chos were beefing. So it was like, you want to fuck with the Woo.
Look, see, they said his music wasn't good enough for Columbia to produce. It's writing, bro. This ain't an opinion. Exactly. Music wasn't good enough. Columbia wasn't willing to gamble on that shit at that time.
Yeah, but that's just some like guy that was sitting in there just like, I don't know, and then
I mean,
now
it happens.
now when you that's regular business shit. If this guy we know it has credibility, say you good, yeah, let's
Well,
come
I mean,
on
sometimes
in.
what it is like you can have an artist.
Right.
You may not like it. It's not your kind of niche. It's weird for you.
Right,
I may
right.
be like, I know what to do with that. Send him over here.
Right.
And then big deal.
Right.
Same thing with Lady Gaga.
Mhm.
Interscope or whatever record label was about to let her go. They didn't know what to do with her.
Mhm.
Akon said, send her over here. That's how he ended up with her.
Mhm.
First album was produced with him. You get what I'm saying? Remember, her
Yeah.
first single was featuring Akon.
Mhm.
He signed her. He made money off of her. So they was gonna let her go. So he
It
said, "Don't let
was-
her go. Give me her."
It was the same with Missy Elliott and
That's what I'm saying. You may not be able to work with this artist. You might. I might. He might. It all depends on. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Doesn't
Like,
mean you're not talented.
like their word speaks volumes, but they just don't know what to do with you at the moment.
Right. It's not my thing. You know what I'm
Right. I can't market this. Not that
Right.
my colleagues or my my ops can't market
Right.
it, or it's not marketable.
It's not exactly. It's
But
marketable, but I
I
don't know
just
what to do with
can't
that.
mark.
Exactly.
I don't know how to market this.
Facts.
So that I think that's safe to say for that argument there.
Yeah.
Koza said he had a good run. None of that traction was there outside of New York until Shady Dre.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, M Def helped him blow up, but ain't the reason 50 make music. So,
Well, that's what we just said. He makes music.
Right.
M and Dre helped it to be recognized.
Right. Jeff agrees to that point. He said, Koza said, he said himself was ready to give up making music until M. That's what I meant. Not that he didn't try before that. M, the reason he continued that. I can agree.
Right.
I can agree with Koza for that part. Yes. Not that.
I mean, it all
I
makes
can agree.
sense.
I can agree that he continued it because of M, but I don't really know
He didn't
if it
start
was
it because of him.
right. And I don't think he was gonna just say fuck music like altogether.
Hey, sometimes people, even Robin Thicke said at the point where he blew up,
Yeah.
if he didn't blow up then, fuck music.
Okay.
Like a lot of artists say that. Like I was
They
getting
put
ready
in
to be
so
done.
much work.
You
and
put
so
enough
many
times
years.
and
I've been
energy
doing it
into
for
it.
7 years. I came close to so many deals. It's like it's never gonna happen, and then boom, you get a call. You know what I mean?
Big Brooklyn said I can agree, but I don't think he would have gave up. I don't think so
I mean,
either,
we
bro.
wouldn't know that. We're not him, so we could have speculated.
Yeah, this is all speculation. No, or like circumstantial.
Right? Yeah.
Situations.
We're what we know.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I think T.I.'s winning, so whatever.
Yeah.
I think the petty shit is not how you win this type of beef.
Yeah, on the beef thing, I think it went too far. And it's like now it's really got to a
It's
point
getting out of
where
hand.
niggas trying to run down and hurt each other and everything.
Getting out of
Nah,
hand.
it's too much.
But he took it to that next level first.
Yeah. The whole tiny picture and all. Yeah.
But that tiny picture was made for other people.
It doesn't
It
matter.
was regular shit he got hooked on.
Here we go, chat.
Okay.
Let's finally put this debate to rest. Who was at fault for Cell achieving his perfect form?
Vegeta.
Who was at fault? Was it Krillin
Vegeta.
that Cell
Vegeta.
achieved
The Vegeta.
his form, or was it
The
Vegeta?
yellow-haired
that
nigga up
was-
Yeah,
there.
hello, yeah.
The blonde nigga.
Was
with
it
the blue
really?
eye. Vegeta let the nigga.
I know.
Yeah.
You had him dead to rights.
Yeah.
Vegeta stood there and said, "Oh, you go get your perfect form." The nigga got smacked right after that. you had Cell dead, dead.
Right. But Krillin already got the shit from Bulma, had the button in hand.
Wasn't that after the fact or before?
This is before. It's before he absorbed them.
So then Krillin.
But like you just said,
if you were the fault first, then it's your fault. I'm the second fault after.
Vegeta was standing there fighting Cell.
Could Krillin have stopped him?
Yeah.
Should have pressed the button,
Well,
nigga.
he could have stopped him by blowing her up to make him never perfect.
The point is, you could have your fault.
Yeah, that's my fault. I don't think it was Vegeta's fault, bro.
No, it's his fault too. Because after Krillin fucked up, you super fucked up.
Right, but you had the second chance that didn't take
But first fuck up, Krillin.
I think Krillin was an all fuck up.
For me, with these two right here in this situation, it comes down to which one of them did the fuck up first.
So I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna say who did the fuck up first. I'm gonna say it this way: Vegeta don't know that Bulma had created the shit.
You don't need to know that. You don't let the nigga power up to his ultimate level because of your ego.
They all do that shit.
I don't give a fuck what they all do.
They all do that
nigga
shit.
Fucked you up.
Yep, and he fucked him up. He did.
But Krillin made the mistake first.
He did.
But
because
Krillin had a better reason.
Nope.
He didn't want to kill the bitch.
Bullshit. Not bullshit because he did the same stupid shit by not killing Vegeta because Kakarot said, no, don't kill him. He's one of my Saiyans. Let him go,
But
Krillin.
did that turn out to be a mistake or a blessing?
It was a mistake.
How? Vegeta's part of the team now.
No. He could have killed him and moved on.
But Vegeta's part of the team now. He didn't come back to kill anybody.
But that doesn't mean that if Krillin didn't stab him, Goku wouldn't have went Super Saiyan. Goku didn't go Super Saiyan because of Vegeta.
About who would have went Super Saiyan. I'm talking about now you got Ultra Instinct Ego on your side.
Now,
Yeah,
after you're trained,
he's part of the Z Fighters.
Now, after how many years? After how many times you tried to?
If Vegeta died when they went to Namek, they would have been done. He helped save them.
If Vegeta died when they went to
all
Namek,
of them would have been dead before Goku got there. Vegeta wasn't there. It's a blessing that he didn't kill
brother,
him.
if Vegeta had just finished Cell, he had the chance.
They all would have been dead.
No.
Vegeta had to help them fight the Ginyu Force.
No, he wouldn't have been dead because they would have been able to use Dende to get all the Dragon Balls and use the wish. It was because of Vegeta that they were hiding from him and hiding Dende from him.
So you telling me Goku asked him not to? So it's Goku's fault.
Well, it's Goku's fault to not stab him.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
If you're saying that Krillin should have killed him, the leader of the Z Fighters told him not to. So it's Goku's fault.
Fuck you, leader. You're down on your luck, and I'm stabbing this nigga
Bring
because
the whole circumstance into play, nigga. You said don't do it. You, my best friend, the strongest nigga here. You said no. If Superman, you know what Superman did in the Justice League movie when they all got washed up?
I'm listening.
Watch this. They all got washed.
I'm listening.
Darkseid, Doomsday. They all the heroes died. And the ones who didn't die got captured. It was fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what Superman said? We going to fight. Batman said, hey, nigga. He said, hey, shut the fuck up, Bruce. I said, we going over there, and we gonna fuck that nigga up. It's Superman's fault. He called the shot. The team followed. You shouldn't have put that. You should have left it at this. Leave it at this scenario.
Okay. So I mean, even if we
Krillin's fault.
Krillin's fault. I'm agreeing.
I'm gonna go
It's
with
Krillin
who
fucking
did
fault.
the fuck up first. Fuck up. Vegeta's my favorite character. But
Mine
fuck
too.
But fuck a favorite.
Goku's my goated character,
But
Vegeta is
my
like
dog.
related to me as a
Goku
father.
is my favorite character. We know Goku's the GOAT.
Yeah.
But Vegeta's my personal favorite.
Right.
But
Because you see how
Krillin
you
fucked
keep
up
on
first.
listening
Krillin fucked up first.
Yeah.
So timeline wise, it's your fault.
Yeah.
We could have avoided all if you had pressed the fucking button.
Yes.
Yeah.
So period. That's
As I said, regardless of if Vegeta said, you know what, I'm gonna wait for you to power up. Let Cell start powering up. Button, boom. You can't do shit. You can't go no further past that. Who you gonna absorb? 16? 16 was
look,
not getting absorbed.
like
It wasn't
I said,
happening.
Like I said, it's Krillin's fault.
Let me read chat. Hold on. Let me go up a little bit. Galaxy Storm said Vegeta no diff.
No diff.
Nah, that's crazy.
It's
No
Krillin.
diff is crazy. Brooklyn just said, but Krillin had Cell dead also, but he wanted some cheeks. Facts,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah.
Hey,
Facts.
listen, at least he married the cheeks. It wasn't for nothing.
No, he said it was
He got
perfect.
him a baddie.
He did. He died quick.
Scroll down a little bit more. She said, brother, if Vegeta had just finished Cell when he had a chance, Cell never would have wouldn't reached his perfect form. Symbol.
Yeah, but Krillin could have stopped that before all
He
that.
could have
Right,
stopped the
right.
perfect
So-
form from even happening.
It's your fault first, so that's just what it is.
Right. You ain't even need Goku powering up, getting
We wouldn't have
Gohan
got
and
him, we wouldn't have got
all
there.
of that shit going in the hyperbolic time. You wouldn't even need all of that. Push the fucking button.
Right, boom.
Push the
Done.
goddamn button.
Done. Z Fighters win.
Push the button.
Yeah, push the goddamn button. Su Young said push the goddamn button. Push the goddamn button, Krillin.
Hey, Kojo, I gotta equate it to Superman all the time. Did
Always,
you see the
always.
new Superman?
No,
You didn't see King Omega Superman.
no,
Oh, Lord have mercy.
no.
Bro got the Omega symbol as a crown.
Ooh.
His cape is not even material no more. It's like energy. And he got energy around him.
So he Ultra Instinct
King
now.
Omega. Every punch that he punched
Yeah.
is attempting to create a galaxy
Ooh, wee.
off one punch.
Ooh.
But we ain't gonna get into all that.
Man, we ain't gonna
get into all that.
Don't start your shit.
There's not-
Don't start your shit. Kojo said Vegeta only let. Hold on, let's scroll down. Vegeta only let Cell achieve perfect form because he cocky.
Yes.
Krillin was self-serving in the situation, but still Vegeta fault. No, no, Koza. You don't get to say that part and then make it Vegeta fault.
Nigga just start blaming Vegeta for everything.
Yo, it's crazy. Bro, Vegeta let it happen, yes, but Krillin had the button. If it would have been pressed, the button, and they wait. If it would have pressed the button, they all would have singing sunshine and rainbows. He would have been. He'd been lit. Mad lit. The Diggs in the building drop a bomb for the Diggs. He said Krillin for sure. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's Krillin. Krillin. It just comes up to timeline. You fucked up first, it's your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. What it is.
Regardless if Krillin got the button first or after, he had the button. He had the key
Press the button.
to finish this, to make this shit
Press the
never
button.
ever happen. Press the goddamn button, Su
He's not
Young.
human, bro.
Push the goddamn button. All right, we got more. We got more. All right,
Oh shit.
2 questions, chat. Let's start with the first one. You see the 4 people in the picture. There's Debo. There's Goldmouth. Well, let me say where they're from. Debo from Friday. Goldmouth from Life. If you don't know the part, you gonna eat your cornbread. Melvin from Baby Boy and Damon from Friday After Next.
Debo's not it.
Question 1 is who wins in a 4-way brawl?
Melvin.
Melvin?
You taking Melvin in the fight?
Yup.
Melvin, that nigga did jail time. Anybody up there go to jail?
Melvin
Damon
was
went to jail.
It was gay. Fruity booty. Nobody want that nigga.
But that don't mean he.
No.
That,
No.
Debo lost to Craig. He's done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Debo lost to Craig.
Goldmouth is in jail.
He ain't do shit for one
Hold on.
cornbread.
Debo lost to no. Damon, physically, yeah, but I think Melvin has way more
You
like
didn't
grit.
see that nigga?
I
Right.
think he got, and he
You
diesel
think
too.
he got more grit?
Yes.
It's crazy.
I'm going
You
Melvin.
picking Damon? I'm picking Damon.
In the 4-way fight,
No,
Did
I
pick
think-
Damon? Debo went to jail. Debo did go to jail.
Debo did go to jail.
He got
He
out.
lost to Craig. in
All
the
of them
fist
went
He
to.
lost to Craig.
All of
To
them
plot
were.
armor.
All of them was in jail. All of them in jail.
Craig.
Cheated with a brick.
To plot armor.
fight. Craig did cheat with a brick.
Damon Deathwood. See, the thing said Damon Deathwood win. I'm kind of leaning on Damon.
I'm going Melvin, son.
Nah, I like Melvin.
Physically,
I'm going
Damon.
this
But I think personality-wise, Melvin.
The
is like-
fruitiness.
That's what's
what
fucking
you're
with
You got. You got to.
That was gay.
You got. You
Nah,
got.
I'm
You
going-
got to. You got to think about the
But
stock.
Melvin
He
is
put.
not a small
Damon
dude
only
either.
He not.
weakness is nuts.
He- He
That's
put
all-
him
that's
in a
everybody-
chokehold. He big as
Everybody
fuck.
up here weaknesses they nuts. Let's be real.
Yeah, everybody.
Right.
They all men.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why.
Right, right.
I'm-
CEO Billy said that.
They all men.
Chat, you
Who
see
said
who
that?
it. CEO's Billy. Damn
Damn it, Billy.
Damon
That's
only
everybody
weakness
up
is
there
his nuts.
nuts, though.
Everybody can get. Look, Goldmouth face look like he getting his nuts crunched right now.
Nah, Debo's not it for this one. I'm gonna
Nah.
go Melvin.
I'm going Damon.
I'm going Melvin.
I think Damon would kick Debo ass, no diff.
No diff.
I think Goldmouth Damon would have to muscle him, but it's gonna be hard because it's a big ass dude.
I think that's mid-diff. He's done.
But
I think the
Melvin's
battle-
his problem.
Yeah.
Melvin. I was just about to say that the fights, but these two got the bottom.
Yeah,
Melvin is
right.
his problem.
Right.
I think Melvin will win though.
I'm leaning on Damon.
I'm
Me too,
thinking
for me
Melvin
too.
got hands. Damon looked like he went to
I'm
jail and
going
worked
Damon,
out to get big,
Yeah, fuck butt.
but I think Melvin got hands.
I think so too.
I think Melvin got
That's
hands.
what he
Just because you
did.
big don't mean
That's
nothing.
what he
Right.
I
did.
think Melvin about that
That's
shit.
what he did.
Yeah.
though.
That's
I-
the difference.
okay.
And he's not small either.
I'll
You see
give
what
you
I'm
that.
saying?
I'll give
You
you
see what I'm
that.
saying?
I'll give you that.
I hear a bunch of butt
He
sex
was
right
too
here.
thirsty for ass. Damon.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what turned
He
me
really
off.
was.
I
Nigga,
think
you
he
don't
just
really wanna
he
fight,
got
you just
big
wanna
in
fuck
jail.
niggas.
He
Yeah.
got the genetics for it.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
Melvin
bro.
ain't small, but I think he about
I
that shit.
think Melvin's smarter.
And he about that shit.
Right, he's
Like
street
if you
smart,
put Melvin
right.
in a situation where he gotta get you,
Yeah.
you getting stabbed
You're
up.
getting caught. You're gonna
Right.
get got.
I'm going Melvin.
Me too.
I'm going
But
Melvin.
Damon is just.
He's just
I think.
looking for butt.
I think
Think
no.
about it. Think
He's
about
just
it.
looking for butt. Stop with the butt.
Think about it. His whole character was based on
Hey,
that.
yo.
The whole character. I
Like,
can't
no,
vote for
that's
him for that
wild.
either.
Right,
I
no.
can't vote. His whole character
Nigga
trying
was
to fuck
What's
Cat
that?
Williams.
Right.
Nigga was thirsty.
So came in the bathroom.
Right.
yeah.
That's weird.
Cat Williams
Hey,
and
yo.
Tupac apparently. The Tupac. He was like
Yeah, on the couch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the
yeah,
couch?
yeah.
It was a whole living room of bitches.
I gotta go
He
Melvin.
went to him.
Yeah, I was
Right.
like, Melvin
A whole bunch
about
of bitches
that
in the
shit.
room.
Yeah.
You
And
looking
I
at the
think
one with the
even
perm.
outside of
Nigga,
jail,
wow.
Melvin is a real
said, "Give me that."
street nigga.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think Damon is a real street nigga.
Nah.
I think Melvin is a real.
Thank you,
what?
Jeff Melvin.
Melvin.
Yeah.
I'm going Melvin, son.
Me too.
I'm going Damon.
Yeah,
You still voting for the
I'm
bitch?
still going
I'm
Damon.
going with Damon. don't
I
care.
think Damon. I
He
think
might be
Damon will
Steve
come
Fish,
out
but
of
he
that.
whipping
Escovitch
Melvin's ass.
with the onions on it.
Oh
He
my
whipping
God.
Melvin's
let
ass.
me hit chat real quick. Let me hit chat.
I'm jacking.
Welcome in, everybody.
Welcome in, y'all. Let me hit chat real quick. Chat says, CEO Billy said this mad tough. BK Jeff said, bro, save her, then wish her. Oh, my bad. Too far back, y'all. Too far.
Wait, CEO Billy said he going to go Goldmouth.
Oh, wait a minute. CEO Billy said I'm gonna have to take Goldmouth. I feel like Damon. I feel like Damon wins.
I feel like the reason why Goldmouth is not going to win because I think like Melvin and Damon is physically strong to get
Right,
around
he
that
just
fat
big and
weight.
bold.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know if he got
Big and
hands
bold.
like that.
I think all of them could get around Goldmouth with the weight, but if Goldmouth lands the grapple, they are in
But you
trouble.
never even seen
I
that
don't
in the
think that's
movie
gonna
life,
work with
though. You didn't even
Melvin,
see
though.
him fight in
I
life.
think
What
Melvin
you
is
talking about?
really
His
a
size?
street nigga, like a
Yeah.
real street nigga.
Yeah, yeah.
And a back in the day street
Yeah.
nigga. He want them niggas like, listen here, young blood.
From the hood, right?
You don't want
do
none
that.
of
We
this.
did see
You
him
don't want
fight.
to do
He
that.
whipped
You don't want
Eddie
none of
Murphy's
this.
ass.
Young blood.
Oh, yeah,
Next
he
you know
did.
you
He
sleeping.
whipped Eddie Murphy's ass.
Next
Yeah.
you know you
My bad,
sleeping.
cornbread.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I gotta go Melvin. Melvin's a
Melvin,
real
there
nigga.
you go. Like,
I get you.
he taught him some shit. He told Jody some shit and all that.
Yo,
at the
he
end.
yoked that nigga.
Yoked
up.
him up.
Yoked
What?
him up.
Took the gun, wiped it off.
And he did the frog fuck on mom.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on. This nigga want to crush ass. This
This
Damon
nigga-
do too much.
Hey,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna lie.
his
Jody's
mom
mom was
was
kind of fire though.
She, bad bitch.
That-
Bad
That's-
bitch.
That's Shireen from House Party.
Yeah.
Shereen
See,
from
did you
House
see how he
Party.
punched Jody through that glass table? Knocked
Yeah.
his ass clear.
Damn.
Yo, he sent that grown man flying, son.
Yeah.
Right.
And that wasn't his strongest punch.
No.
Even that's a love tap.
Yeah.
You know, cooking
Big,
breakfast naked.
Yo, that was
Butt ass
disrespectful. He was
nigga.
no,
bugging
it
with that.
wasn't.
He was
David.
bugging with that. Nigga, you know I live here too.
The dance is
butt-ass
rolling
nigga,
with what
you know
I
I live
said.
here too.
Took my son with
It
some
ain't his
eggs.
mom dukes that
Nigga
live
said
No,
here.
no.
that was purposely
Now
done.
you gonna ask me if I want some Kool-Aid.
That was
Like,
purposely.
said, you know
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
Kool-Aid, not
You
that.
want some
Kool-Aid.
sausage?
Oh, yeah.
That's
No, he said cool. Oh, yeah.
He said sausage. You want some sausage?
Nah, nigga, hell
He
no.
said that sausage.
Nigga, put your drawers on, my nigga. Put your drawers
You
on.
want some sausage?
This nigga
What?
was
Well,
this
all
nigga
y'all
was
niggas
over
want a
here.
man that's gonna cook for y'all
This
mothers.
nigga
Don't do
was
that.
dog dicking moms, and now you
What?
naked out with
Brought
beef
through the whole
sausage.
room.
Nah.
He was everywhere.
Mom Dukes was in love.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. What's wrong with that?
Nigga was froggy in her shit.
Froggy.
I was like, damn,
I'm
right?
done with
The
y'all.
fuck?
Debo definitely loses this.
Yeah, he
ain't
definitely
doing
loses
shit.
this. The only person Debo could probably be beef is Goldmouth.
His brother.
And Goldmouth.
Yeah, Debo can beat Goldmouth.
I can see that happening. Cause Debo ain't no pussy.
No,
He not pussy.
Debo
He's
is
just not physically imposing like the rest of them.
no. But that's well, I won't say that either because Debo is tall as shit.
Yeah, but he let
That's
Craig.
it.
He like
Craig,
7
Craig,
foot.
Craig knuckled up with him. Craig took a couple of hits from him and got back up.
Yeah. Coulter said ain't no. Wait, no. Jeff said cheated with a brick. Talking about Debo.
Debo.
Koza said, "Ain't no cheating in the street. Bricks, teeth, pocket
Hey,
sand,
that's true
all
too.
fair
Pocket
game."
sand.
That's true too. Who said Melvin can't slap you with a brick?
Right?
Fact.
That's a fact.
See, yo,
It
bitch
is
said,
a
now
street
go
fight.
mouth mad slow. The dig said, Damon grabbed everyone by the nuts and it's over.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but if you
If
carry
you grab
pocket
him
sand,
by the
you a
nuts, he
nervous
gonna
ass
like
nigga.
it.
Yeah.
If you carry pocket sand, you a nervous ass nigga. Nigga say,
So chat, let's I wanna put up a poll, but I can't put a poll. That's I can.
Do slash poll.
Yeah. That's slash poll, yeah.
Slash poll.
Slash poll. Oh, excuse me. YN
Right
antics. Oh shit.
Learn something new every day.
Slash poll. Enter.
He said he's fucking
Oh,
lazy.
yeah.
He knows some shit.
There you go.
Oh, this nigga. You're hired. you're,
Not that you're hired.
you're hired to be a new tech guy. You're hired.
You fire this nigga every other week.
Y'all got an in-house tech geek.
4-way bro. Chat, I'm putting up a poll real quick. I want to see who actually comes out on top for here. Pause.
Nigga was about to go.
Drop a
right
bomb. That was crazy.
You got to be-
Hey, yo!
Got to be more careful. Because we talking about Damon was grabbing nuts and
Yeah,
shit.
there's not a lot of nut grabbing going on.
What am I gonna go take
I
a
mean,
jog?
you gonna take a jog.
Why? Why am I gonna go take a jog though? I'm too
I don't know.
confused. Melvin got that.
Melvin got it.
I'm
He the
gonna go
most
Damon.
gangster.
He's the only actual real gangster
That's
up
crazy.
there.
Right, that's crazy. He ain't gonna know why.
All right, chat. Poll is up, chat. Poll is up. Who wins in this 4-way brawl? Put y'all bets in. Put
How
y'all
long you put
bets
the poll
in.
up for?
1 minute. 1 minute. Put y'all bets in, chat. Put y'all bets in. I want to see who actually wins this.
He said, Koza, you talking shit. Debo run up on you. You gonna fold up.
So that's
I'm not
question.
gonna
Why
lie, I
y'all
don't
doing the
want Debo
poll?
running up on me neither,
Why
nigga.
right? While y'all doing the poll, that's question number 2. Who you think you could take in the fight?
Debo.
Debo.
Debo immediately.
Debo immediately. Look at me. Look at Goldmouth. Let's be real.
He's
Look at
tossing
me and look at Melvin.
completely.
I think I could take Goldmouth, bro. I'm not gonna hold you.
Look at me and look at Damon. First of all, I'm not going nowhere near Damon.
Debo
I'll
can
take
barely
Debo.
see you cross-eyed.
I'm not going nowhere near Damon
I'm not
or
going-
Melvin.
First of all, I'm almost the same size as Cat.
Right.
I'm not going nowhere
Good
near
choice.
Damon.
Oh, yeah, it's over
Yeah,
for
good
you.
choice.
Wise choice. Wise choice.
I'm over
I
Debo.
would say Debo. My second choice would be Goldmouth because I'm faster and more agile than him. But if he catches me, it's a wrap.
Yeah, I think I could take Goldmouth.
I'm gonna go Debo.
I'm going Debo.
So they said Damon would be the winner of that.
Wow.
Debo won, Melvin won, Goldmouth none.
Wow.
Damon
y'all
wins.
some punks.
Y'all want the nigga that's
They-
Well, y'all
They
voted
know
for Damon
they know
for.
Damon going.
because he big and brolic and greasy.
Yeah, greasy. Why you have to act
Not the
greasy?
titty, not the titty.
Greasy was
Right,
extra.
that- You saw he was looking in that bathroom, nigga.
Yeah,
His
he
sweat
was
and
wild.
Got
bullet.
to be.
He was
Nigga
wild.
had to vice grip his nuts to get away. That's crazy.
Because he was finna die on that floor.
No, he wasn't gonna kill him. He wanted his ass. He wasn't gonna kill
No,
him.
he was
That's
gonna fuck
death.
him. That is death.
That's-
death.
that's
death.
death.
Imagine going to the doctor and having to explain. They touched my boo boo.
All right, so I guess.
Like the nigga asshole the size of a fucking Matrix hallway after Damon gets a hole in him.
I'm not going nowhere
Oh,
near
no
Damon.
parts of that.
He was greasy.
And he just walked around all pervy.
Right, that's
His mother had a mustache.
And then using the fact that he gay. Bitch, what
Yeah.
you doing? That ain't cute.
Yeah.
You like your son too fat.
Oh my God.
Koza
Koza
said, you got
said,
to be more careful.
"Got to be more careful." Debo only scary riding the bike. Galaxy said, "I don't know how to ride. I don't know how to ride on. I'm good then." Talking about the bike. Big Brooklyn said, "Koza, you talking shit. Debo run up on you. You gonna
Koza
fold."
don't fight. He aimed. I feel you.
See?
I feel you.
Koza don't fight. He aim. Look at the Koza.
That's that Florida
the
nigga
emo.
shit.
Yeah.
That's
That's that Detroit nigga shit.
property.
That's that Detroit nigga
You
shit.
put a Detroit nigga in Florida, it's over.
It's over. Big Brooklyn got the
he
Lex
said, "Can I-"
Luthers.
Diggs is stupid. Can I bring a chair to the fight?
Can I-
Chair? Can I bring a gun?
That part.
Yeah, laser they ass.
A the Diggs want to have a wrestling match.
Yeah,
with
you want to
niggas.
fight? Get out of
He
here.
said tables, ladders, and
Nah,
chairs.
I'm blaming
Yeah,
niggas.
nah. The Diggs is crazy. Guys, is what I'm saying. Gold Mountain just did a Big Mac and then we good.
Detroit said she
Right.
tried to slide Greasy in there. You
It
know
wasn't
that?
true.
You did.
Right, yo.
He was mad early in that bathroom.
Damn.
Jeff said I didn't vote. That's why I was waiting for the phone. Damn,
Like a
Jeff.
baby, that's like,
Okay, who's your vote, Jeff?
I
Who's your
think he
vote?
said Melvin.
Come
Real
on.
niggas know.
Melvin is
Melvin
that nigga.
is
He's that
the
guy.
real nigga on that list.
He is.
I believe.
So if you had a fight, right?
Right.
And you had one person call you, call it Damon. What if you call it Damon and he wants your peanut butter? What you gonna do?
He
then?
gonna say in order for me to-
Damon's on my side.
No,
he gonna be on your side.
As long as he ain't in the back, I'm cool. He can stay on the side all day long, nigga.
No,
right
because
here.
you gotta worry. That's the thing. You gotta worry about that when
Melvin
you
gonna
think,
want a
baby.
payback, which is you.
No.
No,
I'm
what you
going
mean
with
no?
Melvin.
You can't tell him no.
I'm taping my ass cheeks together.
If you gotta do that, you shouldn't pick him.
Exactly.
Everybody got time
I'm
for that.
picking Melvin. Melvin gonna be like, look at
I'm-
you,
I'm
blood.
Yeah, he
Wait,
gonna teach you. He gonna teach you the game.
Yeah,
He gonna teach you
he-
the
Right.
game.
You gonna
You
go
see-
get you
you
gonna
see
go
how
get him,
Melvin-
and then after that he gonna go slide on my mom's. No, nigga,
You
get
see
your
how
ass
Melvin-
out
What,
of
your
here.
ass slide on or your mama's? Your mama's
Damn.
grown.
Why I
Your
gotta choose?
mama's grown.
Why do I have to choose? What the
Your
fuck?
mother
Hey,
is grown.
Melvin, your new daddy. You better
Right.
behave yourself.
I
If
gotta
you get into some
choose.
shit, you can call him. You'll have your
You can
back.
call this nigga.
You gotta worry about. You gotta
Jeff
keep your
Jeff
door.
said Melvin, so that'd be 2 for Melvin, and still Damon wins.
Damon still wins.
Damon still wins.
Nah,
Listen, I'm going with Melvin. all
Yo,
day.
listen.
They wildin' with
They
that
wildin'
Damon
with
shit.
that-
I'm
that
not fucking
Damon
with
I'm
shit.
him.
gonna call him.
He's just so creepy.
I'm
Yeah.
It's crazy work.
Call him at 3 a.m. Nigga, this
Let's-
is not a booty call. I need you to be serious here.
That's crazy.
I need you to be serious
That's
here.
crazy. You gotta even say that.
Nigga coming to your room to check on you to really check on you.
Right. Nah.
Nigga said, what's up?
Booty blankets there, young
Ew,
blood.
You good over there?
creepy.
You good over
And he
there?
don't take no
he
for
gonna
an
be
answer.
like, scoot over.
And he don't take
What?
no for an answer.
Scoot over?
The fuck, nigga, I'm getting up.
And he mad big. Where
I'm
was lean on
moving
your neck?
out.
Where else was lean on you like this? It's over for you.
Ew.
Nah, he can't. Nigga said,
Because it's true. I'm going with Melvin all
I
day.
be throwing up.
Melvin know how to plant weed.
Yeah, you
All
know.
that.
Yeah, he was gardening.
Yup.
Nigga was picking
tomatoes.
tomatoes.
Gangsta ass shit.
Yeah.
Nigga know,
Gangsta shit.
nigga know how to garden.
Can't nobody tell him shit.
Gangsta
You can't
ass
tell him
shit.
shit,
Oh
bro.
my God.
You want tomatoes? Yeah, nigga.
Right. Right.
Mom been cooking
But he
later.
can cook breakfast.
And he can cook breakfast.
Not his, not
Nakedly.
Nah,
I'll-
what the
I'ma
fuck?
move out. I'm
Put his
still moving out.
drawers
I'm still
on.
moving out.
Put your drawers
I'm
on.
out.
I need you to put your dick away,
I'm
bro.
out of
Right,
here.
put your dick away. Right, put your dick away.
Need you to put your dick away,
That
sir.
It's so
Yeah.
funny.
Get your dick out my face.
You can't be in here making beef with your beef out, fam. Like, what you doing?
That's how you gotta do
Nah.
it.
Melvin is a wild nigga, Zach.
You want grits with tits out, so you got
Hey, listen now.
beef with
Hey,
meat
yeah,
out.
that doesn't sound like a bad idea. You making some tomorrow?
Shut
No,
up.
man.
We're just about this nasty way you want
Oh.
He want grits.
Next video.
Oh my god.
So annoying.
Want some grits? And some tits.
I hate him so much.
Oh my
Next
god.
Oh, God.
All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see what else. All right, chat. 2 questions here.
Ah.
Which show ending hurt the most is
Fresh
the
Prince.
first question.
Fresh Prince. Fresh Prince. I'm going fresh.
Which show ending hurt the most? This is the first question.
Fresh Prince.
I'm gonna go with Martin
I'ma
only
go
because
Fresh
I
Prince.
felt like Martin was forced because of shit with him and Gina.
I feel
So
like
it
I
didn't
feel
get a
like
proper ending.
I feel like Fresh Prince was just a bigger, broader show.
It is, but I feel like his made more sense. The Fresh Prince ended. Everybody moved.
Yeah, but
Everybody
it
did
ended-
their own
it
thing.
ended.
Martin's ended because Gina did the whole.
Yeah, but
stupid
everybody
shit.
moved as well. They went to New York.
Yeah, people,
Gina got a new
yeah,
job.
they closed it out right, but for me,
I think it was Martin.
I just feel like
I'm
I feel
going
like
fresh.
Martin could have went longer.
I'm going,
Martin could have went longer.
If that shit didn't happen, it would have went longer.
Martin could have went longer.
Fresh Prince could have went longer.
Yeah.
The kids could have went to college in Bel Air.
Everybody got so grown. Nikki became irrelevant.
Yeah, but they grown too.
But they
They been grown from start.
Ashley and them was kids and they grew up. They grown. Ain't nothing else to talk about.
That's trippy. Grown life.
Everybody in Martin was adults.
Nah, I feel like Fresh Prince. I was more hurt with Fresh. I love Martin.
Yeah.
But Fresh Prince was like my.
Yeah, I was hurt more off of Fresh Prince ending, but my more favorite of the 2 is the Martin, of
Which one you
course.
voting for the question?
For the question, Fresh Prince.
Fresh Prince. I go Fresh.
I'm gonna go with
Martin
Martin.
heard it too. I didn't want Martin to end, but I feel like
I
Fresh
didn't want
Prince
to
took a
lose.
bigger like.
Yeah, it took a bigger
Took a
hit.
bigger hit.
I was like, God damn,
I
bro,
was
this
like,
ain't it.
damn. And then he was in the house. It was empty.
Yeah.
And he was the last one to turn the light off.
Yeah, look right there in the picture. man,
Yeah,
right
I
there
was
in
just
the
like,
picture.
no, Will, no.
I said, come on,
Oh, yeah.
man. What the fuck
Uncle
going
Phil,
on?
why can't you just stay, Uncle Phil? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Damn.
I think everybody voted for Fresh, though.
Yeah, I see a bunch of Fresh Prince up there in chat right now. I see Fresh Prince. Galaxy says easy both and start crying. Jesus Christ. Last season of Martin was hitting, so the ending was 7-10. Okay, I agree. He said last season of Martin wasn't hitting.
It wasn't.
It was like
That last season was kind of corny.
But yeah, it was
I love Martin more, but Fresh Prince was more heartfelt.
the more heartfelt
Yes, it
at the
was.
ending of it. Yes. Mm.
Fresh Prince OP was a banger itself. He was low key the heartthrob at one point. I mean, Will Smith was a heartthrob for decades.
Yeah.
See, it did. The Gina Martin beef.
That Gina and Martin beef hurt the show, and because if you notice in the last season, Gina and Martin was in two separate places.
Yes. Yeah.
They couldn't be in
It
the
was
same
so
place.
No.
stupid. It was stupid. She got left on a plane. I mean, on a boat and
It was
shit.
just-
It was like,
it-
okay, it's not funny.
At
no
that
more,
point, the show ran its course.
Yeah.
It was over.
Yeah.
I'll be real with you though. Martin was funnier in the beginning. In the end seasons,
Yeah, it got dropped.
got dry. Fresh Prince stayed consistent
That's true.
the whole way
I just
through.
didn't like Elisa got in. It was like, all right. It became too much.
Lisa, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of life. Niggas date.
Yeah, but
Beulah.
he wasn't as funny no more. And I feel like he really wasn't funnier than Carl.
Fresh Prince changed when they changed Aunt Viv.
Yeah. I agree.
That was.
I agree.
Yeah.
But do you feel like he was more funny than Carlton?
Carlton was the.
He was the comic
Funnier.
relief.
Carlton was the comic relief.
Yeah.
Carlton was.
Carlton's the
That's a
comic
very
relief.
quaint character.
And,
Carlton was
but and
very
the
good.
craziest thing is because I saw a little interview about Carlton because he did that role. It
He
was
couldn't
hard
get no
for
other
him.
role.
Right.
Mhm.
It
I
was
saw
hard
too.
for him to
It
get out of
happens
I
like
saw it
that,
too. They
though.
said they-
It's like Urkel.
We can't
Urkel
give
became
you a
Urkel.
role because everybody just wants you to be Carlton.
Right.
Same thing with
Same
Urkel.
thing with
Everybody
Urkel.
wanted him to
Right.
be Urkel.
Everybody
Yeah.
wanted him to do Urkel
Yeah.
shit. Even after the season ended with him being like Stephon and all of
Yeah.
that shit. Just
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Urkel.
Urkel.
Funny thing is,
We needed
Urkel,
that I do
Urkel
that.
was just a comic relief character.
yeah.
He's not the star of the show.
Right. He was
He became the star of the show.
after like the third or fourth
Yeah,
episode.
the star of the show is Carl.
Right. No,
He's the-
Star Show was
Carl.
no. It was
It says it at the beginning, starring. Carl is the star of the show.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a
Season
woman,
1,
though.
season 2, when the show first started, the intended star was Carl until Urkel took over.
no.
You know
It
who's the
was
star then?
The lady, Joe Payton.
Joe Marie
It was her
Payton.
first.
His wife?
Yes.
No, it was Carl.
No, and she was ported from her
Doesn't
from the
matter
show.
what she's ported from. In Family Matters, it says it in the beginning, starring Reginald Vell Johnson.
Yeah, well,
starring.
yeah, we got that
They're
part.
not gonna put starring if you're not the star.
But everybody is starring at the
No,
only things that
it
pops
says
up is
starring
starring.
Reginald Vell Johnson. Everybody else, they just showed their name. Those shows always showed you who the star is. The star of the show was Carl. Not an opinion, what I'm telling you. Until Steve ended up taking over.
See, I always thought it was Joe Marie Payton.
No. She came from the other show. Yes, that doesn't mean you're the star.
So why make someone else the star of a show?
From
But
another show.
but do a sequel of someone from their
So
show.
how many other people was ported over from other shows? It's not.
And was it the star? Tell me what other people was ported from a show and was
Well,
the
why
star?
would the show say starring Reginald Vell Johnson? He's the head of the household. The show actually followed Carl more than her.
Later, yes.
No, in the beginning, the show followed Carl more than her. What Family Fat were you watching, bro?
The same one you was watching.
Apparently not. I'm telling you, Carl was the star. It's not an opinion. What I'm telling you,
Perfect Strangers.
it's not what I think.
Perfect Strangers is the thing is where they came from. That's the
Yeah,
show.
that's where
Perfect
Harriet
Strangers.
first was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. All right, so I think Fresh Prince won. What's the second question?
Second question is, which show would you rather be on?
Fresh
Fresh
Prince.
Prince. Martin.
Fresh Prince. I don't want to live in the projects. Fuck wrong with you.
Uh,
I want to live in Bel Air. Period.
He said, "Fuck wrong with you."
Nah, I'll take the Martin.
Nah, that's cool for you. I'm not going to the projects.
I'm not going to the phone.
Nigga literally just asked me, do I want to live in a mansion in Bel Air or do I want to live in the projects? That's literally what you just asked me.
That's just the living condition. What about everything else?
Yeah, everybody around me is rich. I think I can get richer living with them.
No, I don't want that bougie
Fuck
shit.
wrong
around
with
me.
you. That's cool for you. That's cute.
Nah.
That's cute.
That's the second question, Chad. Which show would you rather been on?
Fresh Prince.
Martin was more real, more authentic.
That's what's up. I want to go to Bel Air College, nigga.
Nope.
I want to go to Bel Air Academy.
That's so cool.
I don't want to hang out at Nipsey's and
And
eat
get
wings all
judged.
day.
If you get judged everywhere you go, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, I'm down for the Nipsey with wings.
Right.
I'm down with getting in the car with Cole and the Pacer.
Right. Jerome.
Or we could drive an Uncle Phil's Benz.
And get judged everywhere you go. I ain't got time for that.
You get
I
judged
think it was a lot more.
Not in Martin.
I think it was
You
a
got
lot
higher
more
chance of getting
fun.
shot.
I think it was a lot more fun shit happening in Martin than in Fresh
I
Prince.
mean, that's cool too. I want to be in Bel Air. You're not getting me out of Bel Air, bro. Fuck yeah, I told you.
No. I mean, no. To each his own. Just
No. The world of Martin definitely looks fun.
right.
But the conditions, I'm not choosing the hood over Bel Air.
Well,
not.
I don't think a lot of people would do that specific thing,
But
but
that's literally what it ends up being. You're gonna live in the hood over here. You're going to. Everybody in the
that's-
cast of the show lived in the hood.
that's only that. That's only that part.
That's the part I don't want.
If that's the only thing that you're basing it off of, then
Yes.
to each his own. Everything
damn
else
right.
I'm basing it off of.
What?
The connection with the people of themselves. Excuse me, chat. The connection with the people. Tommy with the no job shit, Cole working at the airport and this, Pam and Gina working in the marketing thing. I want to be a part of all of that
That's
shit.
cool. I'm going to Bel Air.
I want to be a part of all of that
I
shit.
wanna
Now,
go to
I
Bel
want
Air
to.
Academy.
I want to be a
go
part
Bel
of
Air
Jerome with the
College.
oot show you ride. I want to be a part of King Beat with the damn girls on the TV.
I'll
I want
come
to be.
visit you, but I go back to Bel Air. I'll visit, because all that shit is cool, but I don't want to live in it.
Right.
One day, you remember the day they woke up, the car was on bricks? Nah, I'm good. I'm good.
The thing said this. Said one of the things too. Martin, because I want to be brother man from the fifth floor. From the fifth
The
floor.
nigga woke up, the car was on bricks. I'm good. I'm fucking good.
Baldoni, yeah. Drop a bomb for
The
Baldoni.
nigga was in the car. He was in the car, bro. Nah, that shit was crazy. You had a fun?
Like, how did you not see the nigga? do
Right, that shit got on my nerves. That was stupid.
Fresh Prince, sorry, brother. Look,
Baldoni.
some of us already live in the projects. Galaxy said.
Yeah, like,
I've never been to the
We're already there. Well, not no more, but there. Already was there.
why you want to go back to there?
I've never been there.
Fuck.
Koza said I'll visit. He said I'll visit.
I'll visit. I definitely come
He
kick
laughing
it.
at you saying I'll visit.
Yeah, I come kick it and shit. Y'all got fried chicken tonight? Hell yeah, nigga. I bring the Henny. You know what I'm saying?
Koza said I'd rather be on Fresh Prince. Jeffrey seemed cool
Nah,
to
Jeffrey
kick
was
it
cool
with.
as fuck.
He was mad cool. Mad cool. Baldoni said the same thing. I'd rather be on Fresh
Damn
Prince,
right.
basically be rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get y'all rich part of it. I get that
And then
part.
on Fresh Prince, you got a better path of staying successful.
Martin was never broke. I make this like he was broke because he lived in the
Martin was
projects. No, he wasn't.
Nigga didn't have a car. The nigga lived in the fucking
That
projects.
don't mean you broke when you lived in
Oh,
the
okay.
projects.
So hey, listen, you voluntarily live in the projects. That's a problem.
He had his own show, radio show. He was doing it.
But we also
You
got
doing
we also
what
got
we
to
doing.
factor we also got to factor in that Uncle Phil had a car, not
Will. He
Will
never had
and
one.
Carl-
Uncle
Carlton.
Phil also paid for you to go to college and all of that. Your setup is
No,
different.
it was about cars.
No, fuck that.
Oh,
The
you
nigga,
said cars.
the nigga paying for you to go through college.
we talking about cars, bro.
Okay, fuck the car.
We were talking about
You
cars.
got a college education.
Moving the goalposts. Drop a goddamn
Okay,
ball for
fine.
moving the
Martin
goalposts.
didn't have a car either.
They did get one. They just
And
fucked. They got
ripped
fucked
off.
up.
That's literally the point. Gina wasn't poor.
Gina wasn't.
Gina's not from the hood. She lived in the other side of town.
Yeah. So
She moved in with Martin.
Pam
eventually.
did too.
Nah, Pam's from the hood. All of them was from the hood,
Yeah.
but Gina.
But Pam moved in Gina's house eventually. That's what I'm saying.
Eventually, but Pam is from the hood.
Pam was from the hood.
All
from
of them
there
is
originally.
from the
Yeah.
hood, except for Gina.
Bigfoot said neither. One, they both were
Let
trash.
me translate
Damn.
that for Bigfoot. I like them both so much, but they're black and I can't admit it. That's what he said.
Jesus Christ. Drop a bomb for Bigfoot. Drop a bomb for Bigfoot. for
Welcome,
popping in here.
Bigfoot.
What up, bro? This guy. Plus,
Good
with Fresh
question,
Prince.
though.
Plus,
But you know what? Not to cut you off.
Mm,
Literally, how it's set up is how I would want it. I would rather live with Fresh Prince area,
Right.
and I'll come check y'all in the hood because that's where it's happening at.
Right.
But I don't want to
Right.
live in the hood.
right.
You get what I'm saying? I come check y'all, hang out, we go to Nipsey's, all that. You get what I'm saying? But I want to retreat back into Bel Air.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, you want to rest your head in something nice, something
Safe.
smooth.
Yeah,
something
yeah,
safe.
exactly.
Yeah.
I get that portion of it.
Sure, PS6 come out, Uncle Phil can afford that.
Right.
You got Shanae as your neighbor.
Yeah.
That's funny though. Every day, that's funny.
I would
Come
love
on
that
now,
shit,
right,
bro.
that's
Like,
funny.
that's
Come-
regular
come
shit.
home to
Rather
the
than a
first
beach
every
house?
day, no.
You don't want a beach house? That's a
No.
full apartment.
Not with my sister back there sleeping with every nigga. I don't want to be in that shit. Nah,
Eventually,
fuck that.
it just became Carthens in a Will spot.
Yeah.
That Uncle Phil Benson kicked him out and put him in the beach house.
Cam said real fresh as
You
CJ's
have a
jacket.
beach house. Was crazy enough.
Right, yeah.
What
You
up,
got
Cam?
a beach house.
Drop a bomb for my guy Cam Pop.
Gabby player.
Yeah. What's up, bro? Real fresh as CJ's jacket.
That is fresh, though. No, that is fresh.
Appreciate it.
That is
Appreciate it.
fresh.
Appreciate it. You
I
know.
picked that from you came in, but I've been giving you too much compliments when you come in.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I had to
I'm
keep
sorry.
that one.
I'm
You know what I'm
sorry.
saying?
You know, little red and black,
Got
little
the
red and
matching
black.
shoes,
No, get
Air
matching
Max.
Game Lounge hat with the, you know,
I
the
can't
good Air
stand
Maxes.
this
You know what I'm
nigga
saying?
sometimes. I gotta go shopping. But I gotta, you match the couch and the set. It's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy.
You know, this how we do. This how we do.
The show's over. It's time for CJ to go home.
Yeah. You know, I wash it, loan it to you. You know, it'll be a little. You
You
know,
gotta shrink it down a little bit.
you
No,
diesel.
I'm diesel. I'm
You
gonna fit it out.
diesel.
It's not big
It's cool.
enough. It's not big enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's cool. It's
Need
cool.
a triple XL.
Right. Chat is amazing. Good combos. Yardy says, Wagwan, chat, good vibes. Stay tuned for next week's event.
Check it out.
Check it out. Next week's event, y'all. Make sure y'all are popping in here. Yeah. Next week, you guys must come to the Game
This
Lounge.
is a big event. Y'all need all y'all to show up next week at 6 p.m. because we're having a special big stand-up for the Dixie Belly.
Yes.
We're having a baby shower for
baby shower.
CJ the DJ and the missus right here on the screen. So make sure y'all tune in to show love because they've been showing up every week and we just want to show them. We appreciate that.
Yes,
Make sure
yes.
y'all show up next Sunday
Kid-friendly
at 6
show.
p.m.
Yes. Kid-friendly show. It'll still be the same how Game Lounges always is. Maybe not the X-rated stuff. So Broke Nation,
Broke
tame
Nation.
yourself.
He be behaving.
Tame
He has
yourself.
been behaving. I wonder why.
Yes.
Right. Mr. Serbia.
We like you. We like
Mr.
you.
Serbia up here.
Be here more.
Stop playing with me. I put anime coochies up here. in a minute.
Hey,
Stop.
I haven't seen an anime pelvis
we have
in
not
a
seen
long
the coochie
time.
pop up.
I'll put my son Leone back up
I
there.
still
He's
remember
so
the day
good.
this nigga put a whole bunch of teeny boppers up there and
Yeah.
said, "Hey GK, which one you want?" I said, "How old are these bitches?"
How old?
Wait a minute.
Who?
Come on
Wait
now.
a minute.
Wait a minute,
Come
sir.
on now, don't do
You
that.
trying to get GK locked up?
I'll put my son Leone
But-
back up there.
but
I'll put
chat-
that belt back up there.
Chat for sure. We're having the Game Lounge baby shower Sunday, March 15th, which is next Sunday. Hit the clap for
Of
that.
course,
Drop the
of
bomb
course.
for that. My apologies, chat. Answer that.
Yes.
Come hang out with us for the baby shower, and all gifts are appreciated. I will put the registry in by the end of the night. I was supposed to do that, put it up here, but it just didn't work out
It'll
so
be
well.
on the website too.
It'll be on the website too. All gifts are welcome. We also gonna have something that day where we have like our Cash App set up or
I like that. So we can
Venmo
go
set up.
straight
So if you
there.
guys want to donate for the baby, by all means, we appreciate you guys. If you just want to drop some biddies, that's cool
Or
too.
if you just want to show up and show love,
If you just want to show up to show love, I'm very appreciative
make
of
sure
just
y'all
showing
show up
up.
for our queen.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes,
There's
indeed.
no way she could be sitting here for the last 9 months.
Right.
Y'all don't show up just to clap it up. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying?
yes,
This
indeed.
baby grew up there. Got a whole Game Lounge baby.
Yes. We have CJ Kozavius Jr. the
Yeah,
third.
Kozavius Jr. the third.
For sure. Let me
He
see.
said, "Okay, I'll show love, but it will be for the baby, not for."
Damn, Cam, that's just crazy. Look, I'm not even up there. He's still
Yeah.
talking shit about me. God damn it, Cam.
British, just bring us a check.
I
Hey,
appreciate the
Galaxy,
check.
if you could pull up.
Hey,
You're
I
a Bronx native.
bring,
Cut it out.
bring the check, or we take food stamps.
That is a fact.
We take all that shit. Listen, babies are expensive. We can say if you want to give us some.
Yeah,
info-
look at her Bigfoot.
some wick.
Baby gonna be born with a joystick. Facts.
Yes,
Facts.
indeed.
Facts.
Yes, indeed.
This baby will hit master before GK. You want to know what's funny, Cam?
Damn.
Have you seen my last stream? I'm almost there.
Almost there.
I'm diamond 5 and I'm
Almost
climbing the chart.
there.
I'm getting there.
Yo, Cam, I'm working on my Uncle Geef. My Geef is on his way to master, on his way. So that'll be 2 characters for me.
I just need y'all to show up next Sunday. That's my big thing.
I got to get with Dirty Dan
Mm-hmm.
and
Get some of that Geef
yeah,
shit.
get some of that Geef shit down because Dirty Dan. Shout out to Dirty Dan. Drop a bomb.
That's the poster.
Yes, that's
I need to drop for you guys. We got keep going.
Yes, yes, yes.
Just make sure y'all show up next Sunday, 6 p.m. y'all.
Yes.
Gonna have the kids here. The rest of the
Yes,
kids.
kids will be
The
here.
whole family will be here. And guess what? GK's in the back with me and Uncle Broke gonna be in the back.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Auntie Miss Broke.
Yep.
We're gonna be in the back. I'm not touching this. I'm going in the back. The family gonna be up front.
Yes. Yes, indeed, Chad. Yes, indeed. So,
Somebody said you might get the gender
What they said? What they said?
although GK might get the gender wrong too, so I don't know.
I might. Hey, listen, bro. There's a jokey joke between me and Galaxy.
Just might.
I just might.
Just might. Yo, bro.
He said, though, we whole fam, damnly. Whole damn family. Come on, shut up, Koza.
Yep. Whole damn fam.
We got some stuff to show.
Fam damnly. That's what it says.
Family, yeah.
Fam damly. That's a new word we gotta keep. Fam
The
damly.
fam damn.
The fam damly.
So we got some stuff to get into.
Oh, Kim said, "Oh, Miss
Yes,
Broke
Mrs.
is back.
Broke.
Yeah, she's back. She's
Yes,
back.
welcome back. Yes.
Drop a ball. Drop a ball.
Let's show Koza's build.
Yes.
Before we get into the game, let's show Koza's build.
Yes.
From
Definitely
our
want to.
guy Detroit Koza, aka what up, twin?
Koza. And definitely want to put some notoriety on our guy Koza because he's been a staple in keeping the Game Lounge together with the website and the Discord too,
Yep.
helping us out with that stuff. This guy is the behind the scenes tech, not me. Anything that needs to be help behind the scenes, Koza
When
done
you
did
guys
it.
see stuff sparkling and looking pretty, it's these guys. I just show up when shit's done.
Right.
Also, gotta put some original Cammy Player. Our intro song
Right.
was made by Cammy
Yeah,
Player.
our guy
So we
Cam.
definitely appreciate you,
Yes,
Cam.
indeed. Yes, and drop a bomb for
Got a lot
both
of people
Koza
that hold
and
us down.
Cam.
You know
Drop
this,
another-
Dan? We got a lot of you motherfuckers that hold us down.
Yes, indeed. So here we go. This is
the,
Koza's.
Koza did this earlier on his stream today with Mrs. Koza.
Yes.
So they did a build.
It did a full Lego build. The Ganon
Yeah.
Right.
No. Ganon.
Ganon.
That's what we call him.
It's Ganon.
It's Ganon.
Check it out. It's
That shit is
Ganon.
dope. Yeah, that's fucking dope.
It's mad.
So
dope.
if y'all not following Detroit Koza, you go ahead and follow Detroit. He does builds. He does a lot of Mario speedruns.
Yes, Mario speedruns,
And he
Zelda
does, like,
speedruns.
Zelda, and he
He's
does,
actually in the leaderboards on the Zelda
Shout out.
Zelda
Shout out.
speedruns.
And he also
Drop a bomb
does
for that.
World of Warcraft. Along with a
World
few
of,
other people.
World of Warcraft, yeah. He actually just finished Minecraft too. He finished,
Wow.
yeah.
Randomized number
1,003
1,003.
pieces.
Can it
Wow.
just round it off to 1,000? Or you just have to add
Right,
three?
and 3, you know?
Yeah, just three, you know what I'm saying? Three more. That's it.
That's what the box said, nigga.
Right.
Exactly what I said. What the fuck
Yep.
going on here?
So yeah, shout out to my boy Coach. Make sure y'all tapping with that Coach's family over here.
Yes,
so,
indeed.
Y'all tap. We waiting on Coach to visit New York so he can come on the couch.
That's a fact.
Come
That's
on
a
now,
fact.
Coach.
Builds,
All right. Okay.
Tech- Website designer, tech designer,
Yeah.
anything
So if you guys
tech
need any
related,
kind of website
tap
to
in
be
with
built,
our guy.
anything
so
like
Koza.
that, you can tap in with Coach, and he's more than happy to help you guys
Our
out.
guy is business connoisseur out
Connoisseur.
here. Connoisseur.
So shout out to Koza. He's part of the
For
family.
sure. For
Val
sure.
Doney, appreciate the claps.
Of course.
So,
of course.
I have a good game for us to get into.
Sure, I'm
It's
ready.
Kitty's birthday, right?
It's Kitty's
So a
birthday.
few weeks ago, Kitty had asked us to do a Invincible versus.
Ooh.
So let's start it off with that in
Okay.
honor of our girl Kitty.
Sure, why not?
So
Why
we,
not?
you know we do. It should be somewhere down there. Is it verse? Go to versus real.
Versus real?
Right there. It's go down. Go down. Yeah. Is that it? Let me make sure. Just slide over and see the pictures. Yep, that's it.
Okay.
So,
Cool,
guys,
cool,
Kitty's
cool.
birthday is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So the first game we're gonna play is in honor of our girl Kitty. To show some love. Happy birthday to you, Kitty. You
Yes,
asked and we
indeed.
shall receive. Kitty asked us to do a versus where our hero is Invincible.
Yes.
So let's see how much points Invincible can stack up. Does he get through the gauntlet or not?
Let's
This
see.
is a good one.
Let's see.
So
Let's see.
again, shout out to you, Kitty, my best mod in the world, and we love you.
Yes.
stuff to edit. I've been working.
You been working?
We got a hero, right? Look at the hero entrance.
Go Yachty.
That's our hero. He will get entrances now. Watch the flex. Watch the flex.
Fuck. Nigga, this Spider-Man.
Invincible.
So Invincible versus Wolverine. Who we got?
I'm going Wolverine.
Wolverine.
I guess Wolverine, yeah.
I'm going Invincible.
Wolverine and going with the
I'm going Invincible.
Wolvie.
I'm going Invincible.
Well, let's unpack this. Why are we going
If
Invincible?
Wolverine gets a hit off, he can hurt him. And he can kill him. Invincible's stronger and faster and has more in his bag. I still think he's gonna win.
More in his bag?
He can fly. He's stronger. He's faster. That's what's in your bag.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
That's what's in your bag. Now, can Wolverine kill him? He can.
Yeah.
He definitely can. So it's not a low diff. I would say Invincible, mid diff.
Can Invincible kill Wolverine?
You don't have to kill to win. You keep mistaking that.
No.
You don't have to
I
kill
understand
to
that.
win.
I understand that.
But will he win? He has a higher percentage of winning the fight. I'll go Invincible.
He has a higher percentage to get away from him.
He can punch him from here to Japan.
Damn.
That's how strong the strength difference is immense. Wolverine's adamantium body is not stopping me from punching you from here way the fuck over there. I can drag you to the moon and leave you up there.
Mm.
I can punch you off the planet.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying? It's more I could do.
He's punched people off the planet.
I can drag you off the planet.
He don't want to get close to me.
Depends on where I drag you from. But speed, the chance of Wolverine actually hitting him is very slim.
We got
Yeah, bro. Do you think?
We got a raid. I got this wild cough, bro. I'm sorry.
Raider from
We got-
Gluttony.
We got a raid coming
Didn't
in.
even
Drop
know
the bomb
Gluttony
for the
was on.
raid.
I didn't know Gluttony was on. I didn't tap into you earlier today. Yo, I appreciate you, my boy.
Yeah, my guy Gluttony
Shout out
coming
to my
through with
boy
the raid.
Gluttony.
Yes,
First
indeed. Yes,
time
indeed.
chatter.
Yes, indeed. First time chatter
Exclamation.
from. Yep, that's Monster. That's Monster. That's Monster.
Monster.
That's
Welcome in, Monster. We appreciate you. Shout out to my boy Gluttony. Gluttony, who you got right here? Invincible?
Yes,
First of all,
Yo, GK.
welcome to the
Let me
show.
hear something.
Right.
Drop some bars,
Damn.
bro.
I'm trying to introduce myself and they're asking for bars.
Already.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
This is about to hit so hard it might leave scars.
Lion King.
Why do we go to the airplane, say goodbye, hasta la vista, depart?
Mm-hmm.
Where we gonna put the groceries when we go to the grocery store? In my shopping cart.
In my shopping cart.
What happens if you get gas? You fart. I'm about to choke this shit out and end it. Like Homer does Bart.
Jesus. Jesus Christ.
Bars this. Come on, how's your
Jesus,
boy?
Jesus
Bars.
Christ. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ,
That's
child.
why I ain't even doing it.
Bars.
Shout out to
Hollywood again, you know, bars.
Shout out to Gluttony coming through here. Shout out to Gluttony.
Shout out to my boy
From
Gluttony.
JA to
To
UK.
So who y'all got in the verses?
So, let's get back into it.
I'm going Invincible. I don't think it's an easy win though. I don't think it's as easy as it looks. I don't.
I say this.
Because he can slice right through.
If Wolverine gets the claws in him, he's not going to get away.
No, absolutely.
It's over for him.
I'm not debating that. But the speed difference, the chances of you actually hitting me is very low. But if you get it, I'm fucked up. But the chances of you getting that is very low.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bank on the chances being very low. I'm going to go Invincible. You get what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Invincible has this for sure. Rin!
Perfect.
Oh, man.
M.
Louise with the theory.
What up, M? Drop a bomb
Yo,
for
I
M.
got to give a shout out to M. Where's Kitty? Kitty, can I get a shout out for M, please?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
M is a W supporter, bro.
Yes.
When I mean W, I
Yes.
mean M is solid, bro. And if y'all don't know about M does streams where she makes like
Yeah.
crochet kind of stuff.
Mhm.
You guys gotta tap in with that. It's actually relaxing watching that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I seen her doing some a diamond art thing. She was
Yeah,
piecing a
yes,
bunch of,
I know what you're
small
talking about.
diamonds
Yup,
together. I'm
yup.
like, yeah, it's great. It looks tedious. It was mad tedious, but she loves it. She loves it. Community
First, let me
loves
give
it.
a shout out to Gluttony for the raid. Gluttony, we appreciate you in the raid every Sunday, and you know it's HOC. We all part of the community.
Yeah.
And we support each other. So, mad love, and Gluttony keeps that rocking every Sunday, and we love you for that, Glut.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm
bro.
saying? Hi, CJ and TK. Julius,
Julius,
my boy.
what's up, bro?
So-
Double bomb for Julius. I'm going Wolverine.
Wolverine. I'm going Invincible. What did the people say? Who y'all got?
Chat was saying Wolverine at the top, but then
I saw some Invincibles.
Ren said Invincible for sure. Double bomb for Ren.
Ren the Goblin.
Ren
Okay, I think Invincible lost this one.
Nutty said
Wolverine.
Wolverine.
Okay,
Double
all
bomb
right.
for
Okay.
two.
We don't gotta argue too much.
Yeah.
Votes are votes. I think Wolverine won.
Okay,
So
yeah.
Invincible got nothing.
0-1 right now.
Oh,
Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle. That's my guy. What the fuck? Oh, that's my
Come on,
guy.
Twin.
That's my guy,
Come on,
bro.
Twin.
Oh my god.
This is a good fight.
Hell
This
yeah,
is-
that's
it's
a good fight, though.
This is
It
a good fight.
though.
This is a damn good fight.
Right.
This is a real, and I put Blue Beetle there for a reason.
Okay.
He's underrated.
Yeah. Very, very.
Yeah, 'cause I don't know.
I don't know much about him. Tell me.
I would actually say, all right, the Iron Man suit,
Uh-huh.
picture it being alien tech and kind of alive.
Exactly. It has a mind of
The
its
suit
own.
itself has a mind of its own.
Yep.
Plus, they say I'm fighting you. You're
Mhm.
strong and all that. The suit would analyze you and create a weapon that can defeat you.
That can defeat you.
Now that doesn't mean it can do anything, but it can create weapons that can potentially subdue the enemy.
No, it can't create anything because remember, if he thinks of something, the shit will fucking make it.
That too.
In
You
the
see what I'm saying? He can
Make
create
it.
like
So-
Tony has limits to what he can create.
So for example, if he was to go against Superman, he could create.
Nah, it's
Kryptonite?
not.
It's not that?
far. Why would you be?
I'm asking.
So
no,
if he
ask
is
the
the
question because he might do it. He can't beat Superman.
he can't
But
be
he
super,
can-
but
but
he might
do it.
He might
be able
act.
to
The
do
suit
something.
might actually be able to analyze something
Right.
where a gun would maybe synthesize a kryptonite shot or something
Right.
like that.
Exactly. Right.
Will he win?
Yeah,
We ain't gonna get into all that.
he's not gonna-
No, but to what you're trying to ask, the suit may be able to analyze something to that effect.
Also, it's made to protect him. He cannot die.
Is
And
it
it's-
metal? Is the suit a metal suit?
I don't even know.
He
It's
can deflect
alien tech.
bullets. It can deflect bullets. That's what
Alien
you're about to
shit.
ask.
It's a scarab, right?
No, I'm not asking about
It's
bullets.
a scarab, a little bug-looking thing.
Yeah.
And then it suit
on its
comes
back.
over. The suit, it's alive
Yeah, it is a lot.
and it's alien.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go Blue Beetle to be honest with you.
Blue Beetle.
It's not a. I don't think
That's the guy.
it's a wash. I don't even think it's a complete mid-diff.
Nah.
It's like between mid and low.
Yeah.
Gluttony says Invincible takes it.
Nah,
Big Brooklyn
nah.
says Invincible takes it.
I don't think you guys know what Blue Beetle can do.
You can do a lot.
Let me tell y'all something. I stay telling y'all this. I be calling
Kenny
y'all
says
y'all
Invincible?
knowledge. I be calling out y'all knowledge, see who really know their shit. Off top, I knew most people was gonna go for Invincible. I knew most people was. I'm not. I'm going Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
Ren says Blue Beetle has it too.
You see,
Hollywood.
look, Reroll win set Beetle because almost on par stats wise, but the suit puts him over the edge.
Mhm.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
No, you
It's
said
hard to
Two-
penetrate.
Two, Viltrumites aren't bulletproof.
Nah.
He can
he
easily
is.
create weapons to chop right through them.
Right. the
Speed
point is-
wise, he can keep up. Strength wise, the suit
Yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's who got more in their bag,
Blue Beetle.
Clearly, because the suit is gonna mimic
create shit.
create shit.
It's gonna create some
And
shit
it's
you never heard of.
naturally just as strong,
Right.
just as durable, blah,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I'm gonna go Blue Beetle.
Like,
I asked a question about the kryptonite thing because I want to know how powerful or how
Well, it's alien
advanced
tech, so
the
the
tech.
knowledge that it has is beyond
Right, when you say alien tech,
alien tech.
Superman's alien. So
And then with the guy who was the Blue Beetle before him, he
Uh-huh.
also had the Scarab,
Yeah.
but he couldn't activate it. So he is essentially was just like another Batman, Green Arrow kind of guy.
Okay.
Human, had the suit on with the gadgets and shit,
yeah,
but he couldn't access the power of the actual Scarab.
Right.
The Scarab chose Jaime
Immediately.
to open up and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know do all that shit. You know what I'm saying? You see how Jarvis talks and all that?
Mhm.
The suit does that as well, but the suit itself is alive.
okay,
Mind of its own.
okay.
It's more advanced than Iron Man, if I'm being honest with
Yeah,
you.
it is way advanced.
Way more advanced
Way
than Iron
fucking
Man.
advanced.
Jaime himself, because they keep tapping more and more into it, so we don't know the limit of it yet.
Right.
Okay.
Because he hasn't maxed it out yet.
Nah, he has not.
Because remember, Jaime's a Spider-Man age kind of kid.
Okay. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
He's like middle school, high
Middle
school.
school and shit.
Yeah.
So the potential that he can go to, we don't know yet.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go Blue Beetle.
So yeah. So we is it safe to say Jaime is able to tangle with some of the best of the best
I would say
with that suit?
who's the best of the best.
Right. Who you thinking?
You're talking Superman, that's niggas. He ain't never got to that level yet.
Nah. Maybe Batman.
Maybe Batman. Stop it. Batman's done.
Oh, Batman's done for real?
Stop it, bro.
Oh, really? Oh, I was giving Batman the benefit of the
Batman's
doubt.
getting
I was.
fucked up.
But all right, you say he
The
demolished-
gadgets he got not working on that suit.
Yeah, you got to
And I say like the best of the best. So we said Superman,
Nah, come on,
People
that's-
like,
we went too far on top of that.
Yeah.
Magneto, Wanda.
I believe he's getting
Uh,
that. Wanda's magic. That's always gray area magic. Remember that.
Okay.
But you talking about Magneto? I believe he can get past Magneto. I can
That's why.
analyze
That's
it.
why I asked is that suit
The
metal
suit
because
will
if it
analyze
is,
and make itself non-metal, so you can't do shit to it.
Exactly.
Or make weapons that's non-metal.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like
mhm.
it can do that
Off the rip.
off the rip. That's an easy.
Off the rip.
You get what I'm saying? Like
it's constantly
Mhm.
analyzing.
it's constantly analyzing what's going on
Right.
without him having to ask it or make it.
Mind you,
Mhm.
he's giving him elite comms while he's fighting too. Like, yo, he keeps leaving his right open, hit him in the right. Oh shit! Where?
While you're
Oh,
battling,
shit.
it's also telling you he's weak
Oh.
on the right.
Or
Right.
like Hulk. Hulk is pretty much like the
You're going
strongest
up
of the
against your Superman,
strongest.
them two, like.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like is he's
Yeah,
able
but
to go toe to
Invincible's
toe
not
with some of the
up on
strongest
those
of the
levels
strongest.
either, so
I don't know Blue Beetle's cat like his background.
picture Iron Man or Cyborg, he's better than both of them.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
In the
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
he can create more than Cyborg can create.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He could create stabbing weapons or shooting weapons or plasma weapons or
Mm-hmm.
whatever he needs to create to just do it.
Plus, he also has a little
Right.
bit of like nanotechnology too. It's a little bit.
It's better than nanotech.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whatever.
It's
actually
better than
doing, but
this
it looks
is
like
alien
nanotech.
tech that's light years above what we got.
Right.
He just hasn't popped it all. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Right, but he can create anything.
I'm going Blue Beetle.
So if your imagination is strong, he can create whatever the fuck he wants. That's why in the movie he created the Buster Sword.
Okay.
Yeah.
Created a Buster Sword, and then he did this shit and created a whole cannon.
Right, immediately.
So I'm a
Yeah, Blue Beetle got that.
Hancock.
Oh shit. What? Will Smith?
I got a clear answer for this.
Hancock.
I got a clear answer. Hancock is cooking this nigga. Low diff. Barely diff.
Low
No
diff,
diff.
damn.
Zero diff.
Damn.
Why do we even have a diff?
Why do we even have this? Damn, man.
Remember, Hancock really only has one weakness. His wife. If she's not nowhere near him, he's practically invulnerable.
Yeah.
Hancock. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. When I mean easy, I mean Hancock doing this. Stop it.
Yeah. BK Dragon in the building. Drop a
Drag on, BK
Dragon.
Dragon. What's going on with your family?
It's a Will Smith, boy.
Yeah, like this is he's getting slapped from here to next year.
That's mad
So
crazy to say.
easy, it's not even like he's gonna look at you like, what are you doing here?
So
That's mad crazy
Hancock
to say.
stopped the freight train and didn't move. He didn't budge off the ground.
no,
Like he just stood there like,
my bad.
my bad. Like it was so ridiculously easy for him. He didn't give it a second thought. The only thing somebody said to him, why don't you pick the car up and take it out of the way instead of tanking the whole train?
Right.
It's so easy for him. He's like, I didn't think about it that way.
No.
He's not doing that. He's not tanking the whole shit.
No, the fucking train gonna rip his body apart. His body will explode.
They bleed easy. Glutamites bleed easy.
Yeah, they do.
Hancock is busting his ass.
Quick.
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 What you got?
I guess when you saying Hancock, man. But that's
Yeah.
wild to say to somebody who likes the show. Nigga, Will Smith whipping his ass. What?
Well, it's not Will Smith, it's Hancock.
Oh, yeah, Hancock. Yeah.
Why his name gotta have cock on it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Shit trips me
Yo.
out. My nigga Han. That's it.
Right. That's that Han.
That's my nigga Han C, you know?
Han C, not Solo. C.
I think Hancock wins this one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is
I agree. Hancock for sure.
That is mad hilarious. Ooh.
That's
Young
not Superman. No. That's Superboy.
Superboy.
But Superboy.
That's the clone.
Yeah, that's the clone.
He's
Clone.
now just to give you some context. He's not as powerful as the actual Superman.
Exactly.
He can't fly.
Nope.
He's basically a strong man.
Wait,
Yes.
no.
You know, he can't fly. Maybe he
So what's
learns.
the other one that can fly?
Superboy is the son of Superman, or the other universe version.
No, but there's another one that's like him, but he can actually fly.
Some versions of him they give him flight,
Yeah.
but in Young Justice he couldn't fly. I couldn't fly
No,
yet.
there's
So
one
this is
in
Young Justice,
It's Young
Superboy.
Justice Superboy.
There was one in Young Justice that could fly.
Nah.
Maybe it was the evil one.
Nah,
Maybe.
maybe the evil, but this he can't fly.
Okay.
He
okay.
can jump and all
I know
that
that.
shit.
I know that.
You know, he got the bulletproof skin and all
Yeah,
that, but
yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
actually complete like
Yeah,
Superman.
it's Superman, but they left out a bunch of shit.
Yeah, basically.
Like, they fucked him up.
They said this is not John Kent.
It's not John Kent.
John.
John Kent is the other Superboy,
Yeah, yeah.
Superman's son,
Yeah.
who is Superboy.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
Yeah, so then, yeah, Invincible got that.
no
Really? Still?
punch power. He's still stronger.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Punch power. I think he's still stronger.
Is he fast?
He can move. He's above way regular speed. Yeah, he's fast. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Cass, you heard what's up, bro? Dropping
I
by for
think it comes
Cass.
down to the fact that he's actually more vulnerable than he is still.
Yeah, that is a fact, too, yeah, because he do got that.
Skin is still stronger than
Yeah,
his.
way stronger, yeah.
Like-
skin,
If he takes a straight blow from him,
yeah. He's that.
he's getting back up. If he takes a straight blow from, if
How you said it
Invincible
just now.
if
He's that.
Invincible take the straight blow from him,
He's that.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Skin
said
is
this
pop.
Superboy finna need to start his prayers if he's going up against Invincible.
he needs to what?
Start saying his prayers if he's going
Superboy.
up against Invincible.
Nah,
Nah,
Superboy's
Superboy
busting
do
his
got
ass.
that, though.
Yeah, Superboy.
I would say that.
It's a good fight though.
You still got some shit from Superman. Just not. You know, they left out mad.
Yeah, they left out a lot of
They
shit.
nerfed him bad.
Jesus Christ. Why even put the S on his chest if he ain't got over
Jesus
that?
Christ.
Oh, my God.
That's why he just wears a t-shirt. He's
Yeah.
a fanboy basically.
Nigga got it from
Nigga said
Six.
he didn't even have a cape. That's how you.
He
He
know.
ain't got no okay, he got on jeans.
Nigga got the T-shirt from Six Flags. Like bullshit here, bro. Like
But- His DNA is he's a clone. His DNA is actually Kryptonian.
Yeah.
But he's a mixture of Superman and Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
which is real gay.
They're mad. gay.
That's-
Mad mode.
what's
son.
going on here?
Just to let you know, it's Lex Luthor that did that, not Superman.
Yeah.
So Lex Luthor took Superman's sperm and
Hey,
injected
DNA, not sperm.
Put his-
DNA.
put his own,
DNA.
put mixed it with his and
They
put it in
mixed it.
somebody.
They mixed it with
You put him
them or
next
whatever.
month, jizz is crazy.
Drop a bomb.
Wednesday, Marcus Toast.
This
Marcus
is-
Toast.
Hey, yo.
Nigga Lex Luthor is fascinated by Superman.
Makosa. Yeah.
Nigga like,
I want to have a baby with him. It's crazy. It's crazy work. So who do we say won? I say Superboy.
Yeah, Superman.
I'm rocking with Superboy. I don't know this guy stuff like that, but I know Superman stuff more. But this is not. He's like Timu version of Superman. So all right.
I would say she.
Nah, yeah, it's like she.
She.
Maybe
The
Alibaba.
quality's okay. You know what I mean?
Alright.
Maybe
You can be
Alibaba
fresh in the
or
club in the dark. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
I'm gonna still go for Superboy. I think punch for punch,
Yeah,
he still wins.
Yeah, all right. So that what's that? That's
4-0.
4-0.
Nah, he won one.
No, he didn't.
He
He
won.
didn't win the first one.
Nah, he Wolverine.
He lost to Wolverine. He lost to
Wolverine,
Blue
he lost
Beetle.
to Blue Beetle.
He lost to Hancock. Like,
Lost to him.
Damn, we
It's
getting his
4-0.
ass beat.
Damn.
Lost to 4-0, my boy. Look at this guy.
Oh shit! What we got? All
All
Might.
Might. Yeah, All Might.
Big
All
shit.
Might. This
All
the
for
good
one?
one right here.
Muscle man.
All
here.
for one?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to the bathroom on this one.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
all
sure.
for one. Ah, damn, yo.
This is the
All
good
Might.
one right here.
All
Might got
Might.
it.
All
All
Might.
Might got it.
I'm leaning with All Might.
Oh my god, he's supposed to be Superman.
I'm leaning with All Might.
He's just an anime Superman.
If this nigga, if Superboy beats
All Might is
Invincible,
literally based off of a fucking just Superman, just Japanese.
if Superboy beats Invincible, All Might fucks him up like hands down. Like, come on, this is ridiculous.
Nah,
Let
oh
me
my
see.
god, that. Oh my god.
Kitty said, "Damn, the Invincible hate is real. Damn, we sorry, Kitty. We sorry. We
I
sorry."
mean, it's the truth, man.
BK Dragon says All Might. Baldoni says Mark might change his name to Vincible after that fight. I get you.
Yeah, it's limited, but in the newer shows or the newer episodes, he actually I think he surpassed it, his limits.
Mhm.
Almost died from doing it actually.
Hollywood says Invincible though. Okay.
I mean, hey, they feel like it's Invincible, hey, but
He said it sounds. He said it sounds good, but stats wise, there's no way. Oh,
All for One, no, man. All for One is nothing to fuck with. That's All Might's power. All for One.
Kitty said, but isn't All Might power limited?
That's what I just said. Yeah, but it's he surpassed it though, and almost fucking died doing it. But yeah, he did it.
BK Dragon said, if time skip, Invincible. Yeah. Galaxy says Invincible. Ren says Marcus Toast. He's not beating All Might. Baldoni said All Might takes this. So this is it's an interesting one. I believe All Might would kick his ass and rip him to shreds.
Right.
But if he can if Invincible can evade him long enough to tire that ass out and run that power
I
down.
think All Might got speed too.
Alright, so here's my tap. I'm going Invincible on this one.
Really?
He can fly. He
Yeah,
can
All Might
avoid
can.
All Might.
But All Might got speed though.
So does Invincible. He's not slow. Speed don't take over flight.
You're right. I'm just saying, you're right.
And I think and Invincible's strong enough to break that skin.
Really?
Yes.
But All Might can. But you know, All Might can take a little beating though, bro.
Yeah, but
He
I can
can't take a little
fly.
beating.
Yeah, but
so what you can fucking fly.
flying means you can get away, not
Yeah, but he can damage him as well. That's what I'm saying. I can get away and I can damage you.
Yeah, but I mean, he can't take.
he get close. If he miss,
Yeah, it's up.
he must land every hit. Because if he miss one,
Nah, I'm going Invincible.
I think
I'm going,
All Might
I'm going
is
Invincible.
destroy his
I'm
ass.
going Invincible.
Because I say the same thing. If Superboy could kick his ass,
Yeah, but Superboy naturally
that
has,
Superboy can't fly.
Yeah, but Superboy naturally has tough skin, tougher than both their skin.
I believe you.
They can't crack Superboy's skin.
No.
He can crack his skin.
Crack the skin.
Meaning I could punch your teeth out.
Yeah, but he can do some damage too. All Might.
I'm going Invincible on this
Don't
one.
sleep on All Might. He can do some damage.
And it's
on
high
him.
diff though. It's not an easy fight.
That's crazy.
Who you got?
All
You
Might.
got All Might?
I'm going All Might. All Might.
I'm going Invincible.
Almighty, my boy.
I'm going Invincible on this one. I don't think it's the fact that All Might can't win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving the chance to him.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Nah, but
Because
this is a good fight.
everybody up here except Kitty and Hollywood said Invincible, but everybody else pretty much said All
They
Might.
all went All Might?
Yeah.
Nah, this is
Alright.
a good fight though.
So Invincible lose
Even
again?
even Ren said Marcus Toast. He's beating.
So
he's not
Invincible ain't
beating
got no dubs?
Nah.
Yo,
Wait, this
Mark
the
is
last
getting...
one?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I ain't get one yet then.
Shut
This
up.
ain't the last one. He ain't get one yet. I don't know. That's All Might.
I'm with you on that one, Kitty. Invincible! Come on and get my boy Invincible one.
Andrew's in the building. Drop a bomb for
Yo,
Andrew.
Andrew, what up? Did you show them my new keyboard?
Oh no, we didn't get a chance to talk about that. Yeah. Hold on, chat. Hold on.
That's ChatGPT.
Let's talk about that.
So
We
you gotta
got
ask ChatGPT.
He brought a new keyboard.
new
and
keyboard
mouse. Look, it's black and gold. Look.
and new mouse.
Look.
Ha
Black and gold, baby.
We
I
get-
appreciate you, my guy.
Yes, indeed. We got new keyboard and mouse. And check out the cool feature.
Watch. I'm gonna put my spliff in it, but
I'm
that's
saying.
okay.
That's
That's where my spliff is going.
going.
I ain't putting my phone in there. The first thing I showed was a
And
spliff
it can lay sideways too. So you
Fucking
can put-
sideways. I'm putting the spliff in it.
But it's room for us. But look, you can move the phone over and two phone.
That's fire. That's fire.
So or you can take a phone out and put a spliff.
I'm gonna put the spliff.
I'm saying.
I'm gonna put a spliff.
I'm saying. Or a spliff and a lighter.
Right.
Spliff it up. You gotta light it up.
Spliff and
You
a
gotta light
lighter.
it up. So Invincible lost again?
Yes. Kit Coulter said we need to label left arrow. Save right now. Save right
I
arrow.
know why you
load
said
on
because
the
I always
keyboard.
forget in Zelda if it's left or right save. Coach say you gotta remember. You be yelling left, nigga. Damn, this is the last one. Don't tell me he took a zero.
Nah, look, there's one more. Maybe. Possibly.
That's 5.
Green Lantern. Oh
my
shit.
God.
Who y'all got? I'm going GL.
Yeah.
If he wasn't beating Blue Beetle, you're not beating this dude.
I'm
I'm going GL.
Because this is alien tech, like you said before
I'm
too.
going GL.
Green
I'm
Lantern.
going GL.
And whatever he can think of.
You know
he can
why?
create,
He run with some of the best of the best.
GL has Tango to people above him.
Right. That's what I say. He runs
And-
with the people
and
the
come out
best of the
alive,
best.
by
Yeah.
the way.
Like, come on.
Oh my god! I think I did Invincible dirty with this.
Yeah.
I did?
He got worked
you fucked
out.
him up.
He got worked out.
He got worked out.
Yeah.
Invincible.
He got
Yeah.
come in,
And-
Mark!
Invincible's not invincible, apparently.
Wow.
Jesus
Now
Christ.
this one I think is the most interesting fight.
He got done.
I'm going with Green Lantern though.
Yeah, Green Lantern, man. I'm going-
Yeah, it said there. Rin said Mark is done for. What the fuck?
Yeah. Done for.
Damn, Kitty went to chat GDP. She not playing.
Yeah.
Right,
looked
shit
shit
went
up.
GPT, like, the fuck?
Damn, Green Lantern wins
Because of
experience.
experience. Facts.
He is also a battle strategist.
Yeah.
He's no damn.
Yeah, and it's a different fight for Green Lantern and Blue Beetle.
And the
It's
crazy
a
thing
different
is,
fight, but
Green
invincible.
Lantern's constructs can hurt Mark.
Yeah,
The guns, the bombs.
yeah.
Damn, Mark.
It's over.
What the fuck?
It's over.
That's because he a bum ass.
over.
Mark can't get one?
Nah,
It's
son.
over.
Wow.
No,
Move to the next one.
it's over.
Y'all two
Sober.
winning. Y'all two winning.
Bye.
Y'all two
Bye.
kicking his
Bye,
ass.
Invincible. Bye.
Y'all just kicking his
Yeah,
ass.
Wolfang fist the fuck out this guy.
Wolf
Bye.
fist.
Nigga
Fuck.
coming
Bye.
with the. He coming with the.
Belt to ass, like Andrew said. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, nah, Yamcha got this.
Come on.
That was almost a gag I put him in there.
Bye.
He's bodying every Viltrumite.
Yeah,
All
bye.
of them.
Bye. Everybody
All of
from
them.
his universe.
Don't sleep on Yamcha.
Yeah, Wolfang
Super
fixed the
Yamcha.
fuck out of everybody.
Yeah, they're done.
Everybody.
They're done. They're done.
Nigga said, "Take me to
They're
your
done.
leader."
They're done.
Nick.
Damn. Mark couldn't get one.
Not one.
I thought he would have had. What's the anime dude's name again? All Might.
Yeah, no.
Not All Might.
Koza said Yamcha about to make Invincible invisible.
Yeah, Cell Jr. was able to literally go toe to toe with Goku and Gohan.
Yeah, and Yamcha
Nah,
did
that
fight
shit-
one of them. He did die.
But he died from a Cyberman. We can't even talk about that.
Cyberman is whooping
But he
Invincible.
did. But he went to.
He died from a Cyberman.
He
That's
did
fuck
die
Cell
from a
Jr.
Cyberman.
though.
He did fight a Cell Jr. and they lived.
Yeah, he
He
did,
live.
but he didn't explode off. Pulse.
Wow.
Drop a bomb. I'm triggered. What the fuck was that?
Hey, yo!
That was crazy. That was
Yamcha
crazy.
You gotta be more careful, my brother.
Got to be more
Mark
careful.
said Mark wins this one.
What?
Who said that?
Come on, I love Yamcha, but Mark is basically Gohan in his world. He can be Gohan in his world all he wants to, but he ain't Gohan in their world.
Nah,
He Hercule in their world.
nah. Yeah, no, facts. Nah, facts. You take Yamcha outside of his verse, he's a
Fucking
problem.
everybody. Not everybody.
No,
Fucking
you
a lot
know,
of
he's
people.
a
up.
problem. He's a
Yeah.
problem. All right, so damn Invincible.
Man.
Damn,
got
I
none.
forgot I had put Yamcha in here. I would have just said no more.
Nigga,
No, it's over. It's over for him.
Nigga lost everyone.
Bro,
Every fight.
what was the closest one though?
All Might.
All Might was the closest one.
I think All Might was probably the closest one. Yeah.
I thought. Shit.
No, because a couple people were saying Invincible. A couple people.
You got something for us?
That was it. Like we did it already.
You got that was your game?
Yeah. So
Nah, I got more.
So we
I
got
more.
I got one as well.
You made a game?
YNs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do your thing. Do your thing.
YN stuff. Yeah.
Damn it!
YNs.
Come with these little bitties.
Right.
All I said
YNs.
was happy in the history, Women's History Month. That's what it was. Well, I said Moth.
YNs be
Moth.
YNs.
Right.
So, chat, we got-
Damn.
Moth.
Chat gonna get you. You can spell
He
it.
called y'all moth.
We have to show respect to the moths.
It's
The
just-
moths.
Happy Women's History Moths. The Women's History Moths.
Come on now. I'm
Kitty
friends with
said,
the moths.
Kitty said I'm
The-
banning all of y'all. The Invincible lost.
The Venomoths.
Venomoth. Yeah.
The Butterfrees.
The Butterfrees.
Yeah, that showed love to them. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, this is all the people that my son Ash went through. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right,
what-
right.
Damn.
That's all inside
The ash glaze is real.
The-
Yeah, that's the guys. Don't worry about it.
The Ash Glaze. He ain't slide on none of
Bro, they're not
them.
the same character. I'm shaking my head. No, they're different people, gang. They're all different people. It's like,
He said bro put 9 of the same characters up there.
they're different. You can see by their eyes. Stop it.
The only one different is the black one over here.
She only done different.
She got a little melanin going on.
Missy changed her hair a bunch of times.
Yeah.
She put a hat on right here and here.
Yo.
You're not telling me that Misty here ain't the same girl here in the blonde hair.
Yeah, it's the same.
That's
girl.
the same bitch.
Same girl.
Not them.
Look, even the eyelashes look the same.
Even the smile got the same crack in it, right?
Misty.
Yeah,
That's
God
literally
damn it.
Two different people.
No, same
Name
man.
all of them.
Misty, Dawn, May, Iris, Serena, Lily, Mallow, Mana, and Serenity.
Okay.
Alrighty, my
Happy
man.
history month.
Happy Women's History Months. All of them moths.
To the moths out there, you know what I'm saying? All right, so the first one that I did was this
Nigga,
one.
if you come over here next week, you're more Pokemon.
I swear to
Wait,
God.
If you fucking
There's
come over
nothing
here,
else.
I ain't gonna
Y'all
do
want
it.
me to make a
I'm
game
gonna
yes,
next
make
week?
a game next week.
I'm gonna leave it.
Yes.
I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna leave it alone.
Maybe she'll
This is my last one. Since that it was Pokemon in a month. Anyway, this is the last one.
You had $15.
Wait, hold on, nigga, damn. Anyway, this is Ash's strongest team at the top. You have $15 to build the team to beat Ash's team.
Ain't nobody beating that. bro.
$5 for Mewtwo is crazy.
Those are legendaries, nigga.
I'll take a Mewtwo.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, it's over.
You have
What,
10.
the dragon nigga down here,
Which one? They're all dragon. Which one?
the
What color is
one,
it?
two, the fourth one, Dragonair, Dragonite.
Dragonite. Okay.
And I don't know none of these niggas down at the lower tier.
Man, right here.
You don't know the first one?
The first, I'm using my 15 at the top row. Mewtwo, Giratina, and Rayquaza. Ain't none of them motherfuckers fucking with all three of
What
them.
he
Stop.
said. Yeah, what he said.
None of them.
Ash Greninja was nasty, bro.
Not on
That's
no Mewtwo.
That's not normal Greninja. That's Ash Greninja.
I don't give a
Not on
goddamn.
Mewtwo, though.
Not on no Mewtwo. Not on no Mewtwo.
To be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, Mewtwo is supposed to be the
Not on
strongest
no
Pokemon.
strongest.
Yeah, he could be the
Only
strongest
the
Pokemon,
only
but
Mew
Greninja
one
is the
is
strongest
beating
form.
Mewtwo.
Greninja is the strongest form, nigga. I think he could go head to head.
I don't give a
Outta
fuck.
here with that
Not on no
bullshit.
Giratina or
You know what's
Rayquaza
funny
neither.
though? You know what's funny though, CJ? You know how you keep going about Mewtwo? Greninja could beat Mewtwo. Remember, Greninja's part dark.
I'm-
Mewtwo's psychic.
So,
That don't mean shit.
Yes, it does, nigga.
Not a goddamn
Super
thing.
effective.
Mewtwo was like, bring your ass here. Come here, bitch.
Try.
Kitty said-
Wait, where's Glut? Where's Glut? Glut know about Greninja.
Kitty said can't see the first. Oh, that's because we're
Glut know
blocking
about
it off
Greninja.
right here.
Oh, sorry.
Glut know about Greninja. Glut, please tell this man about Greninja. He is nothing to be
Nigga,
fucked
I
with.
know about Greninja. He
Let
ain't
me-
beating I'm taking Mewtwo every time.
I
Mewtwo every time.
I feel like Greninja can really hold him, and nobody else out there is holding Mewtwo. Actually, you tell me Pikachu
Look,
can't hold Mewtwo?
No.
Galaxy said.
Pikachu is level fucking
Hold on,
1,000.
hold on.
Pikachu died from Mewtwo.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, no.
That's fine. That's fine.
No.
No, that's true.
That's
Your
fine.
argument got smoked.
Wow.
But I hope you know, out of everybody up here, Pikachu went against more legendaries than any Ash's Pokemon ever.
I don't give a fuck
No,
how many
Pikachu
ones he went against
Pikachu
him.
won against Rayquaza.
But he
Pikachu won
didn't
against
beat. But he
Rayquaza.
didn't beat Mewtwo.
No, he didn't beat me.
So we're
No.
picking. So we're picking
It's
Mewtwo.
over.
Look. Galaxy said Giratina,
Giratina, that's the one.
Eter-
That's the first
Eter-
one.
Eternatus,
Oh,
Eternatus.
Eternatus.
and Rayquaza.
Keisha Terra.
Oh my God. Freaking.
Sound like a DMX song.
Shamika, Keisha, Tara, Shauna,
Go there,
Sabrina,
stupid.
Crystal, Deronda, Freakily.
Sharon, Monique. It's crazy.
Okay, so alright. Anybody else want to crack at the team?
It don't even make sense to take a crack at the
Greninja
team.
is nasty, man.
Nah, get out of here with your Greninja
Ash
glaze.
team 2 times.
Twice by himself.
He did indeed, and that's because Ash was ass
No.
at the time.
Now you
bro.
got excuses. Get out of here.
No, because he was ass. He didn't have these guys. He
Okay,
didn't have these guys.
okay. Let's just say this. Let's just say for shits and giggles, Mewtwo beats him, but Mewtwo dies. Whatever. Who other of the 5 is fucking with Rayquaza or Giratina?
I just told you, Pikachu can beat Rayquaza.
Fuck no.
Pikachu did beat Rayquaza, nigga. It's in the anime. Stop it. Pikachu put belt
That
to
is
ass.
plot armor.
I don't
Stop.
believe it. I don't believe it either. But Pikachu put belt
Plot
to ass.
armor.
If
for
it's
Rayquaza.
platformer, but he won.
He put belt to
Did-
ass.
Did he beat Giratina?
No.
Fuck
Because
no.
he never got a chance to fight him. He never got the chance to fight
He
him.
was
You
never
don't know.
going to.
You can't say somebody beat somebody if they haven't fought. You can't say it.
I'm not gonna lie to you right now, though. Your argument is weak as fuck.
Weak as fuck.
Weak as fuck.
Weak as
You
fuck.
trying it, but you know what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying.
I'm trying to hold on with your twin. But
I'm just saying Pikachu did some shit that I've never seen.
We just had a whole conversation
not
about.
the Pikachu glitch.
We just had a whole
I don't
conversation.
give a fuck about Pikachu.
Wait,
If anything, it's Rick
Wait,
Ross.
we just had a whole conversation about Invincible fighting Blue Beetle. We all said Blue Beetle whooping his ass. He never fought his ass. Boy, ain't no way we gonna say Pikachu finna beat this big ass legendary.
I didn't
Fuck
say
no.
that Pikachu can beat him. All I'm saying is that you don't know.
That's what you
yet
said.
until
You
the
lied.
fight.
That's what you said.
Fuck no.
Oh my god, bro. I'm pretty sure.
So
Giratina is eating it.
Pikachu beat him, but not Charizard.
Look,
Pikachu beat him, but not Lucario.
Galaxy said a weak argument. Sorry, brother.
Sober.
Shut the fuck
Fuck.
up.
Yeah.
Pikachu, my nigga, I ride with the Pikachu, but he ain't fucking with no Mewtwo.
Anyway.
It's over. He gonna say, "Come here," and snap little Pikachu neck.
Anyway,
We a dead
I'm
yellow
gonna-
mouse on the ground.
Anyway, I'm thinking Garchomp no matter what, because Garchomp is nasty. Y'all sleep on Garchomp. Garchomp is that nigga. Garchomp, I feel like Garchomp can do some shit.
Garchomp is this little blue motherfucker right here.
You gonna say little blue nigga? He's faster than everybody on that team. Stop it.
Not Mewtwo.
Statistically.
He not beating
Not
Mewtwo either.
You got that. You got the
Mewtwo,
power.
okay,
Smash.
all right.
He
all
goes,
right, Mewtwo, all right.
"Come here,
He gonna be-
snap your chomp,
It's
and
done.
it's over."
It's
Fine,
done.
go ahead, keep on. All right, you can go ahead. But I'm just saying, Greninja, y'all sleeping on Greninja. Ash Greninja? Yeah, okay. Y'all wow. Greninja, the shit.
Who's Snorlax? You gonna play a Pokeflute? Put his ass to sleep. Lay down.
But Snorlax did get some wins. I ain't gonna lie. He
Nah,
got like
Snorlax is
wins.
that powerful.
I
bro.
think Snorlax had 4
When he
losses
ain't
and
hungry.
7
Powerful,
wins.
nah, he's that powerful.
When he hungry, he's
Hunger is like how they nerf him. That's how powerful he is.
right.
Yeah,
That's
he's
crazy.
nasty.
Give this nigga 2 cheeseburgers
And a honey bun.
and a
Take his
honey
nigga to Five
bun,
Guys
and
and
it's
he's good.
over.
And a honey
It's
bun.
over. He laying the fuck down. If he ever listens to this nigga, we can actually get a fight in. He might do some damage. But he ain't finna listen to this ass nigga. Mewtwo gonna say, "Come your dragon ass here. Snap your neck too."
Whatever, nigga. Keep it going, nigga. What the fuck? Did I put anything else? I hope I did. Did I? Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Pokemon, dang.
Alright,
Who's
this is my
Ash
last
first
Pokemon.
caught
Who's
Pokemon
Ash's
below?
first caught Pokemon?
Butterfree.
No, Caterpie.
No, Caterpie, the number 2.
You sure?
The
It
first
turns
word
into
is first
Butterfree.
caught.
First caught? Yeah, you sure? You sure it wasn't Krabby? Because remember, Krabby was
It
before?
wasn't
No,
Krabby. Shut up.
hell
But
no.
Krabby
number
was
2,
in
shut
Professor
up.
Oak's
It
lab.
was-
Shut up, it was number 2.
Caterpie.
No, he
You
wasn't.
said caught.
He really was, actually.
You said caught, though.
That
You said
was
caught.
that was not
Bro, it was
him.
the,
That wasn't
goddamn-
his.
It was
That was
number 2.
Gary's. Gary's fucking Krabby was in there.
Nigga, Ash's Krabby was the
He
smallest
did
Krabby
not
ever.
catch the Krabby first period, so stop it.
Ash's Krabby was.
Why you arguing
Gary's was
with
the
him?
biggest Krabby.
Why you even arguing with him?
Stop
I'm trying to fuck him up, but yeah, it was Caterpie.
Fucking Caterpie. That was his first Pokemon.
Yes.
Caught, first one evolved,
Yep.
first one to leave.
All that.
Was it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. It was a weak
It
piece
was
of shit,
Caterpie.
that's
It was
why.
Butterfree. It was Butterfree.
That nigga Butterfree, flapped his wings, saw a little shorty like, "Hey, Butterfree,
And he
what's
was like,
up,
I want to
shorty?
be free. And he left.
What's up, shorty? We
And he
Butterfree."
dipped out.
Nah.
And he was like, "Yo, Ash, my man. I mean,
Butterfree left for
we
cheeks.
had our time, fam, but
Butterfree left for
Butterfree left with some cheeks.
it's mating season over here,
Yeah,
fam.
basically.
Like, I ain't getting no cheeks. You ain't slide nothing my way in a long time, my nigga. Like, I gotta go over here."
You got a point.
I know Butterfree wasn't a girl.
Because the other Butterfree was pink.
The other
What
Butterfree
pink
was
Butterfree
pink.
do you know that's not a female?
You want me to give you a pink character that's
Nah, it was a female.
Oh, the Pink Panther? You was gonna say Pink Panther?
No.
But is
No,
Pink Panther
we
a
was
guy?
looking-
Really? For real?
Pink Panther is a guy.
Pink Panther's a guy.
Pink Panther is a
You said it, but we ain't even.
No, I'm just saying. You was gonna say what, Pink Panther? No, I knew he was a guy. I'm just saying. I just like to ask you something. You know what I'm saying?
Guys said, "Bro, that
was
Pokemon
more free than Genu was.
Damn.
Genu, damn, not Genu.
out of here, out of here."
Alright, I got one more. And then that's video. Take you.
Ash ain't even catch these niggas. Not this one, not that
I
nigga.
put the
He got the shit pecked out of him by all him and his man. And this shit always fucked him up and
where
sent.
you went with the Ekans, yo.
Hey man, I don't know. But
He ain't even catch none of these 3 niggas. This nigga
he
he
tried
caught.
to capture Rattata, but he failed. That's why
Mad
I put him
later.
He did fail with the
He
red
did
that.
fail.
That shit,
That's why I put him
that
up there,
shit
so I
smacked the
fuck y'all
tail
up.
right back.
Fuck
I'm out of here,
He said, I
scurry.
ain't finna be part of
I
your
tried to
whack ass
fuck y'all
crew,
up.
son.
Yeah.
I tried to fuck y'all up with Rattata. I tried it.
He ain't even catch Pikachu.
Alright,
That was a gift.
Now, who is Ash's strongest Pokemon?
Number 3.
3?
Number
I
4,
don't, that's my favorite.
Out
I
of
don't give a
Greninja,
fuck.
this Ash Greninja up there. What are you doing?
Pika. Fucking
What are you doing?
Pika.
What are you
The answer
doing?
really is number 4, though.
Answer's number 4.
Why would you even put
Pika.
Pikachu up there? He's the star of the
Out of
fucking show.
Ash Greninja?
Pika.
Bro, how is
Fucking
Greninja
Pika.
stronger than Pikachu?
Gluttony, please.
Ash
Glut-
strongest is Pika, but the strongest we just
Glut,
said
are you in the
Mewtwo.
chat?
Come
Glut,
here.
please.
Nah, it's number 4, bro. What kind of dumbass question
There's
is
a
this?
pseudo legendary up there, and you're gonna pick fucking Charizard. Get the fucking not Charizard. Pikachu, get this fucking
Did,
guy out
but
of here.
didn't you say Pikachu beat Legendary?
He did.
So
he
why-
did.
why would-
But
why-
out of Ash
Hold
Greninja,
on,
stop
hold on,
it.
stop.
Greninjas beat
So, wait, wait,
legendaries?
wait. So
Yes.
How many?
2,
Pikachu beat?
1.
1? Did he? Which one was that one?
He beat Rayquaza. Greninja
What?
picked, Greninja beat, not Giratina. He beat Dialga, and,
He said my brother Blood is gone.
with the Dialga and what's the other one?
Bro, shut up. It's Pikachu,
It's
bro.
two. It's two that he beat them
It's
100%.
Pikachu, bro. What are you
Greninja
saying?
beat Dialga while fucking Pikachu's beating a long ass dragon. It's over.
It's Pikachu, bro. Stop it. Why would you even put
Long
him
ass
up
dragon
there?
don't mean nothing.
Why
What
would
are
you
talking
even
about?
put
To be
Pikachu
honest,
up there?
Dialga and Palkia are the first two legendaries before the branch split off to everybody else.
Bro.
Stop it, bro.
Bro.
Stop.
Just-
No, you're not gonna talk shit to me about what the fuck I know. No,
No, you're wrong, bro.
No.
I
Everybody
am
say
wrong.
Pikachu.
Yeah,
I am not wrong.
You are wrong, bro.
I am
Say
wrong.
Pikachu.
Whatever you want to say.
Bro.
Chat saying Pikachu.
Rin said
Bro.
Pika
It's
destroyed the
Ninja?
entire flock of sparrows.
Where's
The shit-
BCA came?
this
Please
shit-
help me, motherfucker.
The sparrows was coming
Help me.
down on his. It
Bro,
was like, "Come here,
I don't
bitch,"
even
and he
know
was just
why
like,
you
"I
put
got you,
Pikachu
fam."
on the list, bro.
Ah.
Because Pikachu really
He's
ain't.
the
Pika.
mascot of
Gengar beat
Pokemon.
Darkrai and has a Mega Evolution. That don't mean shit. The Gengar is not that. Gengar is not that nigga. But yeah, even with Gengar, like you just
Gengar
said,
is that
you not gonna choose
nigga.
Gengar?
No.
Gengar is that nigga. He the first Pokemon you see in the game.
Listen, Ash Ninja carried the whole anime, bro.
No,
the
he
whole
didn't.
anime of Z, bro.
No,
yes,
he
he
didn't.
did. Bro, he put Pikachu away mad times before Greninja, bro. he
Okay,
made
so
Greninja fight more than
Greninja
Pikachu.
had a season. Pikachu had the lore of everything.
Not exactly.
Yes, he
Every
did.
season,
Oh,
every season.
shit.
Okay, so okay. Since you want to say that, cool. Now we can talk about that.
He-
How many seasons did Ash use Pikachu?
Everyone.
Every season.
First off, not really, because he was using Charizard a lot more before Pikachu. When
A lot-
Charizard first came out,
wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there. You said he used Charizard a lot more. By definition, you asked me how many seasons was Pikachu used. He was used every season.
ISO. Right?
Charizard was
no.
gone.
No,
I'm just saying,
no, stop. Don't go moving the
Yes,
goalpost.
Kitty, slap this nigga,
Pikachu
please.
was used every season. No matter if you want to say somebody else was used more, by definition, you're wrong.
Charizard could have been used in season 4
By definition,
all season,
you
but
are
Pikachu
wrong.
was used in season 1, 2, and 3, and still beats him,
Gen
outbeats
1,
him.
Like, all right, let's go with Gen 1. Gen 1, he was using Pikachu a lot. I'll
Name
give
a
it. I'll
season,
give it.
but let's make it shorter. Name a season when Pikachu wasn't used at all.
Ash Ninja Z.
I didn't ask you that. I said at all.
At all?
Yes.
At all.
Stop. At all. So
Name
then-
a season
Hold on,
he
hold
wasn't
on.
used at all.
Hold on. So then, by definition, Pikachu was used every season. Greninja was not. I'm a lawyer,
Because
bro.
he's not.
Bro, I'm
not.
a lawyer. We can't do this with me. You
He's
know
not.
how I get.
Oh
I
my
go to the
God.
definition of technicality.
So I'm gonna argue this too. Greninja came later. Pikachu been running. If we going by how the game works, when you caught Pikachu, he was level what? 1. By that time he got to his ass, Pikachu was, as you said, on 1,000. This nigga wasn't on 1,000. Stop.
Exactly.
He has a form that.
I don't give a damn what form he got.
Hold on.
The
Let's
type
go
of
to the track record.
Pikachu, the type of nigga
Let's-
that
hold
don't
on.
even need
Hold
a
on.
form
Let's
or
go
don't
back to
even
the
need a
technicalities.
thunderstone
Hold
to
on.
whoop
I
ass.
can't even be mad with y'all because y'all are Gen 1. So y'all.
Wait, hold on. Here's the thing. Pikachu has been fighting since Gen 1. Greninja has been fighting since whatever series we met him. Battle experience and stats still has to be on Pikachu, so he had more battles.
Yeah, but Pikachu was.
There
dying
is
though.
no yeah, but. There's no yeah, but. That's it.
Okay, so now Pikachu lost to level 5s. Like he lost to a starter that the nigga just got. You telling me that Ash Greninja's getting beat up like that? No, he's not.
Pikachu's still stronger though.
Does it not if you lose it to level 5s.
The
bro.
same guy who beats legendaries, who lost to the level 5. So we're gonna back that up by saying he beats a legendary as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. We're not doing this right now.
Fair enough.
We're not doing
I
this
was
right
waiting for him to finish so I can just go back. So why are we even saying he beating Mewtwo? Because he didn't beat him, but he beat Rayquaza. So that level 5 bullshit could beat some Rayquaza too? Fuck no.
Because
No.
Rayquaza is stronger than you, so I don't care what y'all say. He
Yeah,
has a
whatever.
Mega Evolution.
Let's,
No.
get, let's get to the chat.
Galaxy, even Galaxy says, bro, before Ash Greninja, Pikachu has been fighting legendaries and mythicals. Like, bro, please.
What mythicals did Pikachu fight? And Pikachu did not fight that many legendaries, bro. No, he did not.
Now, Donnie said Ash's Pikachu has protagonist aura. He does.
Protagonist
If
aura.
you say it like that, fine. I cannot be fine. I mean, not fine. I cannot be mad. If you say he
There's
has
no
that type of aura.
guarantee that Ash's Pikachu. Wait, there's no guarantee that
That's
Ash's
Ash
Pikachu.
Pikachu.
Other Pikachus aren't that powerful. It's true.
Other Pikachus
Understand.
aren't. But we said who's
No.
Ash's
What
stronger?
Kozer is saying is there's no argument. It's Pikachu because other Pikachus can't catch up to that Pikachu.
Right.
So clearly, he's Pikachu's elite.
Understandable. But since he said that, you're saying that other Greninjas can meet that Greninja? Can't because his Greninja is specifically special. It
I
literally
hear
is so
you.
special
Bro,
because
so
in
you
the
so
game,
what I'm hearing is you love Greninja.
No, I actually love different guys up here. Like Gengar, I actually love Gengar a lot.
I,
It's just,
I hear you. I hear you about Greninja in the forums and shit.
Someone pull up Chat GPT at this point.
Man, you gotta put no chat, nothing. It's Pikachu.
Ash's Pikachu got mad aura.
Even if we
He
did, I'm pretty
just-
sure ChatGPT gonna say Greninja.
Pika.
Like, actual fight, not even
Distance
wise. You check it, because I'm pretty sure it's Ash Greninja.
All right, so
Because Pikachu got beat up by Lucario.
So here's a question: can Ash Greninja beat Ash's Pikachu?
Let me see.
Yeah, answer that.
You talking about, okay, when you say that, now my question to you is, are we talking about like straight hand-to-hand combat or actual,
Bro, in a
like,
fucking
moves?
Pokemon
Okay.
battle, bro.
Pikachu,
With
go!
moves, with moves. Like,
Pikachu,
actual-
Just
go!
a Pokemon battle, bro.
You
Like,
can't say a Pokemon battle because there's
Pikachu
Why not?
versus
They're Pokemon
Greninja, my guy.
battling.
No, because there's a difference.
Bro, my guy, Pikachu versus Greninja. Answer the question.
All right, super effective wise, Pikachu got it.
All right, this is over.
Not even super
But
effective.
hand-to-hand combat,
Not,
Greninja's winning.
Nobody
not
asked you all
even
that.
super
Pikachu,
effective wise.
It's Pikachu, bro. Stop.
Nigga say if it's hands on like this is Mayweather and
Because-
Tyson. What the
because
fuck,
this
They
nigga?
use powers, bro.
There's moves. Are we asking moves or hand-to-hand?
ChatGPT.
Hello, hi. It's a
Gren-
Pokemon
Greninja
battle.
showed
Your
you
powers
moves.
count. Nobody throws
Pika.
just hands in a Pokemon battle.
said Pikachu.
Stop it,
Pika.
bro.
Because,
ChatGPT
but what it says
said
though, because
Pikachu.
he's a thunder, because he's an electric type, right? Look at it.
Pika.
Ash Greninja can beat
Yes, Ash Greninja can beat Pikachu. It's extremely close in many scenarios.
Nigga,
Meaning he can do it. He can beat. Even ChatGPT said it. He can beat.
Bro.
Bro, no, bro, no.
Pika.
Oh my God!
is
We put him in ChatGPT.
No, it said Pikachu can still win.
Pikachu is whooping his
But
ass.
they're giving it to him. Y'all not gonna push Ash Greninja aside like that. Y'all not.
Yeah,
gonna
we
do
just
that.
did, bro.
We
Y'all
just
not gonna do
did.
that.
It's over
Y'all not
for
gonna do
this
that. Even
guy.
ChatGPT said he can
We
win.
just did, bro. Can we
He
move on now? Can we
It's
move on now?
over.
God,
It's
bro.
over
Bro, you
for
keep
his
bringing your
balling.
mans in them every week to lose, bro.
Because that's Ash Greninja. Stop it.
Okay,
It's also Ash's
Let me ask you a
Pikachu.
question. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a
just
question.
ask you a simple question.
Let me ask you a question. Does Pikachu have forms?
Yes.
Now, in the
If
in the
he
game,
if he gets a Thunderstone,
in
yes.
the Pokemon, that's an evolution, not a form. It's an evolution.
No matter
Evolution
what
and
form
is
you're
two
talking
different.
about,
Okay,
Ash's Pikachu is
Okay,
stronger than
let
Greninja, bro.
me get it. Let me get it. It's not a form, it's an evolution. The fact is, the nigga don't even need the evolution.
He don't.
The nigga don't even
He
need
don't.
it. This nigga is an evolution and still can't beat him.
But he has a form because that's
The
him.
nigga is still an evolution and still can't beat a
Bro,
nigga
I
that
don't
ain't.
Video game gave him his
understand-
own form.
I
He's
don't
his own
understand
Pokemon,
your
bro.
argument, bro.
If a game
That's why.
gives you your own
That's
form,
why I asked.
are you not
That's why
wrong?
I asked it the way I
understand
asked
what you're
it.
saying, bro.
That's why I asked it the way I asked it because I know Greninja comes from a
My
smaller fucking
argument is y'all
Pokemon.
not gonna push away my boy like this. Y'all
We're
gonna
not
do
saying
that.
Greninja's not fly. He's not beating Ash Pikachu, though.
It's not.
Let's move on.
You said it yourself that he's super effective.
Yeah, that's fun, but that's what I'm saying. Super effective.
Hit
Y'all
this
talking
nigga
about
with the
hand-to-hand?
Hold on.
hit this
Hold
nigga
on.
with Thunder twice. It's
Hold on.
over.
Hold up, my nigga. When was the last time we had a Pokemon battle? Niggas like, let's just go hand to hand. You use your powers, right? So
This
why are you
Pokemon-
separating
This
it now?
Pokemon battles that niggas did not use
Hold
moves. Did you
on.
not see them?
Hold on. Why you not want to separate it to put it in your side? Oh, just hand to hands. Because Pikachu doing karate.
Because I asked the question.
No.
Pikachu can do.
No.
Pikachu can
Stop.
do moves without
Stop.
actually fighting.
Stop.
bro.
What moves?
Hold on.
He can
When you
use his
say
tail to
Pokemon
fight.
battle,
The tail is called what?
You can swing your tail without saying Iron Tail, nigga.
The tail is called what? What
It's
is
a
what,
tail.
what is? It's just called tail. Do tail.
You
Right.
can swing your tail.
yo,
without
why
saying
y'all
Iron
even
Tail.
doing this? It's a Pokemon
Iron
battle.
Tail is a
Niggas
Pokemon
use
move.
powers. That's
no,
it.
No, I
It's super
hear you. I need
effective.
him. I need him to
Nobody
say
goes
it.
Pikachu, just throw hands. So stop.
It ain't
He
go.
can.
It ain't,
He can swing his tail without saying Iron
Can
Tail.
or can't is
so
not the point.
whether-
He's going to shock you. That is it, bro.
whether he says Pikachu, do the Mike Tyson. It's a fucking command. Fucking do this or use your tail or use Thunder.
I've
It's
never
still
heard
fucking
nobody
a
go-
command
Letting
telling
Greninja
this nigga to
die.
do.
Bro, I've never heard
Because
nobody.
they don't know about
Bro,
Ash Greninja. I
hold
can't
on.
get mad with that
I've
because
never
it's
heard
just
in my life
Alright.
nobody talk about a Pokemon battle. Oh, yo, just hands. Stop, man.
Because
Cut
you
it
don't
out.
have to- you don't swing a oh my god, did you not see the episode when niggas were not using
Pikachu!
moves? They was just
My
actually
nigga.
fighting?
My nigga. Pikachu's going to shock you. Stop.
Te-
He's going to shock you.
Bro,
Cut it out.
what Pokemon is
My nigga.
using regular
Hands.
attacks
Right, hands.
without
You tried
commands?
it so bad, bro. Stop, bro.
Hitmonchan can
Because
fight
that's a
without
fighting
using his
Pokemon.
moves.
He got no other choice.
So
Shut
you're
up.
telling me that
He's
bro,
a
so you telling me
boxer.
none of these guys up here cannot use a move?
What
We talking about
what,
Pikachu
what
versus
Hitmonchan-
Greninja.
What
Why are we
Hitmonchan
talking about
has-
just hands when Pikachu's going to shock you?
what Hitmonchan that has a trainer
Why?
that does whatever they want?
Why?
There's even Pokemon out there that's used okay,
What?
Nobody's talking about that. We're talking about
What
Pikachu,
Pokemon
who's
that
going
has-
to shock you.
What Pokemon has a trainer that does whatever they want? That does whatever attacks they want? What Pokemon? What trainer?
You looking at number 3?
Man, stop it!
He was using
He's
moves
going
without
to
Ash.
shack
He
you.
was using
Because
Ash. He was using moves without Ash.
Because he
Command.
doesn't respect him.
Bro,
Okay,
he's
but that's
going
fine.
to
You
shack
just asked me
you.
the question. I
He
answered
said
it.
this shit made
Now,
me take a
now,
shot.
here-
Bro,
wait.
he's going to
Now,
shack you.
to your argument again, how did he beat Magmar?
Say that again.
So your argument again about number 3, how did he beat Magmar? He had to get a what? A command to beat Magmar.
Nigga, he was already in the air.
He
before
needed
used
a command to
before he
beat
said
Magmar,
seismic
and
toss, though.
He needed
Bro,
the
your
command to
argument
beat
is so
Magmar.
trash, you need to stop, bro.
Yeah, all right.
Bigfoot says,
Just
"Quit arguing
stop,
with
bro.
DK. He thinks he's
Go
always
ahead.
right."
Y'all do what y'all doing, bro.
Okay, so you
Okay,
argue with me then. Everybody stop. You argue with me then. Fuck it. Nah. Don't even scroll. You argue with me then. What the fuck? I hate when niggas say that. Prove me wrong then. When was the last time you had a fucking Pokemon battle with a nigga who used electricity
That didn't use
and you don't
nothing
use the
else.
fucking electricity? Shut up,
Like
bro.
and the nigga is sitting here doing Lin Chun or
Shut
martial
up.
arts out here. Bing, 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 bing.
All of a sudden is, let's stop Pikachu from using the electricity because it's super impressive.
No, you can't do that.
Now you can't use it. Shut up.
That shit make no sense.
Makes sense, Bigfoot.
That's what I
Get the
said.
fuck outta here.
It take for this
All of a sudden now
little yellow
Charizard's not
mouse.
spitting fire today.
No.
All of a sudden Squirtle's not using water today. All of a fucking sudden Bulbasaur is not doing leaf shit.
Boy, that's
All of a
And
sudden.
all of a sudden Bigfoot got some dumb shit to say. Y'all are pissing me the fuck
He
off
said,
right now.
Damn a Pokemon.
When the fuck niggas stop using the Pokemon's actual power?
That's the power.
Especially if electricity
It's his main fucking power. That's his main
What
shit.
the fuck?
The nigga description is electric mouse. That's his description.
Pikachu.
Electric mouse.
Pikachu do Wing
Oh
Chun.
my God, right, AK, I'm dope.
Pikachu do a roundhouse kick. Roadhouse. Bow.
Yeah, bow.
Y'all niggas
fuck?
is stupid.
You're pissing me off now.
What the fuck is
Y'all are
that?
pissing me off now.
Change the game.
Oh, GK think
The
he's
fuck
always
going
right.
on here?
What the fuck?
Oh my God.
Boy, ain't no way.
Nigga, if y'all can't prove me right, then just admit
Now-
that. 'Cause
now-
I'm not letting up.
now
I'm
I'm
not
hot.
letting up.
I'm hot.
I'm not letting up. This is some dumb shit.
So we all agree that Pikachu is
Everybody
actually
and their
strong,
mama
yeah.
but this nigga here.
Everybody in their mouth. This nigga right
Ain't
Even
no
Chat
fancy,
GPT.
Not even with Ash Greninja. You got a Lucario up there.
Let's
a
move on,
Dragonite.
let's
A
move on.
Dragonite is a pseudo
Press the
legend.
button.
What are
Press
you
the button.
talking about,
Press the
bro?
button. Press the button.
Statistically, he's stronger.
I don't give a
But
fuck
you
about no
said
pseudo
Pikachu also
legendary.
beat a legendary. Now you coming with a half
A
legendary?
half one.
You do not know how to debate,
just
bro.
saying.
You
That's like
do not know how to
that's
debate.
that's
I'm
this is,
just
You
saying.
went down.
what you
You went
I'm
down.
gonna tell you
I'm
what you
just
just
trying
said.
to. I'm just trying to put y'all
I'ma
attention to the other
I'm gonna
numbers.
just tell you what you just said. That's like saying, oh yeah, Kratos beat a god, Zeus, but he can't beat a half god. What the fuck? What the fuck is that?
What are you talking about?
Kratos is the god of war. He beat his father, Zeus. And you gonna say, yeah, he can't be a demigod? What the fuck is that, bro? That makes no sense. These are immortals. These are not.
I'm just saying, Pikachu did have
give it up.
faults.
GK to the
I'm about to have a heart attack.
This shit is
I'm
crazy.
saying,
Mighty
Ash
Mouse
Greninja.
whooping all day ass.
No.
Probably.
It's Ash Greninja, but Ash Greninja will get smoked by
I
Ash's
don't understand
Pikachu.
why you keep saying Ash
Any
Greninja like
Pikachu,
it's not Ash's
no.
Pikachu.
No, Ash Greninja.
Why does that
is
have
the form.
base?
Ash
What is
Greninja is the
Ash's
form.
Pikachu?
Ash Greninja is the form. That's not a normal Greninja that
Yo,
you're
move
looking
on,
at,
son.
bro.
Move on.
How that's not a Greninja?
Move on, bro.
It is a Greninja.
It's not a normal Greninja, man.
It's not
That's
a
not
normal
a normal
Pikachu, then, if that's
Pikachu.
the case. It's not a
That is
normal
a normal
Charizard.
Pikachu.
It's
There's
not
no
a
form to
No, they
him.
say that it's strong. It's not a regular Pikachu that you can just catch. Ash's Pikachu is way stronger than a regular Pikachu.
Understandable, but Ash's Greninja is not normal fucking Greninja.
What the fuck does that mean? You just agreed that Ash's Pikachu ain't normal.
Ain't normal,
I can't
right?
You
Ash's
just
Greninja is not normal neither.
Don't ask me no questions. I can't stop.
Ash's Greninja is not
I'm
normal
all the way
neither.
back here.
Oh
Let's
my
move on. Let's move on.
God.
Let's move on.
So,
Let's move on.
so my
God.
question still stands: can Ash's Greninja beat Ash's Pikachu?
I agree, yes. In that form, yes, I actually agree. He can actually do it.
You're the only one that agrees. We can leave that at that. Let's leave that at that.
That's crazy.
I can ask
Play
mad
it, that's
Pokemon
fine.
fans right now.
Nobody, they're not here. You're by yourself.
All right, whatever.
Goodbye,
Go ahead.
Hey,
Buddy not here.
hey,
Go ahead.
hey.
Go ahead. You gone.
That's it.
That's it.
Next game.
That's it for that one.
The Greninja Glaze was OD.
The
And
Greninja
honestly, it's
Grace
not even really my favorite Pokemon, but I'm not just gonna let y'all push him to the side like that. Fuck that.
We're not pushing
against
to the
Ash's
side.
Pikachu. Hell yeah.
You asked us what's Ash's strongest Pokemon.
Not,
It's clearly Pikachu,
not even
bro.
just us.
Doesn't even
Clearly,
look at everybody
I don't
else.
want to know nothing. He's
Like, there's a
Pikachu.
Lucario out there for fucking.
Nobody wants to know nothing. He's Pikachu.
clearly, everybody else in the Pokemon world, especially the developers, feel like Ash's
The
Pikachu
developers, my nigga. The
feel
niggas
that
who
way
made the
because they
show.
done started with his ass and came with him later.
But
She said, I need a Capri Sun.
I'm just saying, in the actual like,
Ain't no actual nothing.
in the video game, Ash's Greninja is winning. But I'm just saying.
In the video game.
In the video game, really? In the video game, really?
He is, yes.
Ash's Pikachu is
And
not
Ash's
beating.
Ash's Greninja is beating Ash's Pikachu.
What video game allows you to do Ash's Greninja versus Ash's Pikachu?
Gen 7.
Okay, Gen 7. You can do Ash's
And
Greninja.
moving forward, too.
Not just any Greninja, and
Ash's
not just
Greninja.
any Pikachu, but Ash's Greninja
Right.
and Ash's Pikachu.
Yes.
And that game, Greninja beats his ass.
Yes.
Nah.
Yeah, we just move on.
Yeah,
We've
that's
been here
it.
too long. We
How
just
you gonna
move
say
on.
nah? He's faster. Statistically, actually, like,
We're moving on. We're moving on.
You're right. We're moving on. You're right.
Greninja lost.
That shit sound crazy. We already going. We already on. Kitty!
Kitty wants to dance,
Hey,
baby.
hey. It's a birthday. Get it.
What we got next, CJ? You got anything up there?
Tremblay.
You want to do some Tremblay?
Okay, God.
Hold on. Let me see. We got
Bacon, egg, and
Tremblay.
cheese.
Let's do Tremblay. I like this Tremblay.
Bacon, egg, and cheese.
We got more stuff coming up.
That's a real New York thing, y'all. If y'all don't know, bacon, egg, and cheese. Go to the store and say, Poppy, let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese. You're going to get a bacon, egg, and cheese. You go to a regular store. Yo,
Big
yo.
egg and cheese, baby.
Let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese. Say, what the fuck is that?
You don't even got to say, let me get a big egg and cheese.
Yeah.
They know exactly what you mean.
Yep. You go to a Walmart or you go to a Wawa and say, let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese. What the fuck is that?
Right. I'm going to do this one. I know this
All right, here we go. Tremblay, y'all. Tremblay.
So Tremblay is, y'all gonna see a bunch of scrambled up words and letters. Tell me what that word is, or whatever the case may be. Go ahead.
A wicked tweet.
No.
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Shit, baby, gonna be a whole second.
Oh, I got you. Yu-Gi-Oh.
You know what?
Or Ugoye.
Yeah.
Ugoye.
That's Uguay.
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 You be coming with the hard shits.
All right. Okay. Let's see what. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got.
So is Yugi's Dark Magician not beating?
Shut up! Leave it alone.
Not beating who? Pikachu?
No, not Pikachu. This one's Dark
No,
Magician.
play the game. You about to start your shit for no reason. Leave him alone, goddammit. He said Greninja's
Akuma.
beating.
No.
Kurama.
Kurama. Yeah.
Let's see what chat got to say. Let's let them play.
Kurama.
Right, enough.
Can you say
You
Yogi
gotta-
Bear?
Enough, CJ.
Yes, Yogi Bear.
Yogi Bear. Hey, boo boo, like another picnic basket.
It is.
You can have a picnic right there on the ground while the fucking nine-tailed fox is standing over your head.
Right.
Cinderella.
Because you gave away the answer. I'm not
Exactly.
gonna. He gave away the
Goddamn.
answer.
Exactly. Because he
He
gave it
gave
away.
away the
That-
answer.
that-
You clicked on the
that-
next picture.
Your Oklahoma gave it away.
That was my bad. I was just trying.
Oh, come on.
I was trying to just hover over here.
That's one of the big ones.
Come on, man. You fucked it up.
You fucked it up,
Yeah,
TJ.
that's Lyndon Lancelot.
Yeah.
No, stop using the mouse and use the keyboard.
Well, I wanted to just
just
talk
press
about the
the-
picnic.
Yeah.
right there.
Press the space button
But-
so you ain't got to worry about going too far.
but I just wanted to talk about
He
the
wants
picnic.
to- he wants- Women's Month.
Yes.
It's
Right.
the bar.
It's the women's moth.
You got to press the thing so you don't go past it too far. See how that works? How easy that works?
Well, chat don't know. Look, chat didn't see nothing. Look, they don't see
They
what you.
know, they know now. They see though. They already got it.
Right, we already said it.
Well, all right, Kitty. Well, all right, guys. All right.
Press the space button.
Well, all
So you
right.
keep doing that.
I had to get it back up there to do it, so now I can press the space button.
Yeah, space button.
Space button.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, motherfucker.
A subdural hematoma.
Yeah, bacon, cheese. Yeah, figure that out. Figure that out, motherfuckers.
Yeah,
That's
They
it.
don't know nothing.
That is
able.
What?
that's,
What?
that's Abu Dhabi.
Are
Are
you
you-
able?
She
Are
made
you-
a sentence.
Are you
Are
able?
you able? to guess this stupid ass murder.
So wait, before we put up chat, let's get everybody here first.
Right.
What do you think of it?
I said subdural hematoma, but it's not that.
I don't fucking know.
He said something stupid.
There's an L, but there's no
There's
TH
two
for
E's in
library.
there, 2 A's in there, 2 U's in there.
Right.
Anything?
Bushido blade now.
What? What?
I don't
Shooks.
have
Let's see what chat got.
Go chat. Go chat. Kitty said it, y'all. Bulbasaur. Oh.
Damn, shoot, you should have got that.
I was looking at you for that. I was looking at you for that.
Goddamn. He's sitting back here.
I didn't even see it.
Yeah, he's right here.
Oh, right.
I didn't even see it, but now I see yeah, Bulbasaur.
Y'all can see.
Nigga back there sitting there like, bye-bye. Bulbasaur.
I should have guessed that one.
Rikers. I'm out of here. He with the face. Gotta go, chat. This nigga said Rikers.
Come on. Not too much time to think. What you got?
Shrek. No.
Oh,
Shrek,
yeah.
Shrek,
Shrek.
Shrek. Good answer. I gotta give you the fin.
So what you got? It's like
Shrek.
revenge or something?
Yup.
Yeah, Shrek.
What, you like mad at me right now?
That's
Yeah.
donkey. That's donkey.
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 That's donkey.
Donkey.
Kitty got it.
He said, come here, donkey.
He said, y'all from New York for sure. Alright, play that.
Donkey. Get away from my swamp.
Predator.
Loki. Loki, it looks like it says ultra deeper. Loki, it looks like it says ultra deeper. Drop
Alright.
a bomb for that. I'm triggered. That's
Jeez, come on.
Hey,
son.
yo!
Come on, man.
You gotta get some out.
She hit me with the finger thing. Oh, man. That was it. Got time for another game?
Yeah, we got one.
Yeah, I got another one up there.
Yeah.
Do a fusion mix.
Fusion. I'm trying to pause it before it goes all the way through.
You got to see the answer.
CJ, you won't get your ass beat.
Yeah,
Get back
yeah.
home.
Body slam.
Okay.
Is there a question?
I
for
got
this?
question. Yes.
Okay.
Who up there? They're all actors, right?
Yes.
Which one of them up there? Who do you guys think does not have a music hit?
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the white guy?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
Don't even
Mark
say you don't make
Wahlberg.
music.
It's the only one
Eddie
Okay.
Murphy did make
that doesn't have a
Oh,
hit,
yeah.
a music hit. When you
Yeah.
say like Billboard 100s or just a music song.
Music song.
Oh,
Mark
the third
Mark
one.
Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg.
Eddie
Wrong.
Murphy got my girl wants to.
Hmm?
Wrong.
Right.
They all got a song up there.
Mark
Mark
Wahlberg
Wahlberg
sings.
and the
Was this a
Funky
trick
Bunch.
question?
And the who?
The Funky
And the
Bunch.
He was a part of a group in the
Was this a
80s.
trick-
Oh,
So they
a trick
actually
I
have a
wasn't
hit
born
song.
yet.
And if you guys play, you would know.
It's called Mark Wahlberg and the Funky Bunch.
I don't remember exactly, but he was the hip hop-ish main man of the group.
What was the name of the group?
Mark Wahlberg, I forgot the name. But I've heard the song several times.
Well, I just know
Then
that nigga
still
from
answer still stands because
Transformers.
Mark Wahlberg don't have a song.
You,
His group has a song.
Mark Wahlberg has a song. Look it up.
Eddie Murphy got a song too. So
I know.
Was he in? Was he in the group or was he?
Whether it was group or solo, everybody up there got a hit.
Everybody up there got a hit though. But Eddie Murphy do too.
I'm not even sure if Mark Wahlberg was a group or if it was just him. So if you want to get schematics and all that.
Right, because there's a technicality behind that. If you were in the group, your group music is not your music.
technicality, but everybody up there got a hit. Mark Wahlberg,
So that's
we all know
everybody.
Jamie Foxx, we all know J-Lo,
Eddie Murphy too.
Eddie Murphy too.
question.
That was my second question. Well, who is the proprietor of Party All the Time?
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie
Hey,
Murphy.
man,
Okay.
for sure.
That's the only one he did. Right?
And so that's it. He stopped after that.
He should have stopped.
I think he did one more, but it just didn't go
I
anywhere.
think Party All the Time was fire.
It was cute.
It was, yeah.
But it wasn't
He
no-
pulled it off.
Yeah.
He said Mark because ranking wise it wasn't top 5. Okay. It's probably the least most popular
I
song
didn't
up
even know
there.
I didn't even know that.
Marky Mark and the Funky
Marky
Bunch.
Mark and the Funky Bunch. Yes, that was it.
That's the name of the band?
Yeah.
Marky Mark
Yeah.
and the Funky Bunch?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like Diana and the Pips.
Right. So if maybe I asked the
Oh,
question
excuse me,
wrong.
Diana and the Supreme.
Then it's Supreme. But maybe I asked the question wrong or whatever the case
Gladys
may
and the
be.
Pips.
But he's still included into like a hit
Right,
song,
right, right.
whatever the case is. All right, let's get to some fusion. I just threw that one in there first. This one was easy.
And Nightwing.
That one was easy.
Yeah.
That one was easy.
The
I just-
symbol.
I just liked how it came out, so I left it.
Yeah.
I like that it came out.
The symbol though is crazy. Like
Just for those
on
y'all
the
who
chest
don't
and
know what the fusion game is, I fused 2 different things together, or people, or comic characters, whatever. And your job is to tell me what 2 things I fused together.
right,
This
right,
was a
right.
fusion of, for example, Green Lantern and Nightwing,
Right.
and that's what we got.
The baton and the mask gave it quick for me. I didn't even look at
It was
chest.
easy. The
I
chess
didn't look
piece
at
gave it
chest.
away. The ring,
This just looking at the emblems there.
yeah.
It was a giveaway. I didn't even see the chest
I
and
put
everything.
the face here to hide the bat symbol that was up there,
I'm done with
but
that.
that made it extra obvious. But I think that came out fly though.
It did. It did.
Nice.
I just picture this glowy nigga running down on you in the
Yeah,
city
no, it's over.
while you doing
It's over,
that.
it's over, it's
This
over.
shit is just like, oh, here he come.
Yeah,
Here he come.
glowy ass nigga showing up again.
It's like, fuck.
Nigga say, you're not Batman.
Like, every time I'm robbing this fucking bank, here you go.
Here you go with this green shit.
Glowy motherfucker. Like, I'd be a fucked up person. Yeah. Makes sense.
That's Nightwing.
Nightwing.
That's the first Robin.
Oh,
Why
okay.
you
In
and,
Naruto.
Wow.
hard.
Yeah. it is.
What?
That's hard as fuck.
So now, so instead of Hadouken, it's
Radukin.
Hadouken.
Radukin. That is a Radukin.
Nobody doing that.
This such thing as a Radukin now? You created a Radukin?
I created Ryu and Naruto. That's what Chad's saying. Ryu and Naruto.
What app did you use for this?
I used what's it called again? Gemini.
Oh, Rasengan.
Oh, okay.
Gemini.
You created a Radukin?
I actually could have sometimes see how they did it.
Yeah.
They first gave me the Naruto color here. I said put it black. I
Mhm.
could have said take the headband off and the whiskers off. That's what I honestly did.
Yeah.
I could have taken away like the most obvious parts, but I said fuck it.
And then it low key could be Akuma, but it's not.
Nah,
because,
that shit came out fire though.
Oh my god.
That shit came out fire.
Evil. Just picture not
Ryu Uzumaki.
Ryu Uzumaki.
Ryu Uzumaki.
Ryu Uzumaki.
Uh-huh. Or Naruto Shinlong. Shinlong. Or
I'm
Shinlong, whatever the fuck his name
I'm
is.
just picturing him doing the shin.
Mhm.
Sure, you can, but
The
like
multi-shadow
oh my-
clone Shin Shoryuken.
the multi-shadow clone shin. Sure, you can will be
He
outrageous.
said, but the hidden leaf symbol. Yeah, sometimes I'll go through the extra effort of ripping away all the obvious signs.
Yeah.
But this time I just like that turned out. So I
Because
decided.
it looked hard.
The only thing I changed was the color here. Because they had the Naruto hair. It was way too obvious.
Yeah.
At that point, it was just like, you know what I mean? This stance is Ryu, though.
Yeah. Stances.
That stance is Ryu.
that
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
But he's holding
The Rasengan, Hadouken style.
the only thing I hid with the face is there was a symbol there that made it obvious.
Yeah.
So I hid the symbol.
What weapon is this?
These are 2 weapons fused together.
Wonder Woman's lasso
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
with
Is that a Star Wars sword? No. Could it be?
it could be. Yeah. The Darth Maul's half Star Wars
That's what
sword
you think it is?
with Wonder Woman's lasso.
So you're going Wonder Woman and
Darth Maul's Star Wars
or
half
lightsaber,
sword.
essentially.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going the same way.
I have no idea.
Let's see what chat's saying.
Let's see.
That's cute. Ryuto.
Ryuto.
That's fire.
Ryuto.
Ryuto is fire.
Koza said Ryuto.
Wonder
See this?
Woman's lasso and Star Wars. Okay, that's what Galaxy Storm says. Okay. You ready to run it? Let's see what we got.
Oh, or it could be Zero Suit Samus's thing. Oh, I was right. Okay, I was
Yeah.
The
right.
lasso plus a lightsaber.
Lightsaber, yeah.
Because Zilla Samus got a lasso that looked just like that too.
If it would have had the W on it, the Wonder Woman W.
That's what the smiley face
Yeah,
was
it's
the
colored.
W.
Yeah.
It was with the Wonder Woman symbol.
Yeah.
So I said, let me blotch that out.
Yeah.
The fuck?
A rabbit and a raccoon.
Chinchilla.
Raccoon.
A chinchilla.
A squirrel.
A raccoon and a rabbit.
A raccoon and a rabbit.
I was gonna say
A
chinchilla.
raboon.
A raboon.
A raboon.
You going with that too?
A raboon.
You going with raboon?
Yep.
Coon bit.
Cool.
Yeah, a coon dick. Drop a ball. That
Yo,
was
A
amazing.
Cash, we appreciate you for popping in, family.
Yeah, drop a ball for A-Cash later, bro. I'll catch you later, bro.
Or it could be a lemur, because that looked like King Julian's tail. It could be a lemur.
A
Julian?
lemur.
It could be King Julian. It could be King
A
Julian.
raccoon and a rabbit. Coon dick. Coon dick. There you go.
He said a hare and a raccoon. Okay.
Yep.
Everybody
A hare is
said
basically
raccoon,
a
but I feel
rabbit.
like it's the-
A rabbit,
I feel like
He
it's the
said
King Julian.
a hare and a lemur. Somebody else got
Yeah,
lemur.
lemur,
Baldoni
yeah.
got lemur.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
saying lemur too.
It would be Baldoni to say lemur.
Lemur, yeah, Brazilian.
Yeah,
That's
Brazilian
like-
shit there.
Us on the east side, we going
Yeah,
right.
Baldoni says, yes, King Julian
Yeah.
at the party. Come
Alright,
down
let's see
to
what we
Brazil and Sao Paulo to do the dancing with
Sao
the ladies.
Paulo.
Sao Paulo with the ladies.
I wasn't raccoon. But it could have been a lemur.
It could, no, it could definitely could have been
A
lemur.
raccoon and a bunny. That's an Easter bunny too. Goddamn. A
A
ostrich and a flamingo?
Yeah, ostrich and a flamingo, yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah,
That came out nice though, didn't it?
But I think this really could happen.
Not for real.
That came out really nice. It is an ostrich. I'm not even gonna stretch it. It is an ostrich.
It look the two in the back right there, but it looked like the ostrich.
Damn
was
it! I didn't even notice that.
It looked like the ostrich over there, like just come stepping. Hey, baby, how you doing?
Yo, how you doing, baby?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, did you hear I was the fastest on land?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
He said, "Flamastrich." That's creative. Guys, said Flamastrich.
Flamastrich.
Koza said, "Flamingastrich."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a.
It's an Ostringo.
Kitty said that would honestly be scary.
Yeah.
To me, it just looks like a prettier ostrich.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a
Ostringo.
pink ostrich.
That shit crazy. Yes. Ooh. wee.
That's the
That's
Hulk.
Hulk. That's
Yeah.
Hulk, definitely, because the
That's
pants.
definitely the Hulk.
The what's the lizard from
Spider-Man, I think it's called
Spider-Man.
I'll give y'all one clue. I'll give y'all one clue. It's the only part of it that threw me off,
Mm-hmm.
minus the tail. Don't watch the tail. If y'all wanted to exclude the tail, because none of the original put-togethers have a tail.
Gargoyle? No.
So you can minus the tail in your mind. And
Okay.
then I'll give you guys that hint. Everything else is a hint.
Gargoyle?
Okay.
But the tail, none of the two original fusions
Yeah.
actually has a tail.
Okay.
So minus the tail.
What is that? Gorilla Grodd.
Hulkzilla. Doomsday.
Yeah.
Okay, Baldoni say Doomsday and Hulk.
Hulk and Gorilla Grodd.
Destroyed City made me think Godzilla. Okay, I see you're using the background for clues. Okay.
Baldoni makes a good point though. Doomsday and Hulk. So yeah, I would lean more on Doomsday and Hulk, but I said Hulk and Gorilla Grodd.
Gorilla Grodd? Where do you... Gorilla?
Not because Hulk is green, but Gorilla Grodd has the thought. Well, no, that is Doomsday. Never mind. Doomsday and Hulk. Let's go, Baldoni. My man. My man. I was trying to picture.
Doomsday and Hulk? Okay. Okay.
I just know the Hulk. I don't know the other person.
Yeah, I know the Hulk. I was thinking of Gargoyle, but then,
Okay. Okay.
What gave me Lizard from Spider-Man and Hulk was the tail and the horns.
Yeah, but we're minus the
You
tail.
said that no tail.
Because
So,
none of the originals have a tail. So I
Right.
said, let me minus that because it throws you off.
yeah. So okay, let's see.
Let's see what chat talking about.
Yep, that guy. That's
Oh,
what.
that's
That's
not even
Doomsday.
Yeah.
That's Abomination.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
The shorts look like the Hulk. shorts.
Because he's a Hulk variant.
Yeah.
He's a Hulk enemy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Abomination.
He got Superman thing in his
Yeah, he's known for beating Superman. That's kind of what
Yeah, he's the only one, right? No,
He killed him.
yeah,
He was the first one.
he's the first one. Damn.
I knew once you guys saw the spikes, see, you know that was Doomsday, but I knew he was gonna throw y'all off.
Yeah,
See, none of them have tails.
yeah.
That's why I said
Right.
minus the tail
Right.
because it throws you off.
Right.
See, Abomination.
Now, don't
He said a boomsday.
a Boomsday.
He said, yo, they coming at you
Nah,
again.
it's Pikachu and Ash.
Damn. Damn. Galaxy is hilarious.
So, that's all for the games, but I got a question. What if you meet a girl or a guy, if you're a girl, and everything is going good, right? Relationship is good, relationship is solid, she's taking care of you, but then you find out that she was a thot and niggas used to run through her back in the days, like trains and gangbangs and all that. You still staying with her?
How long did she stop before?
Equated to your age. So yeah, how old are you?
22.
22? Shit, for you, she probably stopped last year, 2 years ago.
People change. Let's say she was
She
prostituting
getting
to get
money.
money.
Did she get? She's clean. Is that a red flag for y'all?
No.
It might for me, because I'm gonna be like, damn, son, do my dick even matter anymore?
Everybody changed.
Do you even like me?
Right, do you really like it?
I think if you're equating it to age, I'm 40. You talking about you did that when you was 25?
That's mad long ago.
I think I can forgive that.
But
Like,
some people sell.
but if you're talking about you're 40 and you stopped when you was 38, niggas are still busting on your face.
Yeah, that's too close.
That's kind of crazy,
I'm good. I'm
Right,
good.
right.
Everybody has a past. So let's say
Yeah,
she was
because
going
they're
to
gonna be like, yo, back in the day, she was wild.
But let's say she was prostituting to go to college.
She what?
Prostituting. Basically selling.
Prostitute was a different thing.
Same
man.
thing. Dicks right through her. How is it
Red
different?
flag.
It's still a
You
different
got
time
to selling
frame.
pussy?
Same shit. Selling pussy to go to college. She did it for a cause.
For
You did it
college.
for a cause?
Yeah.
So that mean niggas are busting on your face for money?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nah, I don't
but
know.
but still, as college
It's the
is
same shit.
averagely, predominantly 18 to 25.
Yeah,
do we
she
still
did that.
do we still live in the same area which we was doing this at? That means we could run into a bunch of niggas who nutted on your face. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, that's probably.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's a problem for me.
Straight fact.
Do we? Are we 40 now? Are you telling me like I met you in Brooklyn and you from Maryland?
Yeah.
That's different for me. The odds of you and me walking down the block, niggas like, yo, me and my mans. It's a little strange.
Right, because I don't want to be at dinner.
For me,
Niggas
it's,
come up to the table. Yo, Kim, what about
Yeah,
this?
well, yeah, like-
Whoa, what? You did what?
Or they you walk down the block and they calling her by her name.
Right.
Like, hey, Lucy!
yeah, exactly.
Her name is really, Sabrina.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt Randall.
It got-
Lucy!
it got
Right.
See, Hollywood said highly likely I would end things.
Listen, I ain't eating that up.
Yeah.
He said, Coda said big red flag. I only got one D, and she need 12 to be happy. I'ma just bow out, son.
No,
Yeah.
she was doing it for
Might
money.
as well.
Right, 12 dicks is
Let's say
crazy.
she was doing it for a cause.
He
You
said,
was wild.
Galaxy said because everyone has a reason and everyone can't change. No, I'm not saying she didn't change.
Right.
I'm not saying she didn't.
Right.
I'm saying you wouldn't now. And
Right.
that's what you find out. And
Right.
after
Oh,
things
they
are
said
going,
she changed.
no,
Right.
Like she don't do it no more.
no, let's just say she changed. But I'm saying in terms of his age,
Yeah.
change probably was
Yeah.
last year.
Right.
Last year.
Yeah.
For my age,
She changed.
She
more likely that was
changed.
a few
Years
years
ago?
back.
10,
Now,
no.
if you 40 and you just changed at 38, I don't want you.
That's
Right.
that's too. That's
You
too
did
fast.
that shit too long.
You can always go back.
It's
yeah.
it's still in your heart
It's still
right
in-
now.
right.
Right.
Now, if you're 40,
Times
and you
get
said the
harder.
last
I'm
time you
some-
wild out like that was when you was
Like
25.
27, yeah, then that's-
I mean, I
Right.
could work. Things is good now.
Right.
You mature. You got a job. You taking care of me.
She got her degree. She is doctor
I mean,
now.
I don't know. I might say, you know what?
Right, that's
Like
different. That's different.
the red flag has timed itself out.
Yeah. You just really would have to see how far in her journey has she come to be
But
able
you want her to
I
tell
would
you
more
what
so
you mad
look at
she
it
found it
as
out, though.
again at 40, because the age matters.
Right,
With
right.
A question like this: at 40, and they say we've been dating for a year.
Uh-huh.
The last year of my life, everything went up.
Right.
Taking care of me.
Uh-huh.
I'm taking care of you.
Right.
You got kids. I'm their stepfather, whatever, because they're 40. You
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
got
big
kids.
ass kids.
I got kids. You got kids. Everything is working fine. And then all of a sudden now you confess to me. Hey, listen. When I was young,
So
up until 25, I was wild.
So you rather her tell you than you found out from other niggas.
Let me tell you something. If you don't tell me, that's the biggest part of the red flag.
Yeah.
Well, what if she embarrassed and she don't want you to
Don't.
leave
You're
her?
40.
You're
Talk to
40.
me.
A lot of people don't like to talk
No, no,
about
no,
the
no,
shit
no,
they
no,
did.
no.
And if you stop
Let me tell you
already,
something. Let me tell you
then
something. Let me tell you something. If we're 40, and all of a sudden I gotta find out through other niggas, yo, bro, I gotta tell you, back in the day, I should already know that.
Not if she closed that chapter. Let's say she
But
was therapy
guess
and
what?
everything, and that's a trigger for her.
Guess what? Other niggas is telling me nasty things about you that's surprising me.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be surprised by what anybody else is telling me.
But what if that's something she buried? It's a trauma. It's a trigger
It's
for her.
not
so she don't
buried
wanna-
if other niggas is telling me it.
But for her,
Yeah, but you're with
let's
me.
say it brings her back.
Yeah.
memories and
It's
she
buried
just
for
like,
you. It's not buried for the niggas who's telling me that they used to nut on you. I shouldn't be surprised of what people say. If I already know and accept it, to me it's just like, bro, mind your business.
Koza up here wilding. Let me say the first one. The first one, Koza said, "This is a bold ass question on National Women's Day."
Right.
My bad. My bad.
And then he said, "Ain't no strap gonna satisfy a level 30 gobbler." Talking to a galaxy, so he said, "Wow, I'm not eating, brother. She needs D. She finna get it." If you know, you know.
When you too old already and you've been doing that way, like I'm 40 and you doing that shit to, like past like 38, 39, that's just
That's
you.
too long.
That's
yeah.
just you.
That's too
Yeah.
I
long.
can't accept that. You 22, 23, 24, and
You still growing.
you was lost and you got whatever.
Yeah.
We could talk about it.
Right.
But my thing is, don't let somebody else tell me something
Yeah.
that finite.
Right. That's
what if in
very
a situation she was pimped out? She don't want to talk about that shit.
Right.
That's trauma.
Hey, listen,
sex
I get
trafficking and
that,
everything.
but I'm with you now.
I don't
mean,
want to tell you my trauma
yeah, but so then basically, why you hiding your past from me? Then I
because
don't
it
know
hurts me to
you.
bring
Yeah,
it
because
up.
now I don't know you.
Nah, that's not true.
Now you can't look at it just from your part of it. You gotta look at it from my. I'm in this too.
But
Yeah,
she's the
but
victim.
I agree
I'm
to that.
in this too.
Nah.
Yeah,
But then guess what? We're breaking up then. What else you lying to me about?
No.
What
That's
else?
not.
You,
It's not lying if I didn't tell you. That's my truth. I don't have
yeah,
to
but
tell
what
you
else
that.
you hiding from me? Now you're a mystery that I don't know.
Nah, that's not true.
If you tell me, there's no
It's the
mystery.
same thing. That's like somebody being raped that they don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about that
That's
shit.
a whole different thing. Rape is not voluntary. You being a hoe was.
No, but I said if you was a pimp, you was
No, we're
forced
talking
into
about
that.
voluntary wholeness. We ain't talking about all that.
No, see, it's the same thing.
No, it's not. We're talking about voluntary wholeness. You was out there sucking dick
Voluntary.
and
Mhm.
tossing that
No,
ass
so
up.
it was voluntary if you didn't tell me. Fuck you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm with you now. I need to know what you've been through.
Why?
Because
Why
other
care?
niggas is telling me what you've been
Fuck
through.
them niggas. That's
No.
the problem. Fuck them niggas.
Why is it fuck them niggas when you got a whole life? I don't know you then. Nah. You can't hide certain things from me that everybody else know. Okay, well I used to be a serial killer. I didn't tell you.
All right, don't tell me
You
ever.
gonna stay
But what
with
if
me
it-
once you
but what
find
if
out?
That's like you like
Are
like
you
you said
going
last
to
week.
stay with
You
me?
sucked the dick back in the day. You ain't tell me.
You
Don't
did
point
it.
sucking dick at me.
See, then he said that last
Don't
week.
point sucking dick at me.
Drop a bomb.
Shut up.
Hey, yo!
Ain't no back in
That's
my
the same thing
day.
you said. What if you sucked it back in the day? You
Ain't
not
no-
gonna tell me that.
Ain't no back in my day.
You
Nothing.
is so stupid.
And guess what? Guess what? If a bitch is dating a nigga who used to suck dick, and the other niggas is telling her that he was out here sucking dick,
One dick.
she
You
should
tried
leave.
to- that the
She should
conversation
leave
said-
him.
Why?
I don't know this. I don't want to date dick suckers. I don't know what.
A girl is a dick sucker. Same thing.
I don't want to date pussy eaters. I don't know.
See, no. No.
Damn.
No. No.
Now I met you. You a lawyer. You giving me this good front. This that. Now niggas tell me they used to bang you 5 at a time. I don't know you.
But how you know they telling the truth? Because niggas can be hating.
Yeah, now I'm talking to you about it. Well, all this extra shit you added in there.
Because it can
We
happen.
already discussed that she was a hoe, nigga. That's the point. So they're
It
not
can
hating.
happen.
They're telling the truth.
The
You
variables.
was a hoe. You know what I'm saying? You supposed to talk to people about that. I'm strongly against. Don't let the streets tell me what you could have told me. That makes me look at you different.
But some people just
I
not
should not
comfortable.
be surprised at what the streets is saying.
Right?
That's it. You ain't got to go. If you want to say, babe, I did some shit when I was young. I want to go into detail, but I was out there a little bit.
A lot of people can't open up about
Well,
it.
then guess what? The relationship's over.
It's gotta be over.
Hey, then you can go be a slut again.
Or be with somebody else that she don't.
That like
What's in her
sluts. You
lifetime?
got people, somebody who
She
likes
doesn't make
sluts.
her slut. She was if it was 25, like you said.
You
and
used
she's
to be
40,
a slut.
Not a slut anymore.
Now, who told you I want to date a used to be slut? You wasted my time.
No.
No, to me, no. You can't
And that's
tell
why
me
she
no.
won't tell you. Because let's say she tell you, say,
Yeah,
I'm
but-
going to be with it. Used to
But
be
the dumb
so
shit
what?
is, you slept with everybody else in the neighborhood. Somebody gonna tell me. I'm a cool ass nigga. I don't want to go to drink with Tony no more if I know he fucked you back then.
Oh damn.
So what if she told you? You still going to drink with him?
No.
Why
Now,
won't you?
now you told me inside of our home, I know to stay away from Tony because it's uncomfortable for me.
No, but 25 years ago.
No, that's how you look at it. That's not how I look at it. I don't want to be around a bunch of niggas who fucked my girl. What the fuck is you talking about? You was out there sucking dick and I'm sharing a split with this nigga.
Right.
That's wild business. Stop trying to just defend and
That's
understand what the
wild
fuck I'm
business.
saying.
Nah.
I'm at a
I
table with
agree.
5 niggas. 5 of these niggas fucked you. Are you mad? Are you fucking mad? I'm over here buying Bob a drink.
I'm just number 6.
Nah, that's crazy work. That's crazy work. This
I'm just
bitch was
number
the
6.
fucking gobbler back in the days.
I'm dead.
You crazy?
Well, her telling you and not telling you still going to make her
No.
gobbler back in the days.
No, you
Doesn't
telling
change
me.
it.
Now, I said I can avoid going to have drinks with Bob. I don't want to be at a table with the other 4 niggas you fuck. I can stay home with you.
Right.
There's a difference in the mentality of how you look at shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my girl not telling me shit that Bob is telling me while he drunk. What the fuck?
He's like, "Ooh, that tattoo."
Yeah, woo!
She
That
said,
tattoo on her back, she still got that?
like,
fuck?
like, ain't nobody supposed to see that.
This nigga
but
might
Bob-
tell you, I'm the one that paid for that tattoo. God of this shit.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that time we was on the beach and we had a couple drinks. You know, them frozen margaritas.
Yeah, nah.
Yeah.
Nah, listen. If my ruin train, then respectfully, I'ma see what's game. To be honest, I really like her and I trust her. I don't care what she did. If she wants to tell me, she can tell me. And I don't
Right,
agree
she
with that.
does it, she
No, I
does
don't
it.
agree with that.
It's not
That
big
give
deal.
people reason to hide a whole life. I may just not agree with the life you had before me. You may not be the one for me. Don't waste my time.
Like,
Fuck out of here.
like Cozy said, hoes gonna hoe, pimps gonna pimp.
That's
Both
right.
get money,
I
still
will
walk with a
respect
limp.
you more if you have a conversation and you tell me up front. Now I've already accepted it. You get what I'm saying?
Mhm,
I can't be surprised and shocked by anything no more.
Right,
I've already accepted it.
right.
Let that decision be on me.
You might
Black-
agree with what Galaxy said.
Blackbird just popped in the room.
Yo, Blackbird, what up, yo?
Blackbird.
Basically, the question was, is it a red flag if you were dating somebody and there was a slut back in the days? Before you, there was a slut. Basically, put it that way.
Mhm.
Before you, that pussy was on the streets.
Slide.
Yeah.
It ain't both ways. If it was a
But
guy, you
guy,
was sliding
girl,
on
whatever,
everything.
yeah, whatever. So that's what we're talking about. I say I need to know. Galaxy says, but if you love me and you truly do care for our relationship, you'll tell me everything. You won't hide that. Exactly. If you know I love you and all that, let me love all of you, not just the piece you show me.
What if you don't love her now? How you gonna leave her?
Well,
Let me make my decision. Don't make the decision for me blindly.
well, not to be that guy, but you kind of don't practice what you preach, Auntie Slayer.
What you
That
mean?
part.
What you mean?
You don't practice what you preach.
I do practice
You
what
would
I
slide
preach.
on anybody auntie
Yeah.
right now
You
at
don't
your
tell
40.
every girl that.
Yeah, but hold on. I'm single. I don't have to tell you shit. We're not in a relationship. I'm
Right.
fucking you.
But if you did get into one,
Yeah, then we
you
talk.
would tell her,
Yeah,
oh,
then we
if you
talk.
slid on.
Voluntarily, or will she have to ask you?
Either way. If you ask me, I'm not gonna lie. If we're having that type of conversation, I say some shit. But me being an auntie slayer, I'm single. I can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Until we get into a relationship, I don't gotta tell you shit.
Well, that's the same thing for the girl end
No,
too.
we're talking about in a relationship. The question is in a relationship.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I assume all men are 304s.
Hoes. Yeah, they are. They
I,
are. Not all men.
What does
Not
that mean?
all.
What is
Three or
that?
four
Hoes.
oh,
What does the whole mean?
Like, fuck everything that walks.
But am I single or not?
Sleeping around.
Am I single?
What's the difference? If a girl did it, she'll be a hoe whether she in a relationship
Yeah,
or not.
but I'm talking about if you tell me or not.
Were you reacting to the I assume all men are 304s? Or were you reacting
Well,
to
you what you mean by 304s?
Hoe.
Oh.
Hoe.
Damn.
That's
Like,
what
you mean?
it is.
I'm not a hoe. That's all I got to say.
you were Auntie Slayer?
Same shit.
That's not a hoe.
Yes, it is.
Everybody arguing me release.
That's a hoe.
Just
So
don't-
because women be single and sleeping around, they call them a hoe immediately.
If you're single and you're sleeping around, then you can
Nigga-
do whatever you
But
want.
niggas call them hoes.
So they are hoes.
See, so that
Okay,
means
so
you a
if
hoe
you doing
then.
the same thing, you're a hoe.
This is the shit I'm talking about.
I'm a
It's a double
pimp.
standard. No.
I'm a
The
pimp.
This-
double standard shit is wild.
Ain't no double
I,
standard.
that's what I said.
It ain't no double
I
standard.
don't want to be that
It ain't no
guy.
double standard.
Yes,
can
I didn't
swing
want
all
to
the
put
dick
it
I
that
wanna
way,
swing,
but I just
goddammit.
had.
I
I
can
agree.
swing the dick.
I agree with what you're saying, but I said, wait a minute,
It's the
Auntie
same
Slay.
shit.
It's not the same shit.
It is.
God
Let me
damn
ask y'all a
it.
question. If I have a key that
Here we go.
opens,
So fuck that key ass shit. Fuck that key, because you got a hole. Your asshole is a keyhole since you want to say it. So all niggas got keyholes.
yo,
the asshole.
drop a
So
bomb.
at that
Minute.
point,
Whoa,
Wait
whoa,
a
whoa!
minute.
Wait a
since you
minute!
want to bring up the
Minute.
key,
God damn
wait
it!
a
God damn it! Drop a
since you
bomb!
want to bring up this
Hold
Shot!
on.
No! Drop a goddamn bomb! Drop another one!
Let's get back to
God
the
damn it! I'm
key.
triggered!
Hold on.
I'm triggered!
Kenny said
Drop
you
a
can't get hole.
goddamn bomb! I'm triggered! What do you mean the asshole's a
You
keyhole?
got an
and
asshole,
those-
right? That's what y'all G spot is. Let's get
Damn,
Hey,
son, where'd you
drop-
find
hey,
this?
yo, Drop a bomb! Whoa! Chat! Drop a bomb! Mayday! Mayday! Chat! Mayday! Drop a bomb! I am triggered. She said, "Oh my God."
She got a point about the
Wait a minute. You're not agreeing with this. You're not.
No,
You're
I'm saying no.
no,
Let me
no.
explain the reason.
Greninja, you're not agreeing with
You're
this.
not agreeing with this.
Y'all like to use Google for all of y'all points, right? Google right now where a nigga G
I
spot
know
is.
we're nigga G, but I learned in high school.
No.
Your asshole.
Stop it. But here's the thing I'm trying to
Deep
make.
in
Hold on.
Ohio died for that. A nigga in Ohio
She
died.
go punch. She went. Here's what I was trying to say though.
Oh my God.
If you got a key, men know the key, right? That opens a lot of locks.
But
That's
y'all
a
hold to
stop. That's
No.
that's a valuable key, right? Now, if you have a lock that gets opened by every key, it's not valuable.
It's a shitty lock.
The
Oh,
shit
y'all
is a
got
shitty lock.
holes. Y'all got holes too.
Straight nigga. He's talking about straight niggas.
No, fuck that. All niggas on this world got an asshole. Every nigga on this planet
Yeah, the shit. All humans got an asshole.
got a asshole.
All
Well,
humans.
technically, not the ones that have no legs. They don't have an asshole.
I mean, they still do.
They shit in the bag.
How you supposed to
No,
do
they
shit?
got the
You
bags.
got the
shit in the
colostomy bag
Yeah,
that
it's
comes
a
out
hole.
the
With
side.
that hole.
The
with that
ones-
hole in
They
there.
Nobody
still an
fucking that.
asshole.
Nobody fucking a colostomy hole. Ew. That's crazy work.
I'm that guy just taking the
He
legs
said,
over.
where's this conversation going?
I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. We
Here's
fucking
Key
colostomy.
tested mad locks as a 304. Thank you.
Wait,
Thank
what?
you.
Goddamn.
Key tested
Key
mad
called
holes
you
as a
a hoe,
304.
GK.
You a hoe.
What you mean?
Can you call you?
I
You
can't-
use your key for mad
I
different
keep
locks.
Wait,
testing
wait,
mad.
hold
I
on
keep
now. Hold
testing
on
mad
now.
locks.
I got a valuable key.
No, you don't.
Wait.
Nigga got a master key.
I got
Oh my,
That shit open everything.
oh my god.
Garage doors. Doors.
Hey,
car doors.
Oh my god.
I don't feel like
What's
I'm winning this fight
happening?
here. I don't feel like I'm winning.
No.
I'm not winning.
No.
It's the Mothma.
Why you want to try to win this?
I give up.
Listen,
I give up, I give up, I
Koza
give up.
tried to save
I
you
give up.
earlier when he said, let me scroll back up, in his words, he said, this is a bold ass question on National Women's Day.
I give up. I give up.
He was trying to save you. Koza was trying to save
I
you.
appreciate you, Koza.
I fuck with him, but I was
Kitty,
just,
I'm not a hoe.
Chat,
I'm
as you
not a hoe.
realize,
I'm
I
not a
was
hoe.
sitting here minding my
I'm
business
not a hoe.
as he was talking about it,
I'm
and I was
not a
just
hoe.
like,
Hey, Twin, am I a hoe?
Nah.
Twin.
They said, hold up, GK got a skeleton key.
I
My
got
brother, you a
Yeah.
304.
Oh my god.
Y'all need to stop it. Y'all need to stop it.
What you
All I'm saying is, how old is y'all aunties? You know?
All he want to know is how old
They
y'all
asking you
aunties are.
questions, nigga.
Jesus
You ain't even
Christ.
paying
I'm
attention.
anybody else got any other shit they want to talk about? Because I'm not winning this one.
Nigga
No.
said you got a skeleton key.
Listen. Hold on. Wait a minute now. I ain't got no damn
I'm
skeleton
listening
key.
to the conversation,
No, you're
bro.
not.
My shit got meat.
They asked you, do you got a key?
Who do I have?
Hey, yo.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm triggered.
Hey, yo.
They asked, well, what you asked you?
This nigga
What
here.
they asked broke? They asked
Get him out of here.
No, is he a hoe?
Out of here.
Do you think
You
your
stupid
twin
as
is a
that.
hoe?
Broke. Twin.
I mean,
Birthday twin.
I got called a bunch of hoes for that as well. So yeah, I guess you are my boy. Honestly.
Oh, that's
Twin.
crazy.
It is a hoe, bro. It is.
So because I shitted on your
It ain't about that.
yeah.
It ain't about that. It ain't about that. But since you want to say it, yeah, fuck you, nigga. It wasn't about that.
Nigga
But
said
since you want to
twin
say it, fuck
called
you.
it.
Yo, twin. You got
Ain't no twin.
He got his hand out for a brother.
Koza.
Help me, man.
Koza.
Twin. Don't leave me hanging. He was just like,
I'm
nah.
a twin.
American Ninja said,
No.
yeah.
I'm not a 304.
Okay, no, you're not a hoe. They don't
Oh.
call you a
I'm
hoe.
not
They
a
don't call you a hoe.
304.
They don't call you a hoe.
Listen, let me explain something to y'all. Who am I to deny these beautiful women what they request?
304 talk. You hear this shit he's saying?
My mama raised me to be right by women.
Chat, I'm trying to
That
tell
don't
you.
mean fuck all of them.
Right.
They want it.
Okay.
No, that don't mean
Do you
shit.
wrap it up at least?
You got to wrap it up.
Nigga
That's
said,
still
It'll
a-
fall
I
off
can't
when you
lie.
go.
just dropped him off the
That's
cliff
still a
like
lie.
I
I can't lie.
But I'm single though.
Kitty said, "Home."
Koza is
Hey,
hilarious.
Tony.
Long
Nigga said, Bronx said, "Long live the king."
Yeah.
Long live the king.
And let your ass go.
Hey, 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 hey. Anybody got anything to say?
He just had an encounter with two bitches.
he got
He just had an encounter with two bitches licking balls, and she gonna sit here and say he in a hole.
What you talking about? I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know.
We got the proof in the video.
I'm single. I'm single.
Right? This nigga here, y'all. I swear.
That's
I
wild work.
swear. I swear.
Hold on.
304 activity.
Oh my God.
Hey, everybody, shh.
This nigga.
Hello.
Good evening.
No, you's a mess. He's your admin.
Good evening, Auntie.
He said, bro, I didn't
I'm
mean
right.
to
They
come into
getting
the
at me right
stats.
now.
That's
Yo.
cool.
The whole chat is coming at
The
me.
whole chat. Get him.
Thank
Hey.
you, Kitty.
All right, I'll call you back.
Get him.
Thank
He said
you,
a hoe
Kitty.
is a hoe is a hoe.
Kitty said being single does not make you less of a hoe. Thank
That
you, Kitty.
part. That part.
So when you call a locksmith, right?
This nigga right here. A locksmith is crazy work. A locksmith is crazy. If they didn't even think about that, let you know that this nigga is well.
Oh
A locksmith. Oh my God. Nigga said not the locksmith.
When you got that lock that nobody can open, right?
Oh my God. Not the
The locksmith. The
Yo.
Leticia.
A hairpin.
Oh my God.
Yo, y'all stupid as fuck.
That's you. Put your crazy ass
Anybody
right
else got any questions? Cause y'all coming at
No,
me too
that's
hard
it.
right
Nah,
now.
it's so good.
No, but I have a homework assignment
Codes
for
is too
chat.
damn
Go ahead.
stupid with
She
this
got,
one.
the YN queen here has a homework assignment
Okay,
for
so
chat.
I have a game next week, but I don't know if any of y'all have watched the show. It's on YouTube. It's called The Amazing Digital Circus.
Oh,
What the hell is that?
Amazing Digital Circus on
Yes.
YouTube.
That's
What's
the
about?
baby shower.
It's basically
Well,
an A.
next week is the baby shower.
Right.
Okay, so
So you
after
guys play
that,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
after that, I have a game for y'all. Y'all better watch it because on the 20th is National Frog Day, and it's
National.
That's a day?
it's based in the show. You have to watch the show.
Ah.
What's it
Ah.
called?
But
What's the show
The
called again?
the Amazing Digital Circus.
Amazing.
Amazing Digital Circus. Chat. Amazing Digital Circus. Goddammit.
The circus?
Yeah, the Amazing Digital Circus. On YouTube.
Amazing
Okay.
Digital.
Or on Netflix.
Okay.
Or on Netflix.
How many episodes?
There's 7 right now, but
7.
episode 8 comes out on the 20th.
What's it about?
So basically, they're all AIs,
Okay.
and the ringmaster Kane, basically like a fucking adventure with eyeballs and shit. They all go on adventures and shit to keep. So they're all wearing like VR headsets and shit. And Kane is the ringmaster, and they all go on adventures so they don't go crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we gotta check that out for the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks. They got 2 weeks of homework. 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Right.
she giving homework now and shit. I don't
Right.
know.
Everybody in
We
there-
ain't never give homework.
we
chat.
ain't never
But,
get niggas.
everybody in there is in danger because of GK. That part.
Yo, that's crazy.
That part.
Galaxy
Oh
Storm,
my
sis,
God.
you gonna do me like that?
Oh my God.
Sis, you gonna do me like that
Oh
though?
my God.
I'm over here being celibate, like
Celebrate
Are you really?
my
devoting
ass.
my.
Koza says, stay away from the locks. Monet said that's the booty hole. Red alert, red alert. SOS, SOS. Neemer.
That is. Everybody has
Guys, he said, brother, the job of a locksmith is to unlock the lock. You basically calling yourself the locksmith. Say, listen, but when you locked out the house though, don't you need help? Somebody got to bust in that door. I'm just.
Well, according to the way Koza and Monet is putting it, that's not the right door you want to bust in.
Hey yo! I don't know. We can't go to the back door.
Checking the trend.
Straight front door on top of the porch. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Tracking the trend, y'all. Damn. GG's.
Y'all stupid as hell. Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Just
Nah.
remember to watch it.
No.
Digital circuit, y'all, because she gave us homework. We're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. We in trouble.
She over here giving niggas homework. It's crazy work.
I ain't have homework.
Hey, broke.
I got kids, and I don't want to do their homework.
Teacher with you?
Don't worry, I forced him to watch all the
Damn,
episodes.
he caught up. He caught up.
It's all right.
He said it's all right.
He
He said his
"Ah."
eye. That face look like you saying his eye because she right here.
Yeah, because you know what beat his ass.
Nigga said, fuck no.
Yeah,
That
she said, wait, that's a good question. The DJs, the G Kids say he sells a bit, that he sells a bit. Right.
Hollywood.
Like, yeah, coming at me.
That's so funny.
I'm celibate.
Yeah. The mic got a little. The mic got a little. You know, distorted. We need
Yo,
you to
I
say it
haven't-
to the people.
He said sell a bitch makes
Sell
more
a
sense.
bit or sell a bit.
I haven't had sex in 16 months.
He's lying. He said 16 minutes.
Child, you know that shit last week.
The mic got messed up in 16 minutes.
Before we got here, he had some.
Right. I seen homegirl pull up in a maximum.
Had to. No way.
Chad, I'm telling you, I saw homegirl pull up in the maximum. I took her parking spot.
Maxima is crazy.
She was out. She said,
She was pretty
I
tight.
was like, oh shit.
He said lies and slander. The lie test determined that was a lie.
What? All right, we're going to end the show right now.
God damn.
Galaxy, at least you caught up Galaxy. I appreciate that. Thank
Yo,
you.
y'all
Thank you.
stupid as hell.
Jesus Christ.
I'm mad at y'all coming at me like this. I'm mad.
Wait,
at y'all
Galaxy,
coming at
you
me.
know, I searched up on Google. They might be dropping episode 9. I don't
Oh,
know.
she watches it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to inform you, I already watched all the episodes. I'm waiting for episode 8. Been a
At least you'll
fan
be
of
ready for the
ABC.
Yo,
game I
Cadence.
have.
Yo, Cadence, where were you all night? I need help.
Yay! What
They're
up,
coming at me
Kay?
very it's crazy right now.
Yeah, she missed it all.
It's
No,
crazy
outside.
right now.
She would have been. It's International Women's Month. She would International Women's
That makes
Month.
you gonna agree with Kitty.
She would have been on these.
She gonna agree with Kitty.
Yeah, she gonna agree with Kitty and Monet. It's over.
All right, let's wrap it up.
No.
All right.
Kick, starting off with you, Ms. Broke.
Good night, chat.
Second time here. We appreciate
we
you coming
appreciate
here.
you. Your presence is definitely appreciated.
Yes, indeed.
Why
Yes,
you're number
indeed.
one. He's not our friend today, chat, because Greninja didn't win.
I ain't
Yeah.
even like that, yo. I ain't even like that.
I'm
Whatever.
dead.
Because they think a fucking
Yeah,
rat
this
can
is
do a
a-
fucking throw.
Oh, don't
But
call me to a
anyway.
rat. How dare you?
Yeah, he's a
It's a
fucking
mouse.
rat.
It's a mouse.
Galaxy
Yeah, you
said,
right, my
"Man,
fault.
you
Raichu
finna
was the
tell
rat.
me, not
Anyway.
the father."
Anyway, it was fun though. It was fun.
I think Raichu's the mouse too. Ain't
No, he's
Rat-a-tat-tat
not.
the
He's
rat?
the
Rat-a-tat's the
rat.
Rat-a-tat-tat's the
Rat-a-tat's
rat.
definitely from New York.
Yeah.
From New
It was a
York.
good show, y'all. It was done in Monet. Laughs, of course.
And you next week.
Yeah,
Next week,
yes.
Baby shower
Next
Tuesday. You
week,
didn't put the
baby
registry in.
shower.
You didn't put the registry
Hey,
in.
you didn't put the registry thing.
I didn't put the registry in there. No, I didn't. I need to. We said we're gonna put it on the website too. But
Yeah,
let me
we're
see.
just gonna be on
Let
the
me see.
website.
Let me see if I can find it real quick while you talk to people.
Go to Facebook.
Yeah,
copy
we had
and
a
paste
great,
it in
we
the
had
chat.
a W stream, man. I wish, we need all y'all to turn up next week Sunday, next Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're having a baby shower celebration for Melanated Monet, our queen, because she about to give birth soon. So you already know. Please make sure y'all show up.
Make sure you tune in to Kitty
You
stream
can't do
tomorrow
nothing
for her
now.
birthday.
Yes, also-
Pisces.
Oh,
twin.
okay. Oh, you got it. Okay,
Also,
go ahead.
make sure that tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Kitty's birthday stream. Make sure y'all turn up and show out and show love to the best mod in the world.
Yes,
We love you,
yes,
Kitty.
yes, Kitty. We in there tomorrow. We in there tomorrow.
Yes, next Sunday is family friendly.
Yes. Next Sunday is family
GK said he
friendly.
was a hoe.
for
I
sure.
did not say that. I just said I have a lock.
Yeah.
No, it ain't. I'm bringing
Well, I have the
Leone's
key.
boat.
You know what I'm saying? Like the key. Listen,
I'm bringing
I ain't
Leone's
never met a
boat
door
next
that I
week.
can't get past. You know what I'm saying? You know.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yes, you have. You ain't been to the back doors.
Yeah, no
shit.
way. I don't have a back.
Everybody has a back
Hey,
door.
My
yo.
house stops at the front. That's it.
Everybody has a back door, nigga.
That's it.
Unfortunately.
Even
Nah.
even Studio 200, we got to go out
Yeah.
the front door.
They, yep.
Out the back is windows.
Okay, so let them know. Let them know.
Okay, chat. Here's the shower link. I'm going to pin it real quick. Hold
Yeah,
on.
that's the registry for Monet and CJ's baby shower.
I'm pinning it right now. There we go. There we go. Make sure you guys pop in Sunday for sure. Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as always. But it's just next week, March 15th.
Yes.
It definitely will be a good show, great show, fun show, because it's kids going to be here. My kids will be here. So we will not be talking about back doors.
No, we're not doing that next week.
No back
Family
doors.
friendly.
And the family will be up front.
Yes, yes,
the
indeed. Yes,
The
indeed.
father, the mother, and the kids, and
And
I'll
I
be
love you
in
too.
the
They
back.
said, "Bye."
We will definitely be convening.
My three. Stop claiming 3 of them.
3 or 4. You 3 or 4 for sure. You 3 or 4 for sure. But just come have a good time
Yeah,
with
just
us.
come hang
All
out with
gifts
us.
are appreciated, whether it's just popping in, saying hey, dropping biddies, actually getting us one from the registry, or even just saying, hey, here's a donation, whatever. We are appreciative of everything. So on that note, Mr. 200, we're going to kick it over to you to close
We
out.
definitely do appreciate everybody popping out.
Wait, I didn't say
Go
it.
ahead.
It wouldn't be a good show if I don't say the right thing,
Yeah, go
right?
ahead,
I
do your
gotta
thing.
say it. Say it
Yeah,
with me.
do
Now
it,
say it
go
with me. It is not just a podcast. This is a show. This is a community. This is family. And without y'all, we can't do this every Sunday. So we thank y'all. Boom.
Absolutely, he's absolutely right. Without y'all, it's just us here. So,
Right.
so on that note, we appreciate all y'all. But again, please make sure y'all pop out next Sunday for the Game Lounge.
Yes.
These two have been showing up for over a year now.
Yes.
And the show wouldn't be what it is without them.
Yes.
So we're gonna celebrate life and a blessing to their family and
Mhm.
to all of us, because this baby done grown up here on the damn show.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So make sure y'all
Little-
tap in next week for Cozavius
CJ
Junior
Cozavius Jr. the third.
the
Yes.
baby shower on stream celebration
Yes.
with love. And on that note, I gotta say, it's your boy. Appreciate y'all for popping into the Game Lodge. Y'all know what it is. It's your boy Golden Crush 200, aka